I was reborn as a blade. For centuries, my cold steel passed through countless hands, drinking the blood of forgotten eras. I forged ordinary knights into legendary heroes. Yet among all who grasped my hilt, only one truly stood above the rest. I had finally found my ultimate comrade. Together, master and sword conquered the world. My blade practically hummed, radiating a brilliant blue aura. We faced colossal beasts, our combined might shattering both bone and steel. We scaled frozen peaks, defying the howling winds to challenge the legendary white dragon. With a single heaven-shattering strike, the beast's head was severed. Its massive body crashed down, bathing my knight in the ultimate glory of victory. We carved our names across the continent, achieving legendary feats that no mortal could ever match. But time stops for no one. My comrade ascended the throne as king. Together, we birthed a golden age, cementing the eternal legend of the Dragon Slayer. I, Groon, became a sacred relic resting in solemn majesty within the royal vault. My golden hilt and azure gems sparkled quietly under the lonely light. Protect my bloodline. That was my partner's dying wish as I was passed down through generations of his royal descendants, yet my peaceful slumber was shattered by heavy, disgusting panting. Who dares disturb my rest? My ancient soul flared awake after centuries of silence. How annoying. What insolent fool is shaking my blade? A greasy, sweaty hand gripped my hilt. My vision adjusted to a grotesque sight. A morbidly obese blonde youth, his face twisted with filthy greed. From this moment on, I am the absolute master of this holy blade. The pig squealed, spit flying everywhere. A terrified servant stepped forward. Your Highness, only the king may touch that relic. Please, you must put it back. My spirit recoiled in pure disgust. Wait a prince. This fat pig. I immediately brought up his status window to scan his pathetic stats. Name Andreon Leonbeck. Male 16. Talent level, absolute 0. Traits arrogant, morbidly obese, hopelessly clumsy, utterly lazy, an easy target, and totally emotionally unstable. Shut your mouth, Andreon shrieked. I can touch whatever I want in my own kingdom. He swung my legendary form with zero technique, making the knights flinch as my soul cried out. This has to be a joke. This trash is actually my master's bloodline. How could the legendary sword saint produce such worthless potential? Drenched in sweat, Andreon hoisted me up, his eyes rolling back in a sickening power fantasy. With this weapon, the king and those snobby nobles can never ignore me again. I had seen enough. What an absolute clown. Suddenly, Andreon's voice cracked as he howled, "Oh great Dragon Slayer, grant me your boundless power." My spiritual voice boomed like thunder in his mind. Have you lost your mind? Why would I ever lend my strength to a pathetic worm like you? Andreon kept thrashing me around like a madman. The royal guards rushed in to intervene. Your Highness, please drop the blade. This is sacred ground. But the warning only fueled his rage. Shut up. You dare command me. Do you have a death wish? Once I unlock Groon's supreme power. Suddenly, the clumsy fool tripped. His massive body plummeted forward, and the blade angled straight toward his chest. Slash blood exploded into the air. The silver-haired knight watched in pure horror. A maid's terrified scream echoed through the halls. Prince Andreon collapsed onto the cold marble, a crimson pool forming instantly. Call the royal physician right now. As the prince's eyes rolled back, my own consciousness began fading. Ha, the idiot actually managed to stab himself. But wait, is my vision going dark too? Am I passing out for the first time? If Prince Andreon claimed the throne, this entire kingdom would be doomed. He possessed absolutely zero royal talent, yet his arrogance knew no bounds. He lacked any real capability, yet his greed eclipsed the entire continent. He was nothing but a lazy, cruel, and utterly foolish pig. The first prince was a literal dark cloud, suffocating the empire's future. So when he miraculously woke up from his near death, stabbing a bizarre rumor began tearing through the palace. Maids huddled in the dim hallways, whispering hushed secrets. Hey, hasn't Prince Andreon been acting completely different lately? Another voice chimed in eagerly. Exactly. He hasn't flipped a single dining table, and he even stopped hanging out with his delinquent thug gang. Cruel giggles echoed through the corridor. Even our notorious prince must feel humiliated. He's definitely just lying low because he's terrified. Just give it a few days. He'll be back to his old trashy self. However, the new Andreon Leonbeck couldn't care less about these petty rumors. The soul inside had completely changed. To think I accidentally killed my comrade's descendant and hijacked his body. Suddenly, the heavy doors slammed open. A flustered maid rushed in, bowing frantically. Your Highness, the king has arrived. Please fix your attire immediately to welcome his majesty. I sat frozen on my chair, deeply suspicious. That old man didn't even check on me when I was dying. Why the sudden visit? The maid shivered. Please watch your words, my prince. The royal guards are listening. An imposing shadow fell over the room. A tall, silver-haired man strode in his stern face and crimson cape, radiating absolute authority. I heard you clawed your way back from hell, but your rotten temper hasn't changed a bit. He waved his hand dismissively. Leave us. The king expects absolutely nothing from him anyway. I stared at him blankly. Who the hell is this guy? The older man frowned deeply. We share a sacred master and student bond, yet you won't even pretend to recognize me. The pieces finally clicked into place. Wait, is this geezer actually this fat pig's master? I kept my voice deadpan. My memories are completely scrambled. I feel like I should know you, but honestly, I don't. The old man's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. Don't tell me. You actually missed the maid, loudly announcing the king's arrival. Wait, the king. So this intimidating powerhouse is actually this trash's father. Wow, his aura is way stronger than I expected. I thought centuries of time had diluted the mighty lion's bloodline into a mutt's. But feeling this king's overwhelming presence, I might be completely wrong. The king sighed, his voice dripping with heavy disappointment. You can't even bother to greet your own father. Clearly, cheating death couldn't fix your rotten nature. The terrified servants scrambled forward. Your Majesty, please forgive him. Rumors say His Highness's mind was damaged from the trauma. Heavens above, what an absolute disaster. Why wasn't this critical detail reported to the throne? Summon the royal physician immediately. We must examine His Highness at once. And with that, my chaotic new life truly began. The royal physician reported no physical anomalies. This amnesia must be temporary shock. The king glared at his depressed son on the bed. How insanely convenient, the king scoffed inwardly. Does claiming amnesia suddenly erase all your past sins, like none of it ever happened? Making wretched choices leads to absolute ruin. Actions that the entire kingdom condemns. Realizing those mistakes and never repeating them. That is true learning. But you forgot everything. Acting like your dark history never existed. You have not grown an inch from your past failures. And you will never step forward into the future. Please calm down, Your Majesty, the old knight whispered. The main character sat dazed. Is he seriously chewing me out? As the king stormed out, he inspected himself. Damn it, I hit rock bottom. Treated worse than trash, let alone royalty. What kind of garbage life did this punk live? Suddenly, a tearful, beautiful queen rushed inside, pulling him into a desperate hug. I heard everything. My poor, confused boy. Your memories will return soon. Actually, no. Who cares about that useless past anyway? My poor son, your handsome face has wasted away. Suffocating in her embrace, he thought. Wasted away? Look at all this fat. The queen smiled warmly. Regardless, I am just thrilled you finally woke up. Never touch such dangerous objects again. I cannot bear the thought of losing you. Her words struck a nerve. I am sorry, but your real son is already dead. What a crushing burden. Moonlight eventually bathed the grand castle in shadows. The queen waved goodbye. Rest well, I shall return tomorrow. The heavy door slammed shut. His mask instantly dropped. My old comrade begged me to protect his bloodline, yet my power accidentally killed this kid. His blood is on my hands. Since fate twisted things this way, what now? I must live extraordinarily well for both of us. Previously reincarnated as a divine sword. I spent my entire existence cleaning up other people's garbage. This body is tragically fat and talentless. But whatever, I will just forge my power from scratch. I have trained countless legends before. First up, magic cultivation. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. Brilliant azure energy swirled around him. Mana erupted, cloaking his figure in a breathtaking blue aura. The intense light illuminated the shadows. Suddenly, the energy violently flickered. Andreon gritted his teeth, sweating profusely. The azure flames dissolved. He sat completely stunned. The mana scattered. This weak vessel cannot handle it. Yet refusing defeat, he tried again. Channeling the energy once more, his face flushed red. Veins bulged fiercely. Azure flames erupted from his palms again. But horribly unstable, the energy exploded outward. He collapsed on all fours, gasping heavily, staring at the floor in exhausted horror. What the hell? What absolute trash is this physique? Andreon cursed internally. If I only had my original mighty form, I could easily fix this pathetic vessel by forcefully injecting pure mana. Suddenly, a rhythmic knock shattered his internal rage. A trembling maid stepped inside, bowing with fearful respect. Prince, please forgive my sudden intrusion. The queen personally sent this vital tonic. It tastes bitter, but holds great restorative power. Please consider Her Majesty's deep affection. The maid flinched, sweating nervously, bracing for inevitable violence, praying he would not smash the bowl again. Horrific memories flashed of the tyrant prince screaming, I told you no more disgusting medicine. But today was entirely different. Andreon's eyes widened at the bowl. Incredible energy radiated from that liquid. It contained pure mana. Without a shred of hesitation, he snatched the bowl, chugging the mystical liquid greedily. The terrified maid watched in absolute shock. The notoriously awful prince drained the bitter medicine in mere seconds. He slammed the empty bowl down. Are you satisfied now? Now get out. She frantically scrambled away. Yes, my prince. Finally alone, he smirked inwardly. Excellent, let us try again. Thank heaven that actually worked. But this gathered mana is pathetically small. It could completely dissipate within a single day. Suddenly, he flung the door open, pointing at the maid. Bring me more of that. Days later, his room glowed with a mystical azure brilliance. Swirling magic entirely engulfed him. Finally, at long last, I can forge a true mana heart. Having done this countless times, I could forge one blindfolded. Suddenly, agonizing pain pierced his chest. Damn, it burns. Clutching his chest, his face twisted in pure agony. My insides are blazing. My chest is exploding. Right? Forging a mana heart is absolute torture. I cannot pass out, or the mana backlash will kill me. Cold sweat drenched his face as he desperately anchored his mind. I must wrangle this chaotic mana. No rushing. Slowly guide the flow past the heart and to the right. Let this new core absorb every drop. A single drop of pure azure mana struck his soul. Mystical ripples spread. The chaotic energy finally tamed, crystallizing into a perfectly stable sphere. Andreon opened his eyes, blazing with brilliant blue light. It is done. Not a core for someone else, but my very own mana heart. I finally achieved it. Suddenly, a glowing golden system window materialized before him. Mana heart successfully created. He reached out in sheer confusion. Is this a system status window? It looks exactly like the notifications I gave my masters back when I was a sword. Why is it appearing for me now? System processing core data. Restoring origin connection. Connection successfully restored. Warning, connection status poor. Link remains highly unstable. Red warning screens flooded his entire vision. Majority of divine authorities locked. Only absolute minimal functions currently available. Authority of judgment unlocked for restricted usage. You may now scan the hidden potential of targets at or below your current level. What the hell is this system? He gasped out loud as multiple system windows suddenly popped up. The clairvoyance skill had unlocked, but its power was severely restricted. His vision simply sharpened. Another alert chimed in. Heavenly hearing was now available. Though heavily limited, his hearing improved drastically. He snapped his head toward the window. A new power. His vision suddenly zoomed forward. Piercing through the thick canopy, he stared at the garden below. Every single leaf on a distant tree appeared with crystal clear precision. I can definitely see much better now. Suddenly, faint voices drifted into his ears. The sound came from outside, but the exact words remained completely muffled. He focused his mind. The maid's whispering in the hallway became crystal clear. Do you not know his terrible temper? He should have caused a massive uproar by now. He realized the terrifying scope of this ability. I can even eavesdrop through solid doors, but the mental strain was absolute torture. A devastating headache threatened to split his skull. Golden system windows flashed dangerously. His internal mana was completely depleted. The powers were forcefully shut down. He clutched his throbbing head. So this is what severely restricted actually meant. Feeling the entire world around me without a single blind spot. Those absolute godlike senses that I possessed as a legendary sword are completely gone now. Right now, by squeezing out a pathetic drop of mana, I can only peek or eavesdrop slightly. But this will all change once I expand my magic core and mana pool. His stomach suddenly let out a monstrous rumble. I am starving. Bring me a feast immediately. But first, I must focus entirely on adapting to this weak human vessel. Later on, the magnificent castle stood tall under the blazing golden sun. Deep inside its walls, the queen opened her arms wide with a deceptively warm smile. Truly commendable, my child. You drank every single drop of the potion I sent. You finally learned to cherish your own body. Oh, that reminds me. Do you recognize who this man is? Andreon shot the man an incredibly cold glare. I do not remember. The queen turned to the scarred warrior. It seems his amnesia is truly real. Therefore, you must help this poor child, the scarred man silently observed. Andreon thought to himself, I wondered who this imposing guy was. Turns out he is the queen's very own brother. The queen flashed him a subtle smile. After all, is he not your one and only nephew? The count let out a mocking smirk. You speak as if I misplaced a priceless treasure. Besides, his pathetic past is nothing to be proud of. The count narrowed his eyes, thinking, just by looking at that rebellious glare, that kid clearly despises my guts. Let me make one thing absolutely crystal clear. The only thing I will do for him is carve off that disgusting excess fat. I will not offer a single thing beyond that. So abandon your useless expectations right now. Burn that thought into your mind. The scene cut violently to the training grounds. In a single flash, Andreon was brutally beaten, rolling across the dirt in agony. The count glared down at him with suffocating killer intent. From this exact second onward, whether you eat, drink, or even breathe, you need my direct permission. If you expect royal prince treatment, abandon all hope. Just try your hardest to survive my hell. Who knows? If you impress me enough, I might actually change my mind. Perhaps I will teach you a tiny fraction of our family's legendary secret sword arts. Andreon gritted his teeth, feeling an overwhelming sense of sheer insult. How utterly pathetic. You dare speak of teaching me, the former grand instructor of undefeated knights, the absolute master of the first founding king. You want to teach me? The count scoffed arrogantly. Seeing your miserable fat jiggling like that, you must be burning with immense helpless resentment. Andreon forced himself up, Uncle, let us make a high-stakes bet. Within exactly 6 months, I will force you to acknowledge my absolute power. He vowed internally. I will utterly shatter that arrogant superior look in his eyes. A fiercely confident smirk crossed his face. If I fail this challenge, I will become your absolute obedient puppet. However, if I succeed, you must grant me one single undeniable request. The Count grinned menacingly, staring down like an apex predator cornering its prey. How truly amusing. Very well, I accept. I deserve at least one pathetic source of entertainment. Suddenly, Andreon started gasping for air. His heavy body felt dangerously strange. I talked a huge game, but... His eyes blew wide open in sheer panic. This cursed worthless body, I have no choice but to ignite my mana. Blazing green aura suddenly erupted around Andreon. First, I will focus my internal energy on incinerating this miserable body fat. He stomped the earth with explosive force. His massive frame launched forward with terrifying speed. The Count's eyes widened in absolute paralyzed shock. That crazy brat. Do not tell me. His massive hand instantly grabbed Andreon's shoulder. Hey kid, did you actually manage to forge a mana core? Andreon stood up perfectly straight, faking complete and total innocence. Oh, are you talking about this? He casually raised his hand, fully engulfed in a blazing storm of green flames. Yes, I successfully forged it just recently. What is the matter? Are you already regretting our little bet? The Count's expression violently twisted from pure shock to uncontrollable fury. What the hell were you thinking, recklessly creating a mana core? No, forget that. For a second. Where in the bloody hell did you learn that archaic core training method? Looking at your dumb face, you clearly have no idea what terrible mistake you just made. A mana core is a ridiculously crude technique. Only absolute trash, lowest-tier mercenaries bother learning it now. Those insulting words struck him like lightning. He blurted out loudly, "Wait, what did you just say?" His face froze into a mask of pure devastating disbelief. His vacant eyes blew wide open, cold sweat pouring profusely down his neck. His legendary mind simply could not process this absurd information. What exactly do you mean? The Count replied with a bone-chilling coldness. It is much faster if you just witness it yourself. With an impossibly fluid motion, the mighty Count raised his hand. Brilliant emerald energy violently swirled, forming a terrifyingly perfect magic circle. Watch very closely. Andreon frantically analyzed the terrifying sight. His mana is swirling in a concentrated circle. Suddenly, a colossal blade of blazing green energy erupted violently from the Count's hand. It slashed through the heavens with catastrophic power. The devastating wind pressure alone nearly slammed Andreon into the dirt. The towering man lectured him about the modern era. The tides of time have truly shifted. There is an unbridgeable difference in class now. Have you ever heard of such a thing? The Aeonis system possesses an absolute overwhelming property. It easily shatters the pathetic sword aura generated by a filthy mana core. Furthermore, training this new path is infinitely easier and far more stable. Those foolish traditionalists who stubbornly clung to the ancient mana core techniques were utterly wiped out a century ago. Because of that humiliating slaughter, absolutely no one in this modern era bothers with that garbage technique anymore. Moments later, Andreon intensely studied an ancient tome about Aeonis. He muttered under his breath, "The flow of time has truly shifted. Modern mages wield powerful magic circles while knights forge spiritual chains to stockpile mana. A knight's absolute rank is now judged by the sheer number of chains they manifest. Single chain, double chain, triple chain, all the way to past, fifth-tier chains." He slowly lowered his trembling hand, pondering deeply. I suppose this new system is not completely worthless garbage after all. Wait a second, I feel like I have definitely heard this specific term somewhere before. His eyes shot wide open in sudden realization. A buried memory from centuries ago violently flooded his mind. A rugged warrior in a pitch-black cloak standing fearlessly amid a raging blizzard wielding a blindingly radiant energy blade. From an incredibly distant forgotten era, a haunting voice echoed in his head. "Tell me, are you the legendary sword saint that everyone fears so much?" "My name is Maso Anching. I came to prove who truly deserves the legendary sword saint title." The pieces of Destiny's puzzle finally aligned. Andreon realized the shocking truth. Long ago, a strange challenger attacked me using bizarre, unknown techniques. It was neither traditional sword arts nor was it standard magic. That name sounds incredibly familiar. What exactly happened to that guy? Cut to the next day's training. The Count's booming voice interrupted him. "You read that book all night, right? You must have realized it by now. Just how foolish that choice was." Andreon instantly fired back. "Well, I do not feel like I made a mistake at all." The Count sighed. "You either lack basic comprehension or refuse to accept reality." He clenched his fists, the blue aura flaring like wildfire. "Listen here, not all mana cores are created equal. There is an absolute difference in class. Have you ever heard of it?" The Count glared down with zero respect. "I seriously wonder what kind of garbage you are babbling about. Every now and then I see delusional runts like you among the mercenaries. Fools who actually think they awakened as ancient heroes from centuries past. Do you know their ultimate fate? They all perish, failing to clear even a 2-chain level. If you think your stats are so special, prove it by defeating a 2-chain knight. Only then will I become your sponsor just as your mother wished." Andreon smirked confidently in response. His sheer arrogance never wavered. "Would having you as a sponsor even give me an experience buff? I highly doubt it." A freezing wind swept the yard, maxing out the tension. "Did you seriously question my tier? I am Account Commander of the Northern Army, Master of the Black Spear Knights, and one of the King's 5 Silver Lions. A master who awakened 4 chains. A 4-chain knight Bevan Hats. That is the name of the absolute powerhouse backing you. Is my level high enough for you?" Without warning, a massive blue aura erupted like a roaring comet. Andreon gritted his teeth, his face contorting under the overwhelming pressure. Instantly, surrounding guards drew their blades to protect their lord. "Stand back," the Count roared, blasting brutal shockwaves through the dust clouds. The Count stared down at his struggling nephew, his gaze mixing deadly amusement with a heavy warning. "Don't you dare back out of this quest later." Moments later, Andreon collapsed onto his freezing stone floor, stamina completely drained. He sprawled out, gasping desperately for air. "Holy crap, my health bar almost hit 0 right there." A voice rudely interrupted his recovery. "That is enough for today." The Count's words echoed in his brain. He remembered that dangerous, predatory glint in the boss's eyes. "To think you actually dared to challenge a powerhouse like me. Did you believe reckless courage would earn my respect? A 2-chain knight. With your low stats, you would be lucky to survive a single-chain knight." Back in his room, the exhausted Andreon muttered bitterly. "That absolute demonic bastard." He pushed the door open, finding a man wearing round glasses waiting. "My prince, I have been expecting you." Andreon's eyes snapped wide. "The royal healer. Why are you in my room?" Panic flooded his mind. The healer bowed with exaggerated, slimy humility. "It is an absolute honor that you remember a lowly extra like myself. Her Majesty ordered me to restore your health with healing magic. Now then, my prince." Andreon screamed, his face draining of color in pure terror. He violently shoved the bewildered healer toward the exit. "Hell no, I don't need buffs. Get lost." Slam. He barricaded the door and slumped against it, panting. "Are you trying to reset all the agonizing stat grinding I did today?" The scene shifted to an opulent dining hall. The grand doors suddenly swung open. "Is my dear older brother logging in?" Andreon froze mid-bite. Standing at the threshold was a handsome punk with wavy brown hair. Andreon scoffed internally. "Who the hell is this arrogant mob?" A nearby knight whispered, "That is the third prince, my lord." Andreon raised an eyebrow. "The third prince, this guy, the royal brat, strolled in. I heard you took damage in an accident, but you look surprisingly alive. What a shame." Andreon completely ignored the taunt, casually shoving more food into his mouth. "Get straight to the point. Did you just come here to provoke my aggro? Doesn't a royal prince have better quests to grind?" The third prince's face instantly darkened, his eyes burning with toxic rage. A pathetic noob who stabbed himself is acting tough. He quickly regained his composure, locking his piercing gaze onto Andreon. "I heard rumors about your duel with a 2-chain knight. How about I step in as your opponent for that event?" A suffocating heavy silence choked the dining hall as the third prince Julian finally left, leaving behind an infuriatingly arrogant smirk. Andreon remained at the long table, staring blankly at the empty doorway. He furrowed his brows in genuine confusion. What was that mini-boss's deal? Why are the Leonbergs such aggressive mobs? A nearby knight explained with deep reverence for a high-tier player. "My prince, the third Prince Julian, has been renowned as a sword master prodigy since his tutorial days." Andreon maintained his deadpan, totally bored expression. "Seriously, that little brat." The knight added, "At just 14, he has already awakened 2 mana chains. His leveling speed is absolutely terrifying." Suddenly, the heavy silence was shattered by an anxious stutter. "Prince, I sincerely apologize for the interruption, but a massive loot drop of letters has arrived for you." Andreon blinked at the mountain of envelopes. Letters. He picked one up, his gears turning. "Why are the people who ignored this trash tier body suddenly sending me mail?" He ripped open the seal. As his eyes scanned the text, his confusion melted into a cold, calculating glare. The letter read, "I deeply apologize for my past disrespect. My prince, I humbly request a duel. If you are struggling to find a sparring partner, please grant me the first strike." The hidden motive was blatantly obvious, and a dark realization washed over Andreon. They were greedy vultures, circling a free experience drop. He cracked the code. Basically, this was their legal loophole to farm him for points. Andreon lowered the paper, veins popping on his forehead, but then a wicked, villainous grin spread across his face. "Looks like I have become an easy farming target for these losers." Maid Linny. "Yes, my lord." Andreon issued his command, his eyes flashing with a predator's killing intent. "Every single mob who sent these letters, compile a hit list of their names for me." The scene cuts to the stone training grounds, baking under the blinding sun. A crude wooden sword clattered heavily at Andreon's feet. The Count towered over him like an endgame boss. "Equip your weapon. For this wager to actually count, you need at least basic sword mastery. I will not accept pathetic excuses about lacking fundamental skills when you get wiped out." Andrian grumbled internally as he knelt to grab the sword. You could have just handed it to me. What a toxic extra. He gripped the hilt and hoisted it up. Instantly, a violent shockwave of electricity surged through his entire body. His eyes snapped wide open, revealing only the whites. His pupils trembled violently. My muscles are tearing apart, his body locked up in absolute paralyzing agony. The Count stared at him, genuinely stunned by this explosive awakening. Wait a minute. No healing magic for me. His expression remained dead serious. As a knight, shouldn't you know this? Healing magic merely resets the muscles. It doesn't actually make them stronger. The Count let out a heavy sigh. Fine. That wasn't my main point anyway. I'm only going to demonstrate this once today, so you better burn this into your retinas. Behold, this is the foundational technique of our kingdom's knights, the absolute bedrock of all royal swordsmanship. In a flash, the Count vanished, leaving behind only the lethal afterimage of his blade. Multiple strikes erupted simultaneously, weaving an illusion of azure light as a shockwave of wind exploded outward. As he finished his footwork, his stance was absolutely flawless. Andrian sat slumped on the ground, jaw dropped, his eyes reflecting the residual aura of the strike. Did you just say? That's the basic style knights use to build their foundation. The Count smoothly sheathed his sword. Since it's meant for training, it might lack a lethal edge, but it remains utterly faithful to the absolute basics. There is no better path to mastering the blade. Though given your current talent, even this might be too overwhelming. A low rumbling chuckle escaped Andrian's lips. It quickly grew into roaring laughter as he clutched his stomach, howling at the sky. The Count stared at him as if the boy had finally snapped, but Andrian wasn't laughing at the sheer absurdity of the moment. He was laughing at the bitter irony of history. No matter how much time had passed, how could the legendary swordsmanship that once severed the heads of furious dragons be reduced to a mere beginner's exercise? The Count added, of course, this alone won't be enough to win our bet. Once you grasp the basics, you can beg the queen for a new master or… Andrian cut him off completely. He hoisted the heavy wooden sword onto his shoulder, the blazing fire of absolute resolve burning in his eyes. No need. I refuse to learn any other style, because this right here is more than enough. The Count shot him a look of pure skepticism. Suit yourself. Gripping the hilt tightly, Andrian swung his blade. The strike was agonizingly slow, incredibly heavy, and completely pathetic. The weapon wobbled mid-air as he gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. The heartbreaking reality was, the ultimate dragon-slaying technique was now treated as garbage, and he absolutely hated admitting it. Yet, this was the inevitable consequence of time. The modern blade lacked the true will to slaughter dragons. Fools who abandoned the mana heart and forgot how to fuse their spirit into the steel could never comprehend its true devastating value. His deep philosophical revelation was abruptly shattered. The Count easily blocked the clumsy swing of his wooden sword. Flexing your arms won't magically channel power into the blade. Have you already forgotten my demonstration? Root your strength in your core and legs. Andrian dropped to one knee, gasping for air as his weak body screamed in agony. It was true. Right now, he was trapped in a pathetic, clumsy vessel, barely able to mimic a watered-down imitation of his legacy. He jammed the wooden sword into the dirt and forced himself back up. I will prove to everyone that the dragon-slaying arts are not some discarded trash you can throw away. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. A whole week vanished. Under the crushing pressure of his relentless training, the stubborn layers of fat finally began to burn away. After an entire month, deep within his darkened room, Andrian sat in deep meditation. A brilliant sphere of azure mana glowed fiercely between his palms. His face had slimmed down, revealing a razor-sharp jawline. System alert: constitution successfully altered through extreme physical torment. Morbid obesity trait downgraded to standard overweight. Metabolic rate significantly enhanced. The clumsiness trait has been completely eradicated. Training efficiency drastically increased. Your fundamental constitution has evolved through the continuous accumulation of pure mana. Mana sensitivity disorder eliminated. True mana sensitivity trait acquired. His swings felt infinitely more natural than a month ago. The wooden blade sliced through the air with an ear-piercing shriek. Stop right there, the Count roared. But Andrian's eyes already glowed with eerie blue lightning. He was completely deaf to the command. Stronger than yesterday. More flawless than a second ago. Did you not hear me say stop? The Count bellowed. But the boy had fully descended into a martial trance. He raised his blade to the heavens. The wood groaned in pure agony under his crushing grip and flooding mana. Crack. The wooden sword splintered. Rain poured down, turning the training grounds into a slick mud pit. The pitch-black sky was illuminated only by jagged lightning. The Count watched in absolute shock. Blood dripped from the prince's hands, mixing with the rain on the freezing stone. Andrian blinked, snapping out of his trance, his glowing blue eyes widening in overwhelming exhaustion. The massive wooden training dummy lay cleanly severed. It had exploded outward as if struck by divine lightning. The delayed aftermath of his ultimate strike finally settled. The Count instantly dashed forward, grabbing his nephew's shoulders. "You reckless fool, training in weather like this. If you were holding a real blade, you wouldn't have made it out alive." System alert, total awakening achieved following extreme hyperfocus state. However, the mortal flesh has permanently memorized that sensation of crossing its ultimate limits. Andrian stared blankly at his own hands, utterly numb to the agonizing pain. New trait acquired. Hyperfocus. A weak, delirious chuckle clawed its way out of his throat. "Ha ha. If I push my focus like that again, actual lightning might just strike me dead." Thud. His legs gave out and darkness claimed him. "Your Highness," the panicked knight screamed in terror. But the Count had already caught him. He gazed down at his nephew's face, surprisingly peaceful now despite the brutal bone-breaking regimen. The deep disdain that once clouded the Count's eyes had vanished. It was replaced by a complicated, genuine concern for this stubborn brat. Sometime later, Andrian slowly fluttered his eyes open. Sitting up groggily, he thought to himself, "Did I really pass out?" Rubbing his throbbing temples, his mind raced. "I definitely underestimated the frail limits of this human shell. Back when I was a legendary weapon, I achieved every milestone in existence. The unsung hero of endless wars. The unmatched sword saint. The absolute mercenary king. The founding monarch who paved the way to glory, ascending both body and soul. I guided the greatest heroes of Groon. Yet those majestic memories are tainted by a hollow realization. A ring of light exposing the crushing loneliness of my past existence as a mere tool. A wise advisor and a brilliant master. But eternally destined to remain a third wheel in someone else's story." He stared down at his very own human hands, rough, scarred, and trembling violently from sheer exhaustion. "That is exactly why I swung my blade until I broke through the heavens, intoxicated by the sheer thrill of claiming every drop of sweat, every ounce of effort, and every sweet victory as purely my own. But at this reckless pace, this fragile vessel will crumble to dust. I must find perfect harmony between my mortal body and mind." Time flowed steadily in the heavy silence of deep meditation and pure focus. It's been over a month since I forged my mana heart. I've hoarded a massive reserve of aura, which means I can finally ascend to the next stage. A glowing system window instantly materialized. Through relentless, unyielding effort, you have successfully accumulated sufficient mana to breach the next threshold. His physical vessel could finally endure more mana. His magic core had officially expanded. Through this massive awakening, his entire physiology had completely evolved. Andrion Leonbeck's eyes snapped open, blazing with fierce azure light. "It's done. Now let's test it out." Taking a deep breath, he swung his blade. A system window appeared. You reached the sword path tier. Basic aura manipulation is now unlocked. Andrion Leonbeck smirked. "With this, I can easily handle the fundamentals." Days later, the castle courtyard buzzed with gossiping knights. Count Bevan Hatz glared at Andrion Leonbeck. "Wild rumors are spreading across the kingdom." Andrion Leonbeck casually asked. "Rumors?" Count Bevan Hatz looked absolutely drained. "They are completely furious about your ridiculous bet. Thanks to you, my life is a headache. Just find a dueling partner quickly." Andrion Leonbeck looked up totally unfazed. "About that, I've already chosen my perfect prey." His younger brother's image flashed. "More importantly, uncle, facing a two-chain magic user right away would be suicide, so I'll crush a few single chain scrubs first." The Count sighed. "Do as you wish." Andrion Leonbeck glanced at a knight. "How's my request?" The knight bowed, handing over a file. "Yes, your highness. I arranged everything. Here is the list of fools requesting a duel with you. But, your highness, are you seriously planning to spar with them?" Andrion Leonbeck replied. "Why not?" The knight's face instantly went pale. "Most harbor deep grudges against you. They might try to kill you during a spar." Andrion Leonbeck just smiled, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "I know. That is exactly why my dear uncle will be the referee." Count Bevan Hatz stared at him in utter silence. Resting a wooden sword on his shoulder, Andrion Leonbeck smirked. "I'm not asking for much. Just ensure nobody dies today. You can grant that tiny favor, right?" Days later, the first battle arrived. Blazing sunlight beat down on the palace gates. A brown-haired youth marched forward, sweat dripping down his furious face. "This is the First Prince's palace, where that bastard lives." He crushed a crumpled paper, his face twisted into a storm of absolute rage and anxiety. The system window introduced him Taylor Theohaim, second son of a lowly baron family. Flashback to a lavish golden banquet hall. A younger, heavier Andrion Leonbeck was hopelessly drunk. He cackled like a maniac, pointing his greasy finger at a humble, noble family. "Look at that pathetic trash. From clothes to attitude, he reeks of a peasant, trembling with joy just to attend a royal party." Taylor's blood boiled. His father and brother suffered an unforgivable humiliation from that trash prince. Their family honor shattered, becoming the ultimate laughingstock of high society even today. Andrion Leonbeck. Today I will make you pay a devastating price for that day. Stepping into the arena, he found Andreon Leonbeck waiting beside the imposing Count Bevan Hatz. Taylor offered a stiff bow. "Greetings, First Prince Andreon Leonbeck." He drew his blade with a chilling ring. "I am Taylor, second son of the Theoheim family." A single-chain apprentice knight and practitioner of Theoheim's sword arts, Andreon Leonbeck stared with bored, dead eyes. "Good heavens, why so dramatic? This is barely a sparring session, not a formal duel. Is this clown seriously a knight? He looks incredibly weak." Taylor's face twitched with rage. "The rumors were true, arrogant, classless, and ignorant. That is enough." Count Bevan Hatz's heavy voice sliced the tension. He stepped forward with absolute authority. "I understand your feelings, but the match hasn't begun. Retract your killing intent." Taylor flinched, realizing he crossed the line. "Count Bevan Hatz, it is an absolute honor." The Count glared at Andreon Leonbeck. "You should have behaved better previously." Andreon Leonbeck clicked his tongue. "Geez, always bringing up ancient history." The Count raised his hand. "Take positions." Let the duel begin. A razor-thin blue aura erupted around Taylor's entire body. He vanished at blinding speed, leaving light streaks. Instantly, they collided. Blades locked together as steel screamed against steel. Taylor glared murderously, eyes burning with effort. But Andreon Leonbeck remained utterly calm, effortlessly parrying the lethal strike with a simple, minimalist movement. Andreon Leonbeck scoffed. Too many wasted movements. Taylor's eyes widened in sheer horror. What Andreon Leonbeck hadn't budged an inch. "Is this a magic core?" Suddenly blasted backward, he screamed, "A magic core cannot block a mana chain." Andreon Leonbeck casually replied, "Maybe because you only have one chain. My hand barely tingles." Out of nowhere, a deep vibration echoed from Taylor's weapon. The spectating knights gasped in shock. That sound, from his blade. Could it be Count Bevan Hatz's eyes widened in utter disbelief? No way. Sword resonance. Taylor lunged again, screaming in absolute desperation. Impossible. He brought his sword crashing down with soul-crushing force. Andreon Leonbeck blocked it again. Sparks exploded everywhere. After an earth-shattering clash, neither yielded. Feeling slightly strained, Andreon Leonbeck thought, "They say a single chain is incompatible with a magic core. That theory is accurate. My mana could violently backlash any time." Yet he glanced up at Taylor, whose face was twisted into a demonic mask of pure malice. "You're the second son of Baron Theoheim, right?" Andreon Leonbeck raised his blade, his demeanor shifting into absolute dominance. "You seriously need to cool your head." The world dissolved into Andreon Leonbeck's inner mindscape. Swallowed by absolute darkness, he focused. Awaken. Whether a demonic sword, holy blade, or otherwise. My soul's magic core has embraced a colossal will. A terrifying hue painted his colorless core. The dormant dragon slaying will finally awaken. Blade memories synced with a heart forged to slaughter dragons. Back in reality, Andreon Leonbeck's azure aura morphed into bloodthirsty crimson. The dragon-slaying magic core activated, forged for ultimate destruction. This is the true power of the dragon-slaying blade. Demonic energy erupted skyward into a terrifying pillar of crimson fire. A legendary dragon phantom materialized behind Andreon Leonbeck. Its jaws opened in a silent roar, shaking his opponent's soul. Count Bevan Hatz's legendary composure shattered into absolute panic. But it was too late. Andreon lunged forward, his eyes blazing with demonic fury as his blade unleashed a massive crimson arc of pure destruction. A brief memory flickered right before their clash. "Uncle, I have one crucial favor to ask before our sparring session begins. If my killing intent goes out of control, you absolutely must step in." Back in the present, a blinding eruption of azure lightning exploded as the Count desperately blocked the catastrophic strike. The overwhelming force of his divine intervention triggered massive shockwaves, violently shattering the solid stone arena. Andreon was brutally blasted backward. The surrounding royal guards, previously frozen in utter shock, frantically drew their blades and swarmed the Count in absolute panic. "Count Bevan Hatz, have you lost your mind?" A knight screamed in sheer terror. "This is blatant royal assassination." Meanwhile, Andreon desperately forced himself up, his vision swimming in a dizzying haze. "Stand down instantly," he commanded with authority. "I specifically ordered him to intervene." The bewildered knights finally lowered their weapons, gasping, "Your Highness." Andreon stared at his violently shaking hands, his mind reeling from the agonizing backlash. I asked for a block, not a devastating blow that would completely knock my soul out." Thud. His eyes instantly rolled back as gravity claimed his battered body. Pitch-black darkness swallowed his consciousness while desperate screams of "Your Highness" faded away. Time lost all meaning within the vast void of his internal azure aura. His mana core throbbed violently, desperately suppressing the overwhelming power that nearly annihilated it. Andreon suddenly shot up from his luxurious bed, gasping for precious air. Drenched in cold sweat, he tightly clutched his chest, utterly relieved to feel his mana core stabilizing. "I seriously thought my mana core was going to instantly shatter." His monstrous aura is on a completely different level than those pathetic grunts, and I tanked that catastrophic hit directly. Thankfully, my system shows no permanent internal damage. Well, despite the absolute chaos, everything somehow played out perfectly in the end. After all, I still claimed ultimate victory in that clash. Suddenly, the heavy door groaned open, casting a towering shadow. What exactly is so amusing? The Count demanded, his imposing aura dominating the dimly lit hallway. What brings a legendary warrior to my humble chambers? Andreon casually smirked, showing zero fear. The suffocating tension was undeniable as the Count loomed over the bed, his face twisting with terrifying fury and sheer disbelief. What in the world was that demonic technique? I absolutely never taught you such a cursed, bloodthirsty sword style. Unfazed, Andreon stared right back at his furious uncle, his striking blue eyes radiating absolute icy calmness. I am merely staying perfectly loyal to the true essence of the blade. The Count was completely paralyzed by the sheer audacity. How could this arrogant rookie preach about sword mastery without ever surviving a real bloody battlefield? The room's atmosphere instantly plummeted into a freezing abyss. So in your twisted mind, the supreme path of the sword is simply pure, unadulterated killing intent. While it is incredibly brutal and horrifyingly ugly, it remains an undeniable truth. Andreon blinked, completely taken aback by this unexpected revelation. Wow, I completely expected an incredibly long, boring lecture about how the true way of the sword is absolute perfection and honor. The Count's lips curled into a dangerously pragmatic smirk. Listen closely, I am a ruthless soldier, not a noble knight. I proudly walk the blood-soaked path of absolute victory, not self-righteous justice. However, your terrifying blade has crossed a dangerous line. If that monstrous killing intent consumes you entirely, you will blindly slaughter both loyal allies and sworn enemies. Andreon absorbed the heavy wisdom in silence, his true intentions completely exposed. Ah, so that is exactly why you caused this massive scene, right? You want to desperately fix my corrupted path. Crossing his heavily scarred arms, the Count's terrifying gaze locked onto him. I will be watching your every move. Let us see if you ultimately surrender to your inner demons. Following 3 grueling days of intense sparring, a completely broken Taylor Theoheim collapsed in absolute defeat. Meanwhile, Andreon stood completely untouched. So your name is Taylor Theoheim, correct? Excellent endurance. The poor guy had desperately survived against an overwhelmingly bloodthirsty blade for 3 consecutive days. It was an absolute living nightmare for him. Looking down at him, Andreon coldly remarked, truly pathetic, isn't it? Your shattered ego would have healed slightly if you landed just one lucky strike, but you utterly failed. Taylor choked completely, humiliated and unable to fight back. Turning his piercing gaze, Andreon commanded the trembling maid, bring the special item here instantly. The anxious maid heavily struggled to drag an incredibly massive enchanted wooden treasure chest forward. Seeing this ridiculous sight, Taylor gasped, Your Highness, what exactly is this? Dropping his usual arrogance, Andreon's aura turned dead serious. I am aware of the absolute hell I put you through previously. This might not erase my sins, but directly deliver this fortune to Baron Taylor Theoheim. Taylor clutched the heavy chest, paralyzed by shock. Andreon awkwardly scratched his cheek, breaking the tension. It is nothing crazy, merely some pure gold coins and a royal letter. Now vanish from my sight and travel safely. As Taylor's exhausted silhouette faded into the breathtaking golden sunset, his deeply emotional roar echoed back. Thank you endlessly, Your Highness. Honestly, I have zero cosmic obligation to clean up the original trash owner's catastrophic mess. Still, if I force someone to grind, I should reward them like a true boss. Several intense days later, explosive rumors absolutely flooded the entire royal capital. The magnificent White Castle touched the heavens, but the hidden shadows crawled with incredibly venomous backstabbing whispers. That completely worthless trash, Prince's disastrous sparring match, had instantly become the capital's juiciest scandal. His legendary arrogance has finally dug his own inescapable, pathetic grave. The infamous First Prince is finally about to pay the ultimate bloody price for his tyrannical history. I honestly cannot wait to witness his spectacular, absolutely humiliating downfall. Yet absolute utter confusion quickly paralyzed the nobles as the highly anticipated downfall simply never happened. Days of eager waiting turned into agonizing silence with zero signs of his bloody execution. Instead, completely unbelievable positive rumors began aggressively dominating the streets. You're asking about the legendary clash, a heavily armored golden knight chuckled. Well, it seems the masses completely misunderstood everything. The First Prince is absolutely nothing like the demonic trash the rumors claim. A blue-haired elite quickly nodded. Both legendary warriors simply went all out, and that is the only hidden truth. The blonde knight brightly laughed. Blackmailed? Absolutely not. I finally witnessed His Highness's awe-inspiring sincerity firsthand. The backstabbing nobles were completely paralyzed by sheer horror. What kind of twisted sorcery is this? The imperial family must have brutally silenced them. Smash! Andreon violently obliterated a wooden barrel with his bare fist. Silence my foot. That coward is just incredibly humiliated that I utterly crushed him. Do these incredibly pathetic nobles seriously have zero important quests to handle? They should absolutely use their miserable lives for something productive. The Count merely flashed a highly amused smirk. Oh, suddenly, you are the absolute paragon of incredible productivity. Andreon casually snatched a passing royal guard by the heavy armor. Hey, you make sure to completely hype up my flawless victory outside, understood. The absolutely terrified knight frantically nodded. Consider it perfectly done, my lord. Andreon smirked triumphantly as the guard desperately sprinted away. These annoying trash rumors should completely die down now, right? A worried maid watched him closely. Whispers claimed the prince threatened his last opponent to fake a victory. Andreon stared into the void, his face darkened by pure frustration. Forget everything. Just focus on the blade. His sword carved a massive arc of azure mana through the air. He moved at dizzying speeds, leaving a trail of blue flames behind him. He spun into a relentless flurry of strikes. The very air trembled under his magical aura's overwhelming pressure. He was a total blur of motion. Dripping with sweat and fiercely focused, he poured all his rage into the steel. Then beneath the clear sky, a knight approached holding an official dossier. Andreon paused and asked, "How many duel opponents are left?" The knight reviewed the list with a grave expression. "Whoever arrives today is the absolute last one." Andreon caught his breath, his eyes sharp. "These mere apprentice knights simply cannot satisfy my blade anymore." The knight continued, "This final challenger has truly mastered the way of the sword. Not just settling for polished family techniques, this prodigy actually joined an official knight order to hone their deadly skills." An amused smirk crossed his face. An apprentice from the Iron Lion Knights, that legendary name carried immense weight. Owen. The heavy wooden doors groaned open, armored footsteps echoing across the stone floor. A solitary figure stepped inside, bathed in the blinding light of the entryway. An observing knight gasped, "Is that really her?" Spotting the crest on her armor, another knight nodded quickly. Without a doubt, the cliffside flower, the thorny rose. The woman who shattered every man's heart. Whispers erupted among the sidelines as knights blushed fiercely behind their heavy helmets. She was an absolute unparalleled beauty. To think a goddess like her would come here in person. I guess our prince does have some infamous talent. Still, wouldn't it be highly entertaining to see him completely humiliated by her blade? She halted her steps. A woman of breathtaking beauty stood before them. Her expression was ice-cold, rigidly disciplined, and utterly unapproachable. The Iron Lion Knights were celebrated as the kingdom's absolute vanguard in power and prestige. Their apprentice, Owen, was a terrifyingly brilliant prospect already guaranteed an official seat among their elite ranks. Reality suddenly crashed down on Andreon as sheer panic washed over his face. Why would a heaven-defying genius like her seek me out for a bloody duel? A silver-haired knight delivered the brutal truth with a highly skeptical glare. "Well, there was a tiny misunderstanding between you and Lady Owen in the past." He fired back instantly. "Misunderstanding my foot? Just look at me. I definitely provoked her all by myself. Spit it out, what the hell did I do back then?" The maid hesitated, her anxious eyes darting around the courtyard. "The truth is, my prince, you openly harassed Lady Owen." Andreon's face drained of all color in sheer horror. His eyes lost focus as the grim reality set in. "Ah, you absolute lunatic." A vile memory resurfaced of his arrogant, overweight past self staring at young Owen with disgusting lust. He had forcefully grabbed her shoulder. "You said your name was Owen, right? You are exactly as gorgeous as the rumors claim. How about a little deal? Be my personal exclusive maid." The sharp slap echoed decisively. Owen furiously swatted his greasy hand away. "Listen here, prince. Knights are not your private toys to play with." The fat prince's face contorted into an ugly mess of fiery rage and deep humiliation. Veins bulged violently on his forehead. "You repulsive, ugly thing." Snapping back to the present, Andreon stood utterly paralyzed, a piece of his soul dying inside. That is exactly what the servants gossiped about. It sounds exactly like the sick flirting of a total scumbag. That is right, this is my unavoidable karma. Because no sane person in this world could ever look at her and call her ugly. She delivered a perfectly crisp military salute, her hand resting over her heart. "It has been a while, prince. I see you have not changed," he replied with deep awkwardness. "I would not say that. I have changed quite a bit." He internally screamed. The guy operating this body is completely different now. But yes, this is definitely my inescapable karma. Heavy footsteps interrupted them as a maid announced Count Bevan Hatz's grand arrival. He stepped forward to observe. Owen immediately offered a respectful bow. "Apprentice of the Iron Lions, Owen greets the honorable Count." The Count leaned in closely and whispered, "Do be careful, my dear. The prince's blade is notoriously vicious." Andreon's face twisted at this blatant betrayal. Hey, what happened to being a strictly neutral referee? The Count totally ignored him, flashing a highly satisfied smirk before opening his eyes to command the arena. "Take your starting positions." As of this moment, the duel officially begins. Andreon watched her step forward, his confident smile growing wider. "Let me test the bite of this little Iron Lion cub." Owen seized the initiative. In a flash, she lunged forward, dropping her center of gravity and drawing her blade. His sharp eyes effortlessly tracked her lightning-fast movements. Her footwork is actually quite solid. Boom! Owen unleashed an explosive barrage of lethal strikes. Her sword was entirely engulfed in blinding blue arcs of lightning. Andreon blocked the onslaught, but her ferocious speed and heavy impacts aggressively forced him backward. A low growl escaped his lips as immense strain tore through his unconditioned muscles. Mana backlash was already kicking in. Owen capitalized on his weakness, her glowing purple eyes locked onto him with absolute killer intent. She surged forward again. Andreon was violently pushed back, his boots skidding across the rugged stone. I am completely trapped in her rhythm. This ends now. A sinister crimson energy began swirling around his chest. The very atmosphere shattered instantly. A terrifying blood-red aura erupted violently from his body. The legendary Dragon Slayer magic heart had officially awakened. Owen froze in her tracks, her eyes blown wide in pure shock. Faced with that chaotic, hyper-violent energy, her blade actually hesitated for a crucial split second. Noticing her slight fatigue, Andreon let out a dark chuckle. I guess knights really are built differently. You are definitely in a totally different realm from the usual garbage I fight. In the heat of battle, a glowing golden system interface flashed across his vision. Notification. Judgment Authority is now available for strictly limited usage. A shimmering holographic status window materialized beside her. Name Owen Kurjan. Age 19. Class Apprentice Knight. Sword Aptitude Rank A. Archery Rank B. Hidden Traits. Highly competitive sword genius, peerless goddess, beauty, pure softness beneath a steel exterior. Andreon smirked devilishly, his crimson eyes burning brightly amidst the dark shadows of his overwhelming power. If my limited system authority can easily scan her stats, it proves she is either weaker than me or perfectly matched. He stomped the earth, shattering the ground beneath him. The real slaughter starts right now. Andreon launched himself like a cannon, swinging his greatsword in a devastating overhead cleave. They were instantly locked in a deadly dance of destruction, their violent red and blue auras aggressively crashing against the ancient castle walls. The evening sky slowly darkened. Both warriors gasped for air, heavy sweat dripping from Andreon's sharp jawline. Owen was clearly pushed to her absolute limits, her chest heaving heavily. The setting sun bathed the bloody arena in a deep, dramatic amber glow. Suddenly, the sharp ring of steel interrupted them. Count Bevan Hat swiftly leaped between the two fighters, his blade halting their deadly clash. Blades drawn, halt, that is enough for today. We continue tomorrow. Andreon wiped his mouth, clicking his tongue in pure disappointment. I was just about to end this. Owen refused to yield. Panting heavily, she shot back, how coincidental. I was about to do the exact same thing. Intense sparks of rivalry flew between their glaring eyes. Oh really? Andreon challenged mockingly. Want to keep going? Owen narrowed her eyes as fierce purple aura erupted around her. Anytime you wish, your highness. The Count's sudden roar instantly silenced them both. Enough. It is getting late. Both of you seek medical treatment immediately. The royal healer rushed forward frantically. Prince, I will heal you at once. Goodness, there is a nasty bruise here too. Nearby, Owen received her own healing, but she sharply turned her head, refusing any eye contact. Her expression was a chaotic mix of sheer exhaustion and unyielding stubbornness. They exchanged one last silent, piercing glare before parting ways. Under the rising sun, Owen clenched her fists, her mind blazing with absolute determination. I will absolutely never lose to him. Several days passed without a clear victor. The spectating knights murmured among themselves in absolute disbelief. Is it really the third day of this insane duel? One knight whispered back, honestly, I am completely blown away. He continued, I knew Lady Owen was a prodigy, but the First Prince's combat skills are just as unbelievably terrifying. Let us pray we get a winner today. In the arena, the two rivals faced off once more. Their blades were lowered, yet dripping with lethal readiness. Andreon's voice shattered the heavy silence. Before we start another round, I have something to say. Owen glared at him with icy hostility. Do not tell me you are begging for mercy now. I will not accept any pathetic apologies. Andreon's expression shifted into a knowing smirk. I see. You plan to reclaim your shattered pride using your own overwhelming strength. That is an admirable mindset. But no, that is not it. He paused dramatically. Since we are fighting this fiercely, shouldn't there be a glorious prize for the victor? Owen tilted her head in pure confusion. Andreon loudly declared for the entire arena to hear. How about this? The pathetic loser must grant one absolute wish to the undisputed winner. If ordered to kneel, they hit the dirt. If ordered to beg for forgiveness, they grovel. The observing knights immediately screamed in sheer absolute panic. Your Highness, as royal blood, you cannot make such outrageous wagers. Please retract your statement instantly. But Andreon dismissively waved them off without even glancing back. Outsiders, stay out of this. What do you say? Owen closed her eyes for a fleeting second, then stepped forward fearlessly, hand resting upon her hilt. Though I am merely an apprentice, I proudly serve the profoundly loyal Leonbeck Knight Order. I dare not commit such blatant disrespect against royalty. However, if your highness officially permits it, I suppose I have every right to claim the spoils of this high-stakes gamble." Andreon burst into manic laughter, his body violently erupting in blazing crimson flames once more. "Excellent mindset. You better not choke on those confident words later." They clashed with explosive force. This time, Andreon held absolutely nothing back. Demonic red mana roared as he pushed beyond his limits. Owen parried desperately, her eyes widening in sheer terror. Too fast. He was nowhere near this fast yesterday. Was he hiding his true monstrous power all along? Andreon's eyes glowed with an absolutely demonic crimson glint as a wicked smirk crossed his face. The terrifying phantom of a colossal dragon roared behind him, Dragon Slayer Magic Core. He unleashed a devastating barrage of heavy strikes. Owen desperately raised her blade while shockwaves blasted dust into the sky. A vicious slash barely grazed her cheek. Drops of fresh crimson blood trickled down her beautiful shocked face. Without a single breath of hesitation, Andreon launched an even faster, more catastrophic second strike. Andreon's legendary blade utterly shattered her absolute defenses. His face was a terrifying mask of pure concentration and overwhelming dominance. The earth-shattering impact spawned a massive dust cloud, totally blinding the first abat. Entire arena. As the dust finally settled, the silhouette of the undisputed victor emerged. The setting sun cast long, dramatic shadows. Owen was forced to her knees, her once proud sword completely snapped in half. The entire audience watched in absolutely stunned, breathless silence. The Count's eyes widened in sheer, unimaginable horror. Owen stared blankly at the dirt, panting heavily, her pupils trembling in utter despair. "This is impossible. I actually lost the absolute wager." The crushing reality of defeat suffocated her. Andreon glared down at Owen, Kurgan like a conqueror. "I want you." The position of royal guard for the first prince, a man eternally infamous as the kingdom's most degenerate trash. Yet contrary to all her agonizing fears, the job was surprisingly manageable. Flashback to the fateful first encounter between this loyal guard and their new master. He bowed with profound reverence, maintaining a flawlessly strict professional demeanor while formally introducing himself. "So you are my new royal guard," the guard responded with absolute unwavering duty. "Yes, I eagerly look forward to serving you, my prince." However, the prince sitting before him was massively overweight, disgustingly unkempt, and radiating toxic arrogance. He simply rested his chin on his hand, looking overwhelmingly bored with life. "All right then. I am counting on you." Surprisingly, His Highness did not throw sudden, violently explosive tantrums like the vicious kingdom rumors had claimed. Under the blazing sun of the castle courtyard, the guards stood utterly dumbfounded. The notoriously chubby prince sprinted past him, panting violently, sweat flying everywhere in a desperate, agonizing effort to completely transform his pathetic physique. The royal guard quietly observed that fiercely unwavering, deeply thoughtful expression. It totally contradicted the nasty rumors. Later, merciless heavy rain furiously lashed against the gray stone training ground, blurring the entire world in freezing watery streaks. Yet completely defying the catastrophic torrential downpour, a solitary figure remained stubbornly planted before the wooden training dummy. Andreon, totally drenched to his very bones, furiously swung his wooden sword with an utterly relentless, monstrous level of unbreakable determination. The guards watched nervously from the sidelines. One muttered, "This storm is getting insanely dangerous," while another anxiously added, "Shouldn't we absolutely stop the prince right now?" Suddenly, an apocalyptic thunderclap violently ripped through the sky. The wooden dummy completely exploded under the prince's devastating strike. The guard's eyes widened in sheer panic as Andreon staggered dangerously. "Your Highness, watch out." But as the lightning illuminated the chaotic scene, it revealed Andreon's exhausted yet triumphantly euphoric smile amidst the shattered splinters. The guard was suddenly struck by a profoundly deep, earth-shattering realization. "I get the undeniable feeling this prince is destined to become an absolute legend." That was what he had thought back then. Fast forward to the present, the epic duel had finally ended. Andreon stood tall and intensely majestic, casting a long, dominant shadow over the utterly defeated female knight. Glaring down, he dropped his shockingly blunt demand. "I want you." The crowd's reaction was instantaneous and completely catastrophically chaotic. On the sidelines, the spectating knights gasped in absolute scandalous horror, their faces flushing furiously red. "Huh!" One practically screamed while another covered their mouth, whispering, "What an absolutely legendary scandal." Even the stoic guard watching intensely had to gulp hard, a massive wave of absolute doubt creeping into his shocked mind. Did I completely misjudge his true dark intentions? Trembling in overwhelming humiliation, Owen slowly looked up. Her fierce purple eyes widened in total absolute disbelief and blazing fury as the prince's massive shadow completely engulfed her trembling figure. Was that twisted desire truly what the first prince crazily hungered for? But Andreon stood firmly planted. He stared at the kneeling woman not with filthy lust, but with an intensely cold, chillingly calculating gaze. Of course, in your current pathetic state, you are merely a completely ordinary apprentice knight. You cannot even defeat a notoriously trashy, completely ruined prince. That is why I desire your boundless potential. Owen Kurgan, I want your future. Become my personal sword. I need a loyal knight to walk my path, not a royal guard bound by imperial decree, but a magnificent blade that belongs entirely to me. Andreon activated his system's vision. A glowing golden status window materialized beside her. Talent rank, a swordsmanship. Traits, sword genius, fierce competitiveness, and pure spirit. A smirk crossed his face. From what I can see, your talent with a blade is exceptional. Owen stood frozen. Dust and a fresh cut marred her cheek as the sheer weight of his offer washed over her. Past memories crashed through her mind like a tidal wave. She saw herself in the grand training hall again, surrounded by men yet utterly alone. I finally became the majestic knight I always dreamed of being. But the venomous whispers of the crowd continued to echo violently in her memories. That arrogant little girl, the rumors are definitely true. She just has an incredibly striking face, nothing more. She bitterly recalled her endless struggles. The heavy clash of steel. The blood, the sweat, the desperate drive to prove her worth to everyone. Nobody respected me as a true warrior, so I bled twice as much as the rest. In her memories, she stood victorious over a crushed male opponent. The referee officially declared her the winner, yet her eyes held absolutely no joy. Even after utterly annihilating every single squire in her entire generation with her terrifying speed and flawless technique, the mocking whispers of the men never ceased. The men never saw a true warrior standing before them. They only saw a glamorous trophy. Isn't Lady Owen just our beautiful little moving flower vase? Protecting a stunning beauty like Owen is a true knight's duty. That crushing reality shattered her soul. I can never be a true knight. But snapping violently back to the present, Owen gazed up at Andreon. Hot tears blurred her vision as a faint blush warmed her cheeks. This was not some flutter of childish romance. It was the overwhelming, pure emotion of finally truly being acknowledged by someone strong. She stared deeply at the prince who stood bathed in golden sunlight. His expression was unshakable and dead serious. He actually wants my boundless potential, my future as a warrior. Could His Highness actually be sincere? Pushing herself up, she met his intense gaze head-on. Swear one thing to me. Promise that you will never treat me as a fragile woman, but solely as your loyal knight. If you do, I will bend to the prince's will. Andreon did not hesitate for even a fraction of a second. I swear it. Instantly, Owen dropped to one knee. Bowing her head under the radiant golden light, she initiated the sacred knight's vow. I, Owen, firstborn of the Kurgan bloodline, pledge my eternal loyalty to Prince Andreon Leonbeck. My blade and my very life now belong solely to your highness. Nearby Count Bevan watched this legendary moment with a profoundly complicated expression. Drawing a gleaming steel blade, Andreon improvised the sacred knighting ritual. As the rightful heir of the Leonbeck dynasty, I officially dub thee my knight. Be courageous in battle, be honorable in life, and remain forever loyal to me. However, the corrupt nobility could never comprehend the absolute purity of their bond. Over the next few days, toxic rumors spread like a deadly plague through the grand palace corridors. She pledged her life to that royal trash. Does that make any logical sense? And an oath forged from some petty underground gamble too. We absolutely have to shatter this ridiculous contract somehow. A blonde knight whispered back through gritted teeth. But I heard she already completely rejected our generous intervention to save her. The malicious gossip soon turned increasingly dark and utterly filthy. Good lord, from what the shadows whisper, isn't there something much dirtier going on here? Female knights giggled wickedly in the shadows behind hidden smiles. Are they sleeping together? His reputation is already garbage. He probably could not take her as his public mistress, so he used the sacred knight's oath as a pathetic cover. The whole situation reeks of corruption from the start. Why else would a noble lady attend some shady underground duel hosted by that royal scumbag? Meanwhile, isolated in his private chambers, Andreon was furiously tearing at his hair. This is driving me completely insane. What kind of irredeemable villain was I? Am I literally the worst piece of trash alive? Carl stood quietly in the shadows. Your Highness, regarding what you declared the other day. Andreon blinked in total confusion. When was this? The night continued. A few days ago, during the grand finale. Suddenly, the memory of his harsh words to Carl struck him. Oh, that incident. Is that still bothering you? It was nothing but the harsh truth. If the Emperor sent a royal decree right now ordering you far away, you would leave instantly. Am I wrong? If you wish, you can always swear an oath later. Carl hesitated, cold sweat beating on his forehead. If I offered my eternal vow right now, would you accept it? Andreon answered instantly. His expression turned ice cold. No. Carl looked utterly devastated. Andreon just turned away, staring blankly out the window. I have no desire to claim you. Raising someone like you brings me absolutely zero joy. Carl's voice trembled. Do you truly mean that? Andrian thought to himself. I am dead serious. Moments later, the prince broke the wax seal on a newly arrived letter. It was addressed directly to the First Prince of Leonbeck. Andrion Leonbeck's confinement is hereby officially lifted. You are commanded to attend the upcoming imperial banquet. Andrion stared at the parchment, completely bewildered. Wait, what exactly did I do to deserve this? They ended my house arrest a whole month and a half early, after acting like they would lock me in this palace forever and never see me again. He sighed heavily. I seriously cannot fathom what that man is plotting anymore. Striding down the grand corridor with Carl, the knight cautiously asked, Is your highness not thrilled that your confinement ended? Andrian shrugged dismissively. Honestly, I could not care less. Even if I walk out those palace gates right now, I have absolutely nowhere to go. I have zero allies in this world and nobody waiting for me. Suddenly, a flustered maid rushed out to block his path. Your highness, an urgent invitation just arrived for you. Andrion blinked in surprise. An invitation for me? He snatched the envelope. It bore a shimmering silver crest. Yes, my lord. This exact one. He ripped it open and scanned the contents. An exclusive social club designed solely for elite noble heirs. The maid nodded incredibly awkwardly. It is a private social gathering that your highness used to frequent. Andrian pointed at his own face, utterly dumbfounded. Me. He noticed the maid's deeply uncomfortable expression. Wait, is this some kind of weird underground club? The maid completely avoided his piercing gaze. Well, for a commoner woman like myself, the so-called refined tastes of high-born nobles are entirely beyond my understanding. A shiver of pure disgust ran down his spine. The horrifying realization hit him. It is just a trashy excuse to get drunk and hunt women. He fiercely crumpled the parchment. Forget this garbage. My training schedule is packed enough. Why would I waste my time at some useless party? But just as he was about to toss it, his eyes locked onto the signature at the very bottom. To the wise, courageous, and profound Prince Andrion, from your eternal brother-in-arms, Bernardo of the Leon bloodline. Andrion froze instantly. He pulled the paper closer, his eyes narrowing sharply. Bernardo, now that is a name etched deep into my memories. If my uncle's history lessons were correct, they were the family who stubbornly protected the ancient magic core to the bitter end. A legendary bloodline that collapsed into ruin a century ago. A dangerous glint flashed in his eyes. I suppose I should make an appearance after all. The maid quickly bowed her head. Understood, your highness. I shall prepare your formal attire. Staring down at the battered invitation, Andrion gripped it until his knuckles turned white. A predatory smirk crept onto his face as his true motive surfaced. Let us just hope that fallen family hasn't completely lost its warrior pride. Time flowed by peacefully. Sunlight poured into the luxurious dressing room. The master tailor bowed with absolute reverence. His eyes sparkled with immense professional pride at his latest masterpiece. Your highness, does the attire meet your royal expectations? I made sure to follow every single one of your precise commands. Pitch black fabric, minimalist details, and a flawlessly sleek design. Standing before the grand mirror was a completely transformed physical vessel. The pathetic, bloated figure of the past had vanished entirely. In its place stood a strikingly handsome youth. His golden hair and piercing blue eyes radiated an undeniable aura. The tailor could not hold back his overwhelming praise. Yet your commanding presence remains as absolute as ever. Your highness. Andrion inspected his sharp reflection. I truly burned off a massive amount of weight. The tailor nodded frantically. Your measurements have literally been cut in half, sire. I shall personally craft your imperial banquet attire as well. My work will begin this very second. But Andrion calmly raised a hand. A confident smirk played on his lips. Hold off on that. By the time the banquet arrives, my physical stats will have evolved once again. A few days after the royal confinement order was finally lifted, the scene shifted to the bustling, vibrant streets of the imperial capital. So I am heading to that wretched social club for elite young masters. Inside the carriage, Andrion leaned back against the plush red velvet. He let out a long, thoroughly bored yawn. Playing the role of a royal was utterly exhausting. The flashy clothes, the carriages, the constant guard detail. It was suffocatingly restrictive. His gaze landed on the maid sitting opposite him. How did you get that scar? The young maid violently flinched. She stammered in absolute terror. It is merely a mark of my own pathetic incompetence, your highness. It is the rightful punishment you graciously bestowed upon me. A brutal memory violently shattered the present moment. The obese, tyrannical version of the past. Andrion was screaming. Not again. Grotesque flashes of the bloated prince surfaced as he spewed mindless, venomous insults. This exquisite blade belongs to me now. Ha ha ha. For a filthy peasant, you actually have quite the pretty face. The deeper I dig into the memories of this wretched vessel, the more horrifying nightmares I uncover. Come to think of it, I have seen this servant for months, yet I never bothered to learn her name. He decided to correct that glaring mistake instantly. What is your name?" She jumped in her seat, her eyes blown wide with sheer panic. "This humble servant is Adelia Bayan, your highness." Andrian froze completely. That name struck his mind like a devastating thunderbolt. His expression hardened into serious contemplation. That is a fallen lineage practically erased from the noble registry. To think I would encounter that legendary name in a place like this, in the ancient forgotten past, long before towering cities or grand kingdoms ever existed, back when different races warred savagely across the vast continent. It was a brutal era where fragile humans were slaughtered and hunted like mere prey, but then transcendent beings emerged to rewrite the tragic destiny of our miserable species. As the Great War reached its apocalyptic conclusion, a group of absolute saviors stepped forward. They paved the blood-soaked path for humanity to become the supreme rulers of the continent. History crowned these living legends as the 5 apex warriors. One of those 5 mythical heroes was Reuven. Speaking directly to the holy sword in her grasp, she asked, "Have you ever truly pondered it?" The vision expanded into a catastrophic blood-drenched battlefield. An endless tidal wave of grotesque monsters and colossal beasts charged right at her. Yet she stood her ground, an immovable mountain. Her golden-hilted blade hummed with divine energy. "What exactly will you and I do once this endless war finally reaches its end?" The legendary warrior who decapitated the Titan King and shattered the endless era of human oppression was the iron-blooded sword Marquise Bayan. She glared at the surviving monstrous horde. Her eyes ignited with a terrifying golden divine light. "You worthless parasites keep swarming in like filthy maggots. Did you honestly think you would find an easy meal here? Your wretched minds are filled with nothing but pure garbage, dragging around those repulsive rotting bodies. You are nothing but pathetic clowns." Her boundless fury swept across the wasteland like a storm. Even the holy sword trembled violently at her brutally vulgar taunts, snapping back to the dead silence of the carriage. Andrian tightly covered his ears, his face twisting in deep disgust. "Just recalling those vulgar memories is enough to rot my brain. To think this timid girl is the direct descendant of the great Bayan. What in the world caused that legendary bloodline to fall so low?" Suddenly, the carriage jerked to a halt. "Your Highness, we have finally arrived." Prince Andrian stepped gracefully out of the carriage. His leather boots clicked sharply against the cobblestone. Perfect timing. He casually pointed at the trembling maid inside. "Adelia, we will finish this conversation later." She clutched her arms tightly, utterly bewildered. Waiting in the grand courtyard of the massive estate was a shady figure. He had long gray hair and wore a loosely tied cravat. A sickeningly bright smile was plastered across his face. "Your Highness, have you been keeping well during your absence? We humbly welcome Prince Andreon Leonbeck. I am Lee from the illustrious Lee family. Words cannot express my profound joy at seeing you alive and perfectly safe." Andrion scrutinized the man with an icy, calculating glare. "So this pathetic fool is the descendant of the Lee family. He looks like nothing more than a spoiled, fragile, rich kid." Lee leaned in dangerously close, faking a look of deep concern. "You must have endured unimaginable torture to lose so much weight." Andrion simply smirked in amusement. "Huh," Lee blinked rapidly in confusion. "Is something the matter, Your Highness? Are you still feeling physically unwell?" Andrion completely ignored him, brushing right past his shoulder. "Not at all. I was just thinking that coming here was the absolute right choice, thanks to you. Today's going to be wildly entertaining." Lee stared at his back, left entirely speechless and thoroughly confused. Inside the exclusive social club, the air was thick with the suffocating scent of pure debauchery. The warm golden glow of crystal chandeliers illuminated an obnoxiously extravagant scene. "Ha ha ha." And then that shameless girl hiked her skirt all the way up. It was as if the concept of modesty never existed for her. A woman beside him let out an incredibly grating, obnoxious giggle. "Oh, please stop teasing me. I absolutely despise that." Meanwhile, Lee watched Andrian closely. The main character sat quietly swirling his amber drink. His calm face was completely detached from the chaotic madness around him. "This is insanely weird," Lee thought to himself. Normally, this wretched bastard would be dead drunk by now, shamelessly flirting with every single woman in sight. But the dark aura radiating from him today, it feels entirely different. Suddenly, a drunken noble with slicked-back brown hair and a flushed face stumbled over. He collapsed heavily onto the plush sofa right beside Andrian. A disgusting, lecherous grin stretched across his face. "I heard the juicy rumors, Your Highness. They say you finally plucked the untouchable flower of the Iron Lion. The gossip is spreading like wildfire. She looks stunning enough, wrapped in cold armor, but I can only imagine how heavenly the soft flesh underneath must taste." A single bone-chilling word sliced through the noisy room like a razor-sharp blade. "Hey, do you happen to have any siblings waiting for you back home?" The drunken noble blinked, thoroughly bewildered by the random question. "Have you already forgotten, sire? I have a younger brother." Andrian slowly curved his lips into a smile. It was a smile so horrifyingly cold it could freeze hell itself. What a massive relief. Swoosh, without a single millisecond of warning, Andreon's fist exploded forward in a terrifying blur of motion. The main character's knuckles ruthlessly caved in the noble's face. The devastating impact echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Crimson blood sprayed wildly into the air. The noble's neck snapped backward with sickening force. Crash. His body was brutally launched across the room. Expensive glass shattered into a million deadly fragments. The women shrieked in absolute unfiltered terror. The lively music screeched to a dead halt. Lee stared in pure, paralyzed shock, cold, sweat pouring down his pale face. Andreon calmly adjusted his crisp cuffs. He glared down at the bloody, twitching mess on the floor. His piercing blue eyes glowed with a suffocating, lethal intent. It truly is a relief. At least your wretched bloodline will not be entirely wiped out today. He slammed his heel directly into the noble's groin, drawing out an agonizing shriek. Andreon stared down at him, his face half hidden in shadows, radiating absolute terrifying authority. With chilling calmness, he delivered his judgment to the pathetic loser. From this moment forward, your younger brother is the rightful heir. Andreon grabbed the battered noble by the collar, hoisting him straight into the air. His face was nothing but a bloody, bruised mess as he stammered in absolute terror. "Why are you doing this? Your Highness?" Andreon pierced him with a dead, freezing glare devoid of even a single ounce of mercy. "Listen to me very closely. I can tolerate you thinking of me as absolute trash, but I absolutely refuse to let you treat me like I actually am one." The noble and his flunkies froze stiff, their brains short-circuiting as they desperately tried to process the prince's twisted logic. What the hell was this guy even saying? Andreon delivered his answer with another brutally swift punch. "It means you desperately need another beating." The strike landed with a sickening, bone-shattering crunch. The noble collapsed, but Andreon's piercing gaze had already shifted. He barked a freezing command, making the terrified knight who had been watching in sheer shock instantly drop to his knees. "Yes, yes, Your Highness." Andreon looked down with a deliciously twisted smirk. His face splattered with blood, he whispered, "Didn't I tell you earlier, today is going to be incredibly fun?" Staring at that demonic face, the beaten noble panicked internally. Why the hell is this absolute madman suddenly acting like a monster? Andreon issued a command that instantly froze the blood of everyone in the room. "Summon the royal knights right now." The knight's eyes bulged in pure shock, but a royal order was absolute. He scrambled to his feet, screaming, "I obey your command," before sprinting out like his life depended on it. The remaining nobles huddled together like frightened sheep. Andreon wiped the blood from his cheek, glaring at the trembling crowd with utter disgust. "All the women get lost," he commanded dismissively, prompting a sneaky noble to try blending into the fleeing crowd of ladies. He desperately tiptoed away, cold sweat dripping down his forehead, praying to escape the prince's blazing wrath. But Andreon's voice sliced through the air like a lethal whip. "I distinctly believe I said women." The noble froze in absolute terror as those freezing blue eyes locked directly onto him. "If you want to leave, be my guest. But if you step out that door, you will leave as a woman." The implied mutilation was absolutely horrifying. "Not a single one of you trash bothered to kneel before a prince. You showed exactly zero respect for royal authority. You mocked me to my face and dared to insult my personal knight. What exact crimes can be applied here?" Stepping from the shadows, his loyal knights materialized, furious that these fools disrespected the royal bloodline. That explicitly constitutes royal defamation and, even worse, directly challenging the crown's absolute authority. This is the exact equivalent of high treason. "Please give the order, Your Highness." Which of these fools should be forced to kneel, surrounded by his fierce knights? Andreon stood unyielding, a predator's chilling smirk mirroring on all their faces. The devastating fallout was swift and absolute. Inside the grand palace, the mighty king sat upon his throne, his face twisted in blistering rage. 14 noble heirs have been arrested for royal defamation and treason. You slapped them with the heaviest, most destructive charges you could possibly find. Do you even comprehend what you have done? He thought to himself, since he invoked royal authority, they must be punished, but with 14 powerful families involved, we cannot just ignore their immense backlash. Andreon finally broke his silence, a dangerously confident smirk shattering the room's heavy tension. "Are you actually worried about a rebellion? Those pathetic fools are merely the discarded trash of their own prestigious households. They are irredeemable garbage who only exist to tarnish their family's proud name. Just send a letter." The king looked up completely baffled. "Send a letter to who exactly?" With a dismissive wave, he replied, "You keep asking when you already know the answer. Aren't there specific people who can handle their own family's internal garbage better than anyone else? I am talking about the older siblings of those arrested bastards. Am I wrong?" The exhausted king slumped back into his golden throne. "Leave me." Andreon bowed with a victorious grin. "Understood, father." Internally, he cheered. "See, you literally have no counter-argument." The scene then shifted from the grand suffocating palace to a sunlit, deeply peaceful private chamber. Andreon smiled with unexpected warmth, his aura entirely completely different from the ruthless tyrant at the club. "Come now, there is no need to tremble. I won't hurt you." The terrified maid shivered before him, heavy tears welling up. Your Highness, what exactly did this lowly servant do to deserve this? Andreon studied her intense fear, realizing that bastard must have tormented her brutally. She came from a fallen bloodline erased from the noble registry. Even direct descendants knew absolutely nothing about the Bayan name. A gloriously rich history had been forcefully wiped out, and their peerless martial techniques were entirely lost to time. Their grand prestige and noble pride had vanished without a trace. Yet a glowing system status window popped up beside her. Traits: bloodthirsty butcher battle, maniac, fragile heart, caretaker, and slave mentality. Andreon flinched, cold sweat rolling down his face. Wait a minute, what the hell are these extreme traits? A butcher who descends into pure madness at the sight of blood. Battle maniac, a deranged woman deeply obsessed with combat. Fragile heart, possessing an incredibly soft soul. Caretaker, flawlessly skilled at serving others. Andreon grabbed his head in disbelief. She possessed unmatched legendary talent, yet utterly lacked a single trait to suppress her own violent madness. He stared intently at the terrified girl. Am I seriously going to be okay unleashing this walking disaster upon the world? I guess I have to test my luck. He double-checked the floating system window. Rank S, swordsmanship aptitude. At the end of the day, an S-rank talent is an S-rank talent. His eyes immediately locked onto one specific hidden trait: slave mentality. A unique trait where the host feels overwhelming euphoria when blindly serving a master. This was the exact perfect exploit he desperately needed to control her. So Andreon stepped forward, his voice dripping with absolute authority. Adelia Bayan, pledge your unwavering loyalty to me. Adelia blinked in pure confusion. Huh, what exactly do you mean? I am ordering you to become my personal knight right here, right now. Adelia stumbled backward in absolute horror. Your Highness, a lowly servant like me could never shoulder such a massive burden. But Andreon sharply cut her off. Your noble house has fallen to ruin, but I will personally take full responsibility for restoring your family's grand legacy. In exchange, you will swear eternal loyalty and serve me as your absolute master. Adelia looked up, her wide eyes swirling with immense shock as a tiny spark of hope ignited inside her mind. If you cannot control your own violent madness, I will be the one holding your leash. She finally whispered, will you truly take responsibility for my fallen bloodline? Andreon stood tall, his legendary silhouette framed perfectly against the massive window. Exactly. Should you wish it, I will summon them to the capital city. They will be yours to meet at any given moment. Adele's expression shifted. The crushing terror vanished, replaced by a blinding ray of hope. I am yours. I will follow your every command. I, Adele, eldest daughter of the Bayan family, swear absolute loyalty to His Highness Andreon Leonbeck. I shall serve you as my sole master and offer my entire life to you. He reached out, resting his hand gently on her head. Excellent. From this moment on, my word is your absolute law. Adele's cheeks flushed crimson. Her emerald eyes blazed with newfound purpose beneath his touch. Your will is my command. Cold sweat pricked his cheek. Staring at the girl who just pledged her very soul to him, a flicker of heavy doubt crossed his face. Was making this choice truly the right path? Meanwhile, venomous whispers echoed through the shadowy palace corridors like a spreading poison. I heard the First Prince is acting like a complete tyrant again after laying low for a while. The rumors spread like wildfire, twisting the absolute truth into grotesque, monstrous shapes. He did not just force a proud knight into a vow of submission using dirty, underhanded tricks. He also abducted noble children, brutally beat them, and threw them into the dungeon. Now they say he is making a lowly maid who has never held a blade his personal knight. It is painfully obvious. He is building a personal harem disguised as a knightly guard. Meanwhile, inside the sunlit palace, the atmosphere felt suffocatingly heavy. Andreon Leonbeck slouched in his velvet chair, resting his chin on his hand. His sharp gaze burned with sheer annoyance. Since when did everyone care so deeply about my business? I simply took in one personal knight. Yet since I awakened, everyone has something to complain about. Flashes of his relentless critics echoed through his tired mind. The king's face materialized, weighed down by a golden crown and bitter disappointment. I am breaking my back, cleaning up your massive messes, yet you sit here drowning in women. Next was Count Bevan Hatst, his battle-scarred face twisting in pure disgust. How utterly pathetic. Have you completely given up on our wager already? Finally, the smug face of the third Prince Julian sneering with absolute mockery. Appointing a mere maid as a royal knight, that is truly fitting for trash like you. Andreon Leonbeck clenched his fists tight, his face drawn with overwhelming frustration. Good heavens. How did these toxic rumors spread so ridiculously fast? Suddenly, the grand doors burst open. A frantic maid rushed in, shouting, Your Highness, the Queen has arrived. Andreon Leonbeck threw his hands up in defeat, almost falling backward. Oh, come on. The Queen swept into the room, her elegant violet gown trailing across the floor. She glared down at her son, her eyes radiating fierce judgment mixed with a bizarre sense of relief. Just when I thought you had reformed, it seems you are falling right back into your old wicked habits. Actually, this might work in our favor. Once you choose a partner and settle down, you will finally stop wandering so aimlessly. Trust me. I will absolutely find you the perfect match this time." She spun around and marched out as swiftly as she arrived. Left alone in the suffocating silence, Andreon Leonbeck slumped into his chair, staring into the empty void. I do not even know anymore. Later, soft light bathed the quiet room. Adele sat rigidly on the edge of her seat, gazing up at Andreon Leonbeck with emerald eyes practically overflowing with desperate hope. "So, will I finally be able to wield mana now?" Andreon Leonbeck towered over her, his expression softening yet carrying a heavy, unyielding seriousness. "Yes, a very special kind of mana." Azure energy crackled violently around Andreon Leonbeck's raised hand. "Even if the entire world has forgotten the Iron-Blood sword Marquis, I remember absolutely everything." Golden flames erupted, manifesting the ghostly silhouette of armored boots, stepping through the very fabric of space. The legendary footsteps she left behind, the divine blade that danced at her fingertips, and the glorious thundering beat of her majestic heart. A blinding golden light blasted from Adele's chest, filling her with an unfathomable ancient warmth. The system window snapped open. Adele Bayan has awakened to mana. Mana transfer to Adele Bayan is a complete success. Mana core has successfully taken shape within the host body. A magic core has been born. She stared down at her trembling hands, awestruck as radiant golden aura surged from her very soul. Is this true mana? Andreon Leonbeck took a step back. What you just experienced is the core forging technique. Moving forward, you must cultivate this power yourself every single second you have. Suddenly, the world spun before Andreon Leonbeck's eyes. He stumbled violently, collapsing onto the sofa, his life force dangerously drained. Adele shrieked in terror. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Andreon Leonbeck gripped the cushions, his body violently shaking. He gritted his teeth in bitter frustration. To think I would be reduced to this pathetic state, just from forming one tiny magic core. He finally forced out, "I am just a bit exhausted." Adele stared at him, her face twisted in agonizing guilt. "Why would you push yourself this far, for a lowly servant like me?" Andreon Leonbeck turned his gaze away. "It is nothing. Now leave me be." Adele hesitated, then bowed deeply, touching the floor. "I vow to serve you with unyielding devotion until my dying breath." A faint, arrogant smirk crept back onto his pale face. "Just do not ever forget that I am your one and only master." Adele looked up, her face exploding with an overwhelming, soul-shaking joy. "Yes, I swear it." Clasping her hands, she radiated pure, unbreakable devotion. Andreon Leonbeck turned his back, his confident smirk instantly melting into genuine dread. As she walked away, a dark, ominous thought clouded his mind. "I am only terrified that you will eventually forget that truth. I truly am." Days later, his loyal knight reported in. "Your Highness, regarding Bernard. I heard the royal guards have him locked away as a key witness to the recent uproar. Absolutely no one is allowed near him until the grand trial begins." Andreon Leonbeck blinked, visibly stunned. "A trial? Do not tell me I am being dragged into this ridiculous hearing too." The knight shook his head. "The royal family is exempt from standing trial." Andreon Leonbeck beamed, pointing a finger upward. "Now that is fantastic news. But a full trial. They are blowing this completely out of proportion." Andreon Leonbeck shifted his intense gaze to the former maid. "Adele, how is your progress?" She flinched. "Huh, what do you mean?" Andreon Leonbeck leaned in close, his piercing stare locking onto her. "Your magic core. Has it fully stabilized?" Adele nodded frantically. "Yes, it is completely stable, Your Highness." Andreon Leonbeck abruptly shot to his feet, shedding his lazy demeanor instantly. "Perfect. Starting today, you will train by my side. Go change, meet me at the training grounds, and drop that pathetic mop. You are a knight of the realm now." The scene smashed, cut to the massive stone training arena beneath a crystal-clear sky. Andreon Leonbeck stood ready in a crisp white shirt. Suddenly, a booming, harsh voice shattered the peace. "What in the blazes do you think you are doing?" Andreon Leonbeck glanced over at his fuming uncle. "Can you not see I am simply warming up my muscles?" Count Bevan Hatz scowled fiercely, his scarred face darkening like thunder. "Not you, boy, I mean that frail little girl." Andreon Leonbeck casually glanced sideways at Adele. "Have you not heard the latest rumors? Uncle, I am forging her into a knight." The Count's patience finally snapped. His face contorted with blazing fury as he roared. "Is the noble title of knight that much of a joke to you? How can you be so utterly reckless right now?" Andreon's fists clenched tight, his own voice thundering back with equal ferocity. "Ah, since when did you become such a nagging old man? If you despise it so much, why keep showing up?" Right at that moment, Adelia's legs gave out completely. "Your Highness, all 10 laps are finished." Seeing their bitter clash, she murmured, "My lord, I sincerely apologize. This is my fault." Andreon cut her off instantly. "Forget it. Take this weapon. Today you learn the fundamental stance." He gripped his wooden blade tightly, shifting into a flawlessly executed stance. A faint azure aura began humming wildly around his body. First, hold your center and swing exactly like this. The air itself shrieked, torn apart by the razor-sharp strike. He glanced back at Adelia. Now show me what you have. Adelia scrambled up nervously. Gripping the hilt, she mirrored his form, her trembling limbs betraying her anxiety. Like this, suddenly, her entire demeanor shifted. Her pupils ignited with an eerie, brilliant emerald light. All hesitation vanished instantly. She unleashed a swing that defied any beginner's logic. The wooden blade cleaved the air with terrifying precision and blinding speed, erupting into a massive wind shockwave. Count Bevan's eyes bulged out of his skull in pure, unadulterated shock. Andreon froze completely, a single drop of cold sweat sliding down his rigid jaw. His mind reeled in absolute disbelief. Did she perfectly replicate that legendary art after a single glance? Adalia blinked up at him, her eyes fading back to their innocent, uncertain gaze. Was my posture correct? My Lord Andreon stared at her as absolute dread clawed at his heart. Wait a second. If I drop my guard even slightly, this monster will surpass me in an instant. The cruel words of the system flashed through his mind. The slave mentality trait guaranteed absolute submission to the strong, meaning she would never respect a weak master. I was already sweating bullets over how that trash prince tortured her in the past. If she actually outscales my power now. Count Bevan stepped forward, stroking his chin, his gaze locked onto Adelia with undeniable newfound reverence. To think she harbored such monstrous, unparalleled talent. The imposing Count wedged himself right between them, his expression dead serious. Andreon snapped. What are you plotting now? Keep your eyes off her. The Count entirely brushed him off. You are merely a novice. You have wielded a blade for barely months. You cannot possibly hope to control a beast like her. The Count's voice dropped into a dangerously low lethal register. If you fail to keep her tightly leashed, no one else in this realm can. All because of you. The vision violently shifted into an apocalyptic bloodbath. That very blade had guzzled the blood of the Mad Dragon King and countless abominations. Ruhan, a fragmented soul manifested purely through its master's dominant will. Andreon slowly raised his head. His eyes had shed all traces of humanity, blazing with a terrifying, sinister crimson malice. She belongs entirely to me. Do not look at her and never dare to covet her. I absolutely despise thieves touching my property. But the exact second those words escaped his lips, a horrifying sudden mutation twisted violently inside his core. His absolute grip on reality began to dissolve into nothingness. Every shred of vitality was violently ripped away, leaving only an suffocating abyss of freezing pitch-black darkness. Was this a terrifying omen of death? At this pathetic rate, my fragile vessel will be entirely devoured by Groon's dark soul. Enough of this madness. A blinding, brilliant azure flash violently shattered the crumbling nightmare, forcing the suffocating crimson hands to evaporate into the void. Andreon snapped back to reality, heavily panting right in the middle of the dusty training grounds. He stared deeply at his trembling hands, the horrifying phantom sensation of the endless abyss finally fading away. The Count's voice rang with absolute, unshakable conviction. A single standard knight can save 10 foot soldiers. A truly exceptional knight can spare 100. But that monstrous child, she could save 1,000, perhaps an entire army. Andreon scoffed internally. Was this blind, desperate faith? All for the grand supposed destiny of the northern border commander, yet Andreon shrugged with freezing indifference. I frankly could not care less. The Count staggered, utterly dumbfounded. Even if her power could save countless innocent lives. A crystal-clear voice violently shattered their tense deadlock. Adelia stepped boldly into the light. Lord Bevan, my mind, my body, and my fiercely beating heart already belong exclusively to His Highness. The Count stared at her, completely paralyzed in shock. Adelia stood her ground, her brilliant golden brown eyes blazing with terrifying absolute devotion. I absolutely refuse to obey your commands. My apologies, Count. Andreon observed this unbelievable display with dark, immense satisfaction. It was entirely worth dragging his fragmented soul back from the abyss. The slave mentality is absolute. It violently craves submission to a vastly superior, untouchable hierarchy. Andreon flashed a razor-sharp smirk, confidently crossing his arms. You heard the girl perfectly. Besides, Uncle, you have absolutely zero techniques left to teach me right. Your entire pitiful mission from the start was merely to help me shed some weight. If you wish to keep breathing the air inside my royal palace, keep your meddling nose completely out of my dark affairs. The Count glared at him for an eternity, his hardened face completely unreadable. Finally, he heavily shut his eyes in total defeat. Understood. Yet even after that dramatic showdown, the stubborn badger relentlessly patrolled the palace grounds every single day, obsessively watching Adelia. Of course, he was utterly powerless, now strictly banned from his usual annoying, nagging, and intrusive meddling. Andreon leaned against the cold pillars, secretly chuckling at the pathetic sight. It was insanely entertaining to watch his hilariously arrogant uncle squirm in sheer frustration, but suddenly, a terrifying anomaly violently ripped the Count's attention away. Adelia stood perfectly still, engulfed in a swirling storm of golden embers. Her mere wooden blade was erupting with an overwhelmingly intense, blinding aura. Andreon realized his fatal miscalculation a second too late. Hold on, did she actually master sword resonance already? Andreon forced a booming clap. Outstanding. A truly flawless execution, yet cold sweat aggressively drenched his back. He panicked internally, awakening at this monstrous speed. I am seriously going to get left behind. Adelia whipped around, shooting him, a blindingly innocent smile overflowing with godlike reverence. But the Count's voice suddenly dropped to a lethal growl. He marched toward Andreon like a looming mountain. Did you actually dare to teach her the forbidden mind magic? Andreon casually diverted his gaze, feigning total indifference. Yeah. Is there a problem? The Count's last shred of sanity violently shattered. Was it not enough that you alone tainted yourself with that cheap trick? He viciously roared, an oppressive aura violently erupting from his core. Instantly, Andreon's playful facade vanished into the shadows, replaced by an absolutely freezing, deadly stare forged of pure steel. The Count froze dead in his tracks, entirely stunned by the blatant killing intent. She had a far, vastly superior path to walk, an infinitely greater potential that your tiny mind cannot fathom, and you have ruthlessly destroyed it all. Andreon completely ignored the pathetic outburst, waving his hand dismissively. Guards, escort this nuisance off my grounds. The armored knights hesitated awkwardly. But your highness, the Count violently pivoted on his heel, his heavy dramatic cape whipping furiously through the tense air. He fiercely stomped away his armored boots, echoing against the cold stone like thunder. Forget your pathetic guards. I will walk out on my own 2 feet. As the furious Count vanished into the bloody sunset, Adelia finally broke the silence. My liege, was everything you taught me truly just a deceptive trick? Andreon locked eyes with her, answering with absolute unshakable conviction. No. Absolutely never doubt your own power. She swallowed hard, her fragile voice trembling into the wind. Then, why did Lord Bevan say that? Andreon stared profoundly into the dying embers of the sunset, a deeply philosophical shadow crossing his face. Because he is entirely ignorant. Every pathetic fool in this decaying era has completely forgotten the true godlike essence of mind magic. If they remembered its legendary might, they wouldn't have tossed it aside like trash. He will witness the truth soon enough. The next dawn, an overwhelming energy violently shattered the peace as blinding emerald lightning erupted from the earth beneath their feet. The older man slammed his wooden blade into the earth, a silent provocation. Andreon fired right back, fighting like there's no tomorrow, uncle. The Count's gaze was ice cold. Prove your worth, boy. I'll restrict myself to a single mana ring. Force me back just half a step and you win my acknowledgement. Andreon tightened his grip until his knuckles turned white. And the stakes of our little wager. He whipped his blade to the side. A single wish, wasn't it? The Count drew his own practice sword. Crackling arcs of lightning danced along the dull edge. Defeat me, and I grant any request. Even the family's secret martial arts will be yours for the taking. A cocky smirk played on Andreon's lips. Blazing blue aura erupted around his body. Not quite what I had in mind, but sure. Let the battle begin. The Count casually slipped past the opening strike, aiming for the throat right out of the gate, vicious as always. Andreon unleashed a flurry of strikes, but the Count swayed like a ghost, dodging every single blow. Frustrated, the young warrior pushed his speed to the absolute limit, a relentless barrage of steel, but his breathing grew ragged and heavy sweat drenched his face. Is this the extent of your power? The Count scoffed, parrying effortlessly before blasting Andreon backward. Giving up so soon, Andreon ground his teeth, muscles screaming against the older man's overwhelming pressure. Keep it together. Despite the desperate struggle, Andreon's mind remained razor-sharp. He analyzed the battlefield with chilling precision. The old man was infuriating, but his absolute strength was undeniable. He is an absolute monster. He's just stalling until my mana runs dry, setting the stage for a completely humiliating defeat. Relying on a basic mana heart right now means dancing right into his trap. Suddenly, a defiant grin broke across the boy's battered face. But you know what's really funny? 4 centuries ago, mana heart knights carved out impossible legends. Yet the moment one flashy new technique drops, the divine arts of those ancient masters are tossed aside like garbage. That was the world's absolute truth. Everyone believed the new mana chain system was infinitely superior to the old mana heart path. Fierce winds whipped across the training grounds as the Count stood like a mountain. What exactly is your point, boy? In response, Andreon raised his blade, pointing it straight at the heavens. My reality is different. Just because it is in mana heart doesn't mean it's weak. Tell me, uncle. Have you ever heard of the martial soul aria? The Count's brow furrowed in deep annoyance. This is a battlefield, boy, not a place for reciting pathetic fairy tales. Andreon chuckled darkly. I knew you would say that. After all, you think the mana heart is just some trash technique for third-rate mercenaries. You talk entirely too much, the Count interrupted coldly, buying time to catch your breath. Andreon slowly looked up. His eyes were blazing with ethereal blue fire. Hardly. He took a single heavy step forward. Azure flames erupted from his boots, scorching the very earth beneath him. The path a true knight walks becomes his ultimate achievement. 100 battles. That is my pride. Achievements etched directly into my soul and power. The Count's eyes widened in sheer shock. What is this ding? The system interface violently shattered into reality. Achievement unlocked, evolving into Martial Soul Aria. The Martial Soul area has manifested. It resonated within the knight's blade. A culmination of every drop of blood and sweat shed over 6 grueling months. This was the terrifying true power of the ancient mana heart. The Martial Soul Aria system notifications spammed his vision like crazy. Common grade Aria, the sparring poem, has been created. The sparring poem effect is now active. An explosively brilliant azure aura erupted. It wrapped tightly around Andreon's physique, coating him in his second skin of pure soul fire. He stood at the epicenter of a raging blue vortex, a solitary warrior framed against the towering fortress walls. Yet despite the majestic display of power, the Count's voice sliced through the air like absolute zero. Flashy tricks change nothing. So long as you cling to that outdated mana heart, you will never shatter the chains of mana. Swoosh! Andreon pivoted with lethal grace. His eyes glowed with furious blue starlight as he thrust his wooden blade forward with shattering force. The wooden weapons violently clashed. The Count's blade was drenched in insanely dense crackling energy. The chain system's inherent ability was designed to brutally reject heart-based mana. Andreon ground his teeth together, cold sweat pouring down his face as he desperately anchored his footing. His azure flames flickered dangerously under the crushing weight of the Count's aura. A deeply arrogant smirk crept across the older man's face. "You're surprisingly good at taking a beating." The Count launched another strike, moving at blinding, terrifying speed. Andreon managed to block it, but the devastating shockwave nearly shattered his arm bones. Amidst the brutal clash of weapons, the young warrior remembered the agonizing hell he endured for this power. To forge this exact aria. "I survived over 100 death matches. I let the mana chain aura crush my bones more than 1,000 times. This is an anti-chain weapon forged in the fires of pure suffering. While exchanging hundreds of strikes, I absorbed thousands of agonizing shockwaves." Boom. The scattered blue flames suddenly compressed. They condensed into a massive razor-sharp pillar of light erupting from his wooden weapon. Behold the absolute dominance of the sparring poem aria. Andreon gripped his sword, now coated in an incredibly dense, solid blade of azure mana. The Count stared at the glowing anomaly, his arrogant mockery finally giving way to genuine curiosity. Now this might actually be entertaining. Andreon exploded forward, vanishing into a hyperspeed blur. The blades collided once more, detonating a massive shockwave that vaporized the dust. Andreon exhaled a frosty breath, perfectly matching the Count blow for blow. Sweat finally beaded on the older man's forehead as he parried a strike that felt as heavy as a mountain. To think the brat could hold out this long, he thought. Wham! He unleashed a kinetic burst, sending Andreon skidding backward to create space. Andreon skidded across the training yard, his boots carving deep, brutal trenches into the solid stone floor. He planted his feet, gasping for air. His blue aura flickered violently, but absolutely refused to die out. "How is this possible?" the Count demanded. Chest heaving, Andreon glared back with unbreakable defiance. "Didn't I literally just tell you? Not all mana hearts are created equal." The Count's eyes darkened. His lightning-laced aura flared menacingly around his shoulders like a storm. "You arrogant little punk." He took one immensely heavy step forward, causing the very earth to violently quake. Swoosh! He swung his blade with killing intent, unleashing a tidal wave of crushing pressure that completely eclipsed everything he had shown so far. Andreon barely raised his blade to block. The wooden weapon groaned under the crushing pressure, violently launching him into the stone wall. The Count loomed over him, a terrifying silhouette against the blazing sky. Playtime is officially over. Surviving this long is an achievement in itself. "You have earned my praise." Andreon analyzed the situation. Just as he had calculated. A normal grade martial anthem simply wasn't enough to win. The main character finally spoke up. Hundreds of years ago, those legendary knights made one fatal mistake. They wiped out every single threat, leaving absolutely no enemies for their descendants to face. In the beginning, their legacy was passed down perfectly. The flawless sword techniques, the precise methods of mana heart training, and the dazzling glory of the martial anthems. But the ruthless march of time devoured those glorious triumphs, leaving them to rot in the abyss of forgotten history. Tales of ancient dragons and titan kings faded away, reduced to nothing but absurd delusional myths. Naturally, new martial soul epics would be forged in their wake. Yet these modern feats were pathetic. A mere victory against 10 knights, a minor triumph over 100 mortal soldiers. Just fragile verses composed to fight ordinary men. Lacking the legendary weight of true myths, they shatter against the winds of change. Count, with such mediocre and pathetic techniques, you will never reach the transcendent realm. The Count scowled, his blade dipping slightly. "Have you been drinking in broad daylight? Your nonsensical rambling makes absolutely zero sense." Instantly, the atmosphere warped. Andreon's calming blue aura violently ignited into a sickly, bloodthirsty crimson. The Count had gravely underestimated his opponent. A terrifying demonic phantom erupted from Andreon's back. It was pure, unadulterated malice with glowing hollow eyes. "If you are so ignorant, let me educate you." Andreon gripped his wooden practice sword, but his shadowy phantom brandished an ethereal blade of pure darkness, a legendary weapon forged to shatter dragon scales and gorge on their boiling blood. A system window suddenly materialized. Warning, the true Dragonbane epic has been activated. Your current physical vessel cannot withstand this mythic rank. Agony ripped through Andreon as the mythical power shredded his mortal vessel. Error epic fragments forcefully restricted. Error epic fragments severely suppressed. Restrictions applied. Red warning alerts rained across his vision. The colossal skill tree plunged into darkness. Only one tiny branch glowed, unleashing a single verse at a mere fraction of its true might. Andreon stood at the epicenter of a crimson energy crater. Blood poured from his skin, but his eyes burned with absolute unrestrained madness. He forcefully compressed the chaotic aura into a single focal point, dragon scale shatter. He swung his blade, unleashing a devastating storm of crimson and black lightning. The Count's defensive sword immediately began to fracture. The Count's eyes bulged in pure, unadulterated terror. The incoming slash carried the catastrophic weight of a true dragon slayer. "If this hits, I will be completely erased." He frantically ignited his mana, pouring his very soul into a desperate defense. Boom. A catastrophic explosion annihilated the training grounds, blasting shattered stone and massive debris high into the heavens. The devastating shockwave pulverized the stone courtyard into fine dust. The massive recoil violently launched Andreon backward through the air. He tumbled violently across the ground, his body smoking as he finally halted. As the dust settled, the Count stood amidst the total devastation. Sizzling around him were the fragile, fading remnants of 4 distinct mana rings. Andreon let out a weak, breathless chuckle. "I thought you promised to only use 1 ring." The Count was utterly paralyzed with shame. He stared down at his shattered weapon, trembling violently. Even after desperately unleashing his full power, activating all 4 of his mana rings, he had completely failed to protect his blade from being completely severed. Andreon smirked internally. Mana drawn from a basic core is far inferior to true mana rings. That is the absolute law of this world. A bloody, victorious smirk crossed Andreon's face. "Count Bale Van Hat, you have completely lost." Suddenly, suffocating darkness swallowed his vision. A chaotic void erupted, echoing with monstrous roars and the metallic stench of fresh blood. Horrifying visions of razor-sharp fangs and swirling catastrophic crimson energy violently invaded his fractured mind. The ancient memory of a blade piercing through thick dragon flesh replayed in an endless, agonizing loop. "No, stop. Make it stop right now." Andreon's eyes violently snapped open, his chest heaved as he escaped the suffocating nightmare, cold sweat drenching his clothes. His trembling hands gripped the bedsheets like a lifeline, desperately anchoring his shattered sanity back to reality. This cursed martial soul epic. He shuddered, recalling the terrifying moment he forcibly extracted that ancient mythical power, unleashing the catastrophic dragon scale shatter. This agonizing backlash was the brutal price of his reckless gamble. The true Dragonbane epic was no ordinary skill. It was a legendary martial soul epic of the absolute highest mythic tier. My mortal body was completely shredded by the burden, but the glorious victory was worth every drop of blood. The first epic I ever wove, the 100 Victories chant, remains my absolute pride and foundation. Through 100 brutal battles, I have weathered 1,000 crashing waves. I will stand unyielding against the worst storms. Ding! A blue holographic window materialized. The sparring epic has successfully leveled up. A confident smirk returned to Andreon's face, his aura stabilizing. With this newfound strength, I am more than ready to crush that bastard. Third Prince into the dirt. Bang. The grand doors violently burst open. Adelia rushed into the room, her cheeks flushed red and tears streaming down her face. "Your Highness, thank the heavens you are finally awake. The entire estate fell into absolute chaos when you collapsed. I have never seen the Queen radiate such terrifying killing intent." Andreon leaned against the headboard, looking far more amused than concerned. "Serves that arrogant fool right. Ha ha." Adelia frantically wiped her tears. Count Bale Van Hat left strict orders. He demanded to be notified the exact second Your Highness regained consciousness. Andreon dramatically flopped back onto his luxurious pillows. "Ignore him for now, I need some peace and quiet." However, his internal thoughts immediately darkened with grim realization. Overusing that mythic epic heavily fractured my mental state. If I do not meditate and repair my spirit, the price will be catastrophic. Past memories and present reality will bleed together into a chaotic mess until my very grip on reality shatters completely. I would be reduced to a babbling madman, trapped in a solitary void, forever replaying the ghosts of my past battles in an endless loop of suffering. To think I would almost be swallowed by the cursed memories of that legendary blade again, especially after finally being reincarnated into a mortal human body. Just the mere thought sends ice-cold shivers down my spine. He glanced over. Adalia Bayan. Her ancestor was once a truly legendary female swordmaster. Andreon took a casual bite of his royal meal, speaking nonchalantly. Since the noble Bayan blood flows through your veins, you are destined to inherit the supreme epic she left behind. Adelia bowed her head, utterly paralyzed by shock and awe. To think my glorious ancestor was such an awe-inspiring swordmaster. Andreon smirked, taking another bite. Of course, you are far too weak right now. You must shatter your limits and grow exponentially to wield a verse of that caliber. So tell me, what is your true ambition on the path of the sword? Adelia flinched, her eyes widening in pure astonishment. That is, if I am even worthy of becoming a true knight. She tightly clenched her trembling fists, her face burning with a sudden, unyielding determination. If I truly walk the path of a knight— Andreon silently observed her, calmly eating as he waited for her grand declaration. If you have not found your path yet, you can answer me later. But Adelia boldly stepped forward. Her stance was completely unshakable. Brilliant, majestic golden flames began to ignite around her steel boots. My liege, I swear upon my soul to become your highness's absolute sword. Andreon completely froze, staring at her in profound silence. Some epic verses are awakened by the blaring roar of war horns. Some epics are forged from the very first blood-soaked step across a battlefield. But the greatest legends, they always begin with a deeply devoted, soul-binding oath. She squeezed her eyes shut, roaring her destiny to the heavens. I shall live solely for your highness until my dying breath. I offer you my absolute everything. Boom. A colossal pillar of transcendent golden aura violently erupted from her soul. A glowing system window materialized out of nowhere. Adalia Bayan had dedicated an ode of submission. Andreon stared into the blinding light. Was this her awakened martial soul? Sometimes an awakened soul resonates with those around it. A brand new martial soul had just been forged, normal grade soul acquired. The Ode of Domination was now active. Andreon gazed at the radiant orb resting in his palm, thoroughly impressed. Wow. The Ode of Submission was a tribute offered exclusively to a master. Rather than a simple power, it was an absolute vow binding their very souls together. Even with her submissive psychological traits, to think a proud descendant of the Iron Blood, Sword Marquis would weave an oath of servitude. He clenched his fist tightly. Newfound energy surged through his veins. I just secured some incredibly unexpected backup. A confident, calculating smirk crept across his face. As long as I remain the master of this absolute vow, Adelia's future growth will directly feed my own power. He glanced at Adelia, her face glowing with a pure, innocent smile. I appreciate it. Adelia froze instantly, blushing furiously red. Your Highness, her trembling eyes widened as the golden aura slowly faded away. Only the two of them remained in the silent room. Andreon sat down, already plotting his next moves. Though I still do not know exactly how this power will manifest. A few days later, the Grand Royal Palace stood majestically beneath the endless blue sky. Deep inside the magnificent halls, Andreon sat quietly. His gaze was cold and incredibly distant. Suddenly, the Queen's gentle voice broke the silence. Andreon, has your body recovered at all? He looked up to see his mother standing there. I feel fine now. He muttered softly, deliberately avoiding her intense gaze. Dealing with enemies who despised this body was simple. But handling someone who genuinely loved the original owner, that was incredibly awkward. The Queen watched him with deep maternal concern. Are you still harboring resentment toward your uncle? He honestly never meant to hurt you, so if you still hold any bitter feelings in your heart, please let them go. Andreon replied instantly, his face completely devoid of emotion. I do not hold any grudges whatsoever. The Queen gasped, a hilariously skeptical look washing over her face. How could you not? He treated you so roughly and nagged you constantly. Claiming you are perfectly fine with it is definitely a total lie. Andreon scratched his cheek awkwardly, totally baffled by her dramatic reaction. No, seriously, I am fine. But his internal monologue revealed a much colder truth. I already dealt him a devastating psychological blow that day. His absolute pride and entire life philosophy were completely shattered. It must be agonizing to endure the seed of doubt I planted in his mind. A literal heart demon. If he possesses true talent, he will break through and evolve. But if he fails to overcome it, he will lose all of his precious martial arts mastery. Honestly, I could not care less what happens to him. The Queen wiped a tear and smiled warmly. Your uncle spent his whole life bonding with blades rather than people. That is why he acts so blunt and clumsy. Surprisingly, though, he seems incredibly proud of you lately. He even went out of his way to personally persuade His Majesty. Thanks to him, your strict house arrest was lifted way ahead of schedule. However, massive trouble erupted the second that restriction vanished. He vividly recalled the chaotic club raid. Arrest all those arrogant nobles, round every single one of them up. My uncle must be in a terrible political position right now, he pondered. Was that why he acted so visibly disappointed? But why would that ruthless man stick his neck out for me? The scene shifted to the violently luxurious study of the royal prince. An elderly scholar named Niccolo Macchia stood holding a massive stack of thick tomes. His long white beard flowed gracefully and a dangerously patient smile graced his lips. "Your Highness," Andreon glared back with absolute disgust. His brows furrowed deeply and a dark shadow cast over his piercing eyes as he delivered a blunt rejection. "I absolutely refuse." The prince threw a royal tantrum, thrashing wildly on the floor like a spoiled brat. "Ah, seriously, why the hell do I have to study?" Andreon screamed, kicking his feet in the air, but the old master remained entirely unbothered. He calmly recited a deep philosophical proverb. "If a human flatly refuses to learn, how are they any different from a wild beast?" Andreon sprang to his feet, his face twisted in exaggerated outrage as if completely scandalized. "Are you calling me an animal right now?" Niccolo chuckled softly, his wise eyes narrowing behind his round spectacles. "You have only just begun your education, Your Highness, so I cannot properly label you a beast quite yet." Andreon quickly snapped back. "I have not even started yet. Do not play word games with me, old man. Despite how I look, I already know everything there is to know. Let me be perfectly clear, there is absolutely zero need for me to study anything else." The elderly scholar's expression softened into a clever challenge. His gaze grew remarkably sharp and knowing. "If you are truly going to be that stubborn, then let us make a deal. Have a high-level intellectual debate with me. If your brilliant mind is genuinely as flawless as you claim, I will pack my bags and never bother you again, Your Highness." A razor-sharp, supremely confident smirk stretched across Andreon's face. His striking blue eyes flickered with sudden intrigue. "Sounds like a plan." Moments later, Andreon slammed his hand onto the desk, leaning forward with blazing intensity. "Yes, exactly. That is exactly why a true ruler must always watch their back. It is basic human nature to trample all over someone who shows even a hint of mercy." Niccolo stroked his long beard, his eyes widening in pure astonishment and deep admiration. "You are actually completely right." He slid a massive tome across the table. "The Iron Blood Monarch Theory. You will find this particular book incredibly fascinating to read. It perfectly breaks down the ruler and subject dynamic as a ruthless transactional contract. The sovereign demands absolute military and economic support in exchange for shielding the masses. Meanwhile, the citizens crave political stability and protection, trading their unwavering loyalty to get it." Andreon rapidly flipped through the heavy pages, nodding intensely as he absorbed the complex knowledge. You make a solid point. Every single relationship should definitely be a fair exchange." He pointed eagerly at a specific paragraph, completely immersed in their scholarly debate. "So regarding this exact section right here." "Exactly, and also look over here." Their conversation flowed incredibly naturally. Two brilliant minds, one young and one old, finally found a perfect rhythm of mutual intellectual respect. Sometime later, Niccolo neatly organized his heavy books, preparing to take his leave. "Well then, Your Highness, let us gladly continue the rest of this debate tomorrow." Andreon stood tall, tightly gripping the theory book. He waved goodbye with a genuinely bright smile, looking absolutely nothing like the raging prince from earlier. "Yeah, absolutely. I will be waiting." As the heavy oak door clicked shut, Andreon was left standing alone in the fading light. A massive invisible question mark suddenly floated above his head. He blinked rapidly, the harsh reality finally crashing down on him. "Wait a minute. Did I just willingly participate in a perfectly normal tutoring session? That sly, old man completely played me." Outside the heavy double doors, Niccolo paced the grand corridor. A thoughtful shadow crossed his aged face. The First Prince. He was entirely different from the wild rumors. Days bled together. A brilliant, cloudless azure sky framed the prince's bedroom window. Yet inside, the suffocating silence weighed heavily. Andreon hung upside down off his mattress. He stared blankly into the room with dead, lifeless eyes. "Ah, I am dying of boredom." He rolled over restlessly. "Have I been living too diligently lately?" Without training, there was absolutely nothing to do. Plus, his body was still recovering. Suddenly, his maid's voice shattered his lazy days. "Your Highness, Count Belvanhart is here." Andreon sat up, genuinely surprised. A visitor, after so long. He glanced at his anxious maid Adelia lingering by the door. "What should we do?" Andreon chuckled, swinging his legs off the bed. "Yeah, let him in." It had been days since their epic duel, so it was about time the old man visited. The doors swung open. Andreon stood tall, radiating confident energy to greet his uncle. But instantly, the room's atmosphere turned incredibly heavy. Count Belvanhart stepped inside. His face was dark and utterly grim. A profound, crushing guilt was etched deeply into his features. Andreon froze. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead as he read the intense mood. The Count still had not overcome the inner demons from their devastating clash. The Count stood in absolute silence, unable to meet his nephew's gaze. Finally, he spoke, his voice dripping with heavy remorse. "I am sorry. I broke my oath and inflicted a massive wound upon you. For that I have absolutely zero excuses." Andreon mentally sweat dropped. His bedrest was not from his uncle's sword aura, it was the brutal backlash from overusing the true dragon-slaying verse. Seeing his uncle look so devastatingly guilty, a sharp pang of conscience struck Andreon's heart. The old man was likely facing immense political pressure because of his royal nephew. The Count looked up, his eyes blazing with absolute sincerity. "Tell me what your heart truly desires. If you demand this arm, it is yours. If you want these eyes, take them." Andreon recoiled frantically, waving his hands in pure panic. "What would I even do with those useless scraps?" He looked away, completely conflicted. Good grief. To think a legendary swordmaster of the old era was trapped by inner demons. He released a defeated sigh. "Fine, I will be generous this time. I will tell you my wish. Uncle, let me go on a little road trip." The Count blinked in shock. The suffocating tension vanished instantly. A stunned silence completely swallowed the royal bedroom. "Your grounding is officially over. Cannot you leave whenever you please?" Andreon wagged his finger with a mischievous smirk. "Not just a day trip. Somewhere far away. Outside the capital if possible." The Count stared intensely, weighing the royal request. Arranging such a schedule would take time, especially with the upcoming imperial banquet. Going too far is absolutely impossible. Andreon shrugged, flashing a radiant smile. "That works for me." The Count turned away, his heavy burden visibly lightened. "Very well. I will notify you once preparations are complete." Andreon watched him leave. "Sounds good." Once alone, he caught Cass staring holes into him. "What is it? Why are you looking at me like that?" Cass smiled, scratching his cheek sheepishly. "Well, I am just a bit surprised, Your Highness. I expected a far more outrageous demand." Since the Count broke his sacred oath, this was a golden opportunity to milk him for countless benefits. Andreon looked down, his expression totally unreadable for a fleeting moment. Seeing that stubborn old man acting so broken, I just felt sorry for him. Cass widened his eyes before bursting into loud, roaring laughter. Andreon scowled at his guard's amusement. "What? Why are you laughing, Cass? You are getting way too comfortable lately." Adelia gently interrupted their banter, clutching a pristine white envelope. "Your Highness, the letter you have been waiting for has finally arrived." The letter read, "I have recently achieved a minor magical breakthrough. It seems I can visit you soon. I pray for your continued health until then. From Owen Hagen." Andreon smiled in deep satisfaction. Perfect timing for excellent news. 5 days later, the Count sent word. And 2 days after that departure day dawned, golden sunlight washed over the grand stone bridge as the convoy rolled out. Inside the carriage, Andreon leaned out, eyeing his uncle riding alongside them. "Uncle, what is the name of our destination?" Count Bell. Van Hart sighed, keeping his eyes forward. "Can you never sit still? I will explain everything, so get back inside." The Count's domain. It is the Empire's greatest weapons forge. Their rich mines provide top-tier iron ores, and a master blacksmith guild refines them to absolute perfection. Andreon leaned back into his plush seat, deep in thought. My original plan was to simply grab a decent blade from the royal armory, but the king's absolute decree echoed in his mind. "Cass, if you let that brat touch another sword, you will face severe and immediate punishment." Cass could only apologize helplessly. "Forgive me, Your Highness. It is a direct royal mandate. We absolutely cannot provide you with any weapons." Andreon smirked, considering his own notorious track record. It was a totally natural reaction, but still. That means if I want a true weapon, I must secure it outside the palace. Despite his grumpy exterior, Uncle is surprisingly thoughtful. "You are distracting me." "Shut the window," the Count grumbled without glancing over. "What? No way," Andreon childishly shot back. The convoy pressed on down the lush dirt road, leaves dancing in the gentle breeze. Thus, the 20-day expedition officially began. A grueling long-distance journey stretching across the world, mapped like a vital artery linking distant, untamed lands. The route included a brief pit stop at a territory 3 days away. From there, they would visit the legendary Iron Lion Fortress 2 days later. There, the party would rest before circling back to the capital. Inside the carriage, Andreon sat with crossed arms. Extreme mind-numbing boredom was plastered across his face. "And right now, I am trapped in a box for 3 agonizing days without moving. And the person sitting across from me is zero fun." Adelia only ever answered with a yes or no. Andreon let out a massive dramatic sigh, deflating completely like a popped balloon. "Since I have time to kill, I should check my mana heart. Thanks to the brutal backlash of the true dragon-slaying verse, my core is entirely empty. But now it is time to recharge it." The physical world began to blur. The carriages rumble, the chilling draft through the window, the nights chatting outside. It all faded into distant white noise. Andreon focused with pinpoint precision, gathering the hidden mana fragments woven into the fabric of reality. Blazing azure energy erupted around him, swirling wildly like a stellar nebula. As I poured energy into my empty mana core, the foundation trembled violently. My mana heart exploded in size and density, glowing with a deep cosmic blue light. Andrian stood in his mental void, watching this phenomenon in absolute awe. Since when did my mana heart grow this massive? A system window popped up. You have attempted a miracle far beyond your limits. You have glimpsed a fraction of that colossal will. Andrian's eyes snapped open, absolute shock painted across his face. This was the direct result of forcibly casting the true Dragon Slayer's verse. That heaven-defying effort has been etched into your very physical vessel. As a result, your mana heart has successfully expanded. Due to your expanded mana heart, your physical stats have drastically evolved. Your physical vessel can now withstand a significantly higher capacity of pure mana. You have successfully reached the Red Knight rank. Your connection to the origin has partially deepened. Several system restrictions on your restored divine authorities have been completely lifted. The Heavenly Eye Authority has leveled up. The Heavenly Ear Authority has leveled up. Andrian let out a heavy breath, feeling this explosive new power surging through his veins. I just took another massive step forward. The royal carriage finally ground to a halt beneath the brilliant clear blue skies of the territory. A magnificent white mansion with classic architecture towered before them, bathed in golden sunlight. Words cannot express what an absolute honor it is to meet your highness like this. Two noblemen stood at the grand entrance to welcome him. Prince Ega of the Allen family offers his humblest greetings. The man in the gray coat quickly added, "And I am Torrance, the eldest son." "Greetings, your highness." Andrian gave a brief, composed nod. "I appreciate your hospitality." Prince Ega smiled warmly. "Such a long journey must have completely drained your energy. Please allow me to escort you to your chambers." Walking through the massive corridors, Andrian scanned his surroundings. Rumor said this place mass-produced weapons, and indeed, the entire mansion was armed to the teeth. However, his system eyes saw the truth. These were mere low-tier trash items, all flashy exterior, but completely useless in actual life-or-death combat. Judging by this garbage, finding the hidden artifact I need will be difficult. The group continued down the grand hall as Andrian ruthlessly judged every display case. "Didn't you mention the blacksmith guild is located within this territory?" Ega turned back in total surprise. "Yes, that is correct." But Andrian stopped walking, his eyes blazing with absolute determination. "I want to inspect that area right now." As they stepped outside into the courtyard, Ega anxiously added, "Those blacksmiths, by nature, they are an incredibly rough and stubborn bunch. When they get into the zone, they ignore even the local lord's visits, and the words that leave their mouths are as cold and unrefined as the raw iron they forge. Therefore, even if your highness feels deeply insulted, please write it off as their artisan spirit and show mercy." Andrian listened, but his absolute focus had already been stolen by something else. A blazing fierce light erupted from nearby. The intense heat radiating from the furnace was absolutely insane, literally warping the air itself. "The thermal energy here is overwhelming. Please speak up if you feel dizzy." Total chaos reigned supreme inside the forge. Dozens of muscle-bound blacksmiths fiercely hammered away, sending explosive sparks flying everywhere. They moved with a crazy, frenzied energy, completely ignoring the royal entourage crashing their territory. Andrian stood dead center in the deafening noise and blistering heat, the roaring flames dancing in his eyes. Ega cautiously approached the main character. "Your Highness." But Andrian completely shut him out, marching deeper into the inferno as the blazing fires crackled wildly around them. An old man with a stark white beard, his bulging muscles drenched in sweat, smashed a massive hammer down onto glowing red steel. Andrian watched him intensely. Among all the chaotic noise, one strike echoed with crystal-clear perfection. Andrian stood completely frozen, captivated by that rhythmic perfection. "Ah, this is," he whispered in awe, his eyes locked onto the blazing red-hot blade resting on the anvil. "This is it, the very first core memory I can recall." Andrian stared without blinking, heavy sweat rolling down his face from both the hellish heat and the overwhelming intensity of that buried memory. Suddenly, a soft cloth brushed against his cheek. He snapped out of his trance, blinking rapidly. Adelia was gently wiping the sweat from his face. Looking deeply concerned, she whispered softly, "Your Highness, you are sweating far too much." Andrian finally let out a heavy breath he hadn't even realized he was holding. He threw one last sharp glance at the roaring forge, his eyes lingering on the legendary masterpiece in progress. The deafening roar of the forge took over once again. The exhausted workers finally seemed to notice their royal guests, but the atmosphere instantly turned suffocatingly tense. A man sporting a green hat and a thick mustache stepped forward. "We humble servants offer our respects to your highness." Prince Ega quickly introduced him. "This man is named Jackson. He is the chief supervisor of this blacksmith guild." Andrian gave a short, dismissive nod. "Understood." Jackson glanced back, saw the white-haired old man still furiously hammering away, and absolutely exploded with rage. "What the hell do you think you are doing? Drop your hammer instantly and bow to his highness." But before the supervisor could finish screaming, a massive hand clamped viciously over his mouth. Jackson's eyes nearly popped out in sheer terror. Andrian was crushing his jaw, his eyes glowing with a terrifying, threatening golden aura. "You are talking way too much," the prince whispered with bone-chilling coldness. Jackson instantly fell dead, silent, trembling violently. Andreon tossed him aside and scanned the grim workshop. The other blacksmiths looked like they were on death's door. Their faces were completely hollowed out, their eyes filled with nothing but pure exhaustion and deeply ingrained fear. It was blatantly obvious. They had been forcefully dragged out here against their will, forced to halt their precious craft for a royal greeting I never even commanded. He turned to the stunned workers, his voice echoing with absolute kingly authority. The iron is getting cold. Unless you plan on letting the forge fires completely die out, go ahead and keep standing there like idiots. The blacksmiths jolted awake and started screaming. What the hell are you guys doing? Grab your damn tools. Another worker roared back. Pump the bellows right now. In a flash, the forge exploded back to life. Yet amidst that roaring chaos, Andreon stood perfectly still. Arms crossed, he observed the dancing flames. The old master remained deeply submerged in his divine craft, completely dead to the outside world. Andreon slowly approached the legendary anvil. Badum, badum. His heart began to pound in perfect sync with the devastating heavy strikes of the master's hammer. The roaring flames surged upward, bathing the prince in a brilliant blazing orange aura. Andreon muttered under his breath, sweat dripping from his strong jawline. His eyes widened, trembling violently from a chaotic storm of emotions. It was a mix of pure shock and a deep, soul-stirring familiarity. What the hell is this insane feeling? A beautiful amber sunset blanketed the magnificent white buildings of the territory. It painted a warm yet deeply melancholic scene as Andreon walked silently alongside Prince Ega. For some completely unknown reason, over the past 6 months, he has endlessly repeated the cycle of forging swords only to melt them right back down. Andreon listened with razor-sharp focus, his fierce eyes staring straight ahead as he asked the crucial question. Are they simply failed weapons? Ega shook his head, slowly looking utterly baffled by the eccentric artisan's crazy standards. Honestly, it is incredibly hard to say. Every single blade that leaves his anvil is widely considered a generational masterpiece. That is exactly why the world calls him the ultimate swordsmith master. Even the swords he has forged so far seem absolutely flawless to my mortal eyes. It remains a complete mystery why he ruthlessly melts every single one of them down into scrap. Furthermore, for the entire past month, he has barely slept a wink, obsessively chaining himself to his anvil. He is certainly not a young man anymore. Our deep concerns for his life are definitely not unfounded. Days blurred together into weeks. Inside the sweltering heat of the forge, sparks violently danced like fireflies across the dark abyss. The rhythmic, devastating strikes of a hammer against steel endlessly echoed. The prince kept a silent vigil, witnessing a legendary weapon's birth from dawn until midnight. Despite the crushing tension surrounding the first prince's arrival, time flowed with an eerie absolute peace. The old grandmaster hammered away while the royal heir simply watched with an unwavering gaze. Finally, the day of departure arrived. Under the pale moonlight, the last heavy strike echoed, giving way to a profound, deathly mourning silence. Deep inside the forge, Andreon stared down at the anvil, his heart completely heavy. He sighed softly. I truly hoped to see it finish before I left. Ega sensed the crushing disappointment in his lord's voice. He is genuinely regretting this. Yielding to fate, Andreon issued a quiet absolute command. Let us move. Ega bowed deeply. A farewell banquet awaits tonight, and we must march out by dawn's first light. Ega desperately wished his liege could witness the Grandmaster's final masterpiece. Suddenly, as Andreon grabbed the carriage door, a voice shattered the silence. Your Highness. Andreon froze in his tracks. Ega sprinted toward him, gasping for air but screaming in absolute ecstasy. The Grandmaster has finished the divine blade. Andreon's eyes burst wide open. He whirled toward the estate's high balcony. There, bathed in the blood-red hues of the setting sun, stood the legendary craftsman. Shirtless and heavily scarred, he gripped a massive silver blade. It caught the dying light, radiating an intensely magnificent, otherworldly aura. The old man panted heavily, yet his callous hands remained flawlessly steady as he wiped the steel. It pulsed with a freezing pure light, a lifetime's ultimate masterpiece. The Grandmaster dropped to one knee, bowing his head with absolute reverence. Offering his life's ultimate creation with trembling hands, he declared, I present this supreme blade to your Highness. Andreon stepped forward, completely mesmerized. Reaching out his fingertips, gently brushed the freezing immortal steel of the intricately forged crossguard. Forged in the blazing heat of a rising sun, cooled until it mirrors the king's crimson mantle. Through this grueling trial, a radiant blade and a true ruler are born. Andreon smiled faintly. Does it have a name? The old master whispered, call it Twilight. Andreon studied the glowing edge. Twilight of dawn or fading shadows, the master chuckled. To me, it is dusk, but to your Highness, it is dawn. Andreon laughed purely. Such incredibly poetic words for a blacksmith. But instantly the master's smile vanished, his eyes losing their brilliant spark. His ancient, overwhelming aura completely shattered. What a relief. He collapsed heavily forward. Moving like lightning, Andreon caught the falling legend. Andreon cradled the frail Grandmaster. Ega stammered, Your Highness, the prince issued an absolute command. Tell my uncle I am staying here tonight. As midnight deepened pale, moonlight drenched the quiet estate, serving as the room's only illumination. Andreon sat vigil on a wooden chair. The legendary blacksmith lay in bed, his breathing unbelievably shallow and weak. When you stood behind me, destiny itself shaped this blade. It forcefully chose its own awakening day. Andreon whispered softly, "Is that your absolute truth?" Leaning in incredibly close, the prince uttered a single revelation that made the old master's eyes burst wide open. He stared at the youth, sensing an ancient soul. "Heavens, you are." Andreon remained totally unfazed. "Ah, I finally understand everything. How could I fail to recognize a fellow warrior's blazing heart?" He closed his tired eyes, gathering the last sparks of his life force. "Your Highness, let me hold it once more." Andreon brought the weapon over. "Here." He pressed the heavy hilt into those shaking hands. The master gripped it a final time, savoring the familiar freezing aura of his ultimate creation. "May this divine blade." He gazed at Andreon with desperate blazing hope. "May it become as absolute as you are." Andreon covered the frail hands. "It absolutely will." Smiling in ultimate peace, his iron grip faded. His hand slipped from the hilt. Andreon watched in heavy silence. His chest, once matching the mighty forge, went completely still. The legend had fallen. Andreon remained totally alone. Pale moonlight washed over the peaceful face of an artisan who sacrificed his very soul for one final masterpiece. The next morning, brilliant sunlight chased away the shadows. Iga stood beaming, offering a lavishly decorated box to his lord. Inside rested a phenomenal magic sword heavily encrusted with gems. Of course, one cannot simply weigh the absolute value of a soul-forged masterpiece against flashy gold, but using such a plain blade might seriously diminish your royal status. "I acquired this phenomenal magic sword for your highness instead. Please accept it." Andreon gripped Twilight, devoid of flashy jewels yet radiating overwhelming lethality. He unsheathed it slightly. Its power is absolute perfection. Its hidden stats were god tier. Iga stammered nervously. "Your Highness, what about that blade?" Andreon sheathed Twilight with a heavy click. He smirked knowingly. A soul-bound blade from a supreme grandmaster was already an unfathomable treasure. Yet, Iga still tried to offer a flashy magical artifact on top of it. Count Alan's absolute unwavering devotion to the royal bloodline is truly on another level. Ego wept bitter tears of soul-crushing defeat. "I plan to use this flashy magic sword as bait to reclaim the Grandmaster's legendary weapon. But I just handed over a god-tier weapon for absolutely nothing." The convoy scrambled to depart. A commander roared fiercely. "Carriages and infantry behind cavalry charge at maximum speed. We are way behind schedule. Maintain your unyielding formation." The elite knights roared in absolute unison. "Yes, sir." Mounting his warhorse, Andreon glanced sharply at the count. "You seem incredibly frantic. Come to think of it, you were basically a ghost during our entire stay here." The count let out a heavy sigh. His Majesty had handed down a secret mission. Andreon rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I guess this little vacation isn't free after all." "That's right," the count continued. "So get ready to move. We're riding at full speed to reach the Iron Lion Fortress by tonight. You'll be spending the journey on horseback." Andreon froze completely. "Ah, about that. I don't actually know how to ride." The count stared at him in utter disbelief. Cold sweat dripped down Andreon's face as he glared at the beast. He muttered a harsh truth about his past existence. "I used to be a literal sword. How in the world would I know how to ride a horse?" The journey to the Iron Lion Fortress was absolute chaos. It was an endless parade of humiliation for a prince completely unaccustomed to horseback riding. Andreon literally threw up a rainbow from severe motion sickness. Adelia watched him in absolute panic as they navigated the endless winding roads. Though it didn't take a mere half day as planned, they finally arrived after one grueling full day of travel. A colossal stone fortress loomed before them. Its massive towers pierced the boundless blue sky. "So this is the legendary Iron Lion Castle." The thunderous rhythm of armored footsteps echoed perfectly across the stone courtyard. Rows of elite knights stood in strict formation. A brown-haired man stepped forward, placing his fist over his heart in a formal salute. Gion of the Gon-Rotanga family pays his respects to the First Prince. Behind him, the entire battalion roared in perfect unison. The Iron Lions salute the noble bloodline of Leonbeck. Andreon flashed a confident smirk, completely unfazed by their overwhelming aura. "Your fighting spirit is bursting at the seams," he thought. "The reason is obvious. Let's stir things up a bit." Owen stepped out of the rigid formation, her expression perfectly cold and utterly composed. He called out her name. "Owen." Owen Kayan bowed deeply, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders. "Your Highness," she spoke with absolute reverence. "I have counted every single day just to see you again." The crowd's reaction was instantaneous and explosive. Blazing flames of jealousy and pure rage erupted from the male knights standing behind her. Their faces twisted in furious indignation as they glared at the prince who stole their idol. Andreon observed their blazing anger with a highly amused smirk. "Wow, what a fast reaction. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. A terrifying purple aura erupted from the maid standing behind him. Her eyes glowed with a threatening golden light, her face completely consumed by pure, unadulterated wrath. Andreon flinched, cold sweat breaking out as his survival instincts kicked in. Yikes, that bloodlust is aimed right at me. He quickly grabbed her shoulder. Adelia. Adelia snapped out of her murderous trance. Her eyes returned to their soft blue hue, blinking in clear confusion. Yes, Your Highness, Andreon sighed internally, feeling a mix of profound relief and extreme caution. Thank goodness I conditioned her subordinate mindset early on. Andreon turned back to the crowd, a razor-sharp, defiant grin spreading across his face. He issued a bold command to his knight. And now, Owen, follow me. We have a lot of catching up to do, don't we? He threw a mocking smirk at the furious crowd. Their fragile egos would be completely shattered if those guys behind her tagged along too. The scene cut to the castle's massive training grounds. Andreon stood completely alone in the center, casually gripping a wooden practice sword while surrounded by the elite Iron Lion Knights. He scanned the tense crowd, his voice echoing loudly. Who will show me the true blade of the Iron Lions? If my royal status makes you hesitate, I swear upon the Leonbeck name that absolutely no one will be held responsible for this spar's outcome. Yet nobody moved a single muscle. Andreon's smirk twisted into mocking sarcasm. Still no takers. He let out a heavy sigh, dropping a devastating insult. The legendary Iron Lions are this cowardly. It seems your title as the kingdom's absolute best is nothing but empty hype. That lethal strike to their pride worked perfectly. A knight with wavy orange hair and arrogant eyes stepped forward, gripping his wooden sword with white knuckles. I am Denon of the Daily family, though I lack the skill to represent the full might of the Iron Lions. If your highness permits, I dare to stand against you. Andreon shifted into a relaxed stance, his wooden sword dangling casually. He waved his free hand. No permission needed. I was the one who asked first after all. Denon charged instantly. The ground shattered beneath his explosive speed. Then please watch yourself. He swung his blade as brilliant blue mana erupted through the air. Andreon calmly tracked the incoming strike, his eyes narrowing sharply. Violent sparks of blue lightning exploded as their wooden weapons viciously clashed together. But amidst the fierce chaos, Denon desperately tried to block. The main character's overwhelming power crushed him, forcing blood to spray as he was mercilessly swatted away. Denon flew backward, tumbling across the grass. Standing amidst the settling dust, Andreon stared at the fallen knight with absolute boredom. Next, the audience gasped in sheer disbelief. Another knight fiercely charged in. I am Paul Roth. Denon was merely a first-year rookie, but I am in my third year. Bam! He was sent flying with a single devastating slash. More furious knights swarmed toward him. I am Hallie, a fifth-year knight apprentice. Crack! Hallie was brutally launched straight into the air. Judith, 8th year. Yet another knight crashed to the dirt. The sword of the Iron Lions will never face defeat. In no time at all, the training ground was littered with groaning knights. Andreon stood perfectly untouched amidst the absolute carnage. Surveying his defeated foes, he sighed heavily at the terrified knights, still hesitating on the sidelines. Good grief. Bring me an official knight already. You guys move way too slow. He turned his attention to Owen. Owen. She stepped forward with absolute duty. Yes, your highness. Andreon flashed her a warm smile. When I head back, you're coming with me. Owen froze completely. A brief flicker of confusion crossed her face before she respectfully bowed. I obey your command, your highness. That bold claim instantly triggered another knight's fury. A deep voice interrupted them. Your highness. Andreon turned to see a towering figure approaching. It was a knight with long silver blonde hair and an incredibly arrogant sneer. He was clad in the heavy, imposing armor of an official knight. Andreon smirked wickedly. This is way too easy. The armored giant came to a halt. I heard your highness enjoys a good gamble. How about a little wager to spice things up, if I manage to defeat you? Andreon instantly cut him off with a flat rejection. Owen is not some cheap tournament prize. He glared intensely at the arrogant knight. Let's bet something else instead. Bring me my sword. Andreon gripped the hilt tightly. He partially drew the blade, revealing a brilliantly glowing blue jewel set into the pommel. If you somehow win, I will hand you this legendary sword right here and now. Owen's eyes widened in absolute shock. The arrogant knight narrowed his gaze instantly, recognizing the mythical weapon. Owen desperately grabbed Andreon's arm in pure panic. Your highness, I should be the one to. He immediately fired back. You are hundreds of thousands of times more precious than this sword, because a master swordswoman's true value can never be compared to a mere piece of steel, he thought. She looked at him with desperate, pleading eyes, but seeing his unwavering resolve, she finally let go. The silver-haired knight smiled with immense satisfaction. I understand perfectly, your highness. I am Dunham of the Fahrenheit family, an official knight of the Iron Lions, standing at the absolute threshold of the third circle. Andreon stared at him with immense boredom. So you're basically still stuck at the second circle. Veins bulged furiously on Dunham's forehead. He raised his weapon with overwhelming pride. This exact blade is the 17th masterpiece forged by the legendary artisan known as the Grand Blacksmith. If you win, this blade belongs to your highness. Andreon smirked with pure amusement. Oh, what a perfect coincidence. Its name is Dusk. I also happen to possess a blade forged by that exact same master. This is the Grandmaster's 100th masterpiece. Dunham looked skeptical, cold sweat beading on his forehead. I have never heard any rumors of the Grandmaster forging a 100th blade. Andreon replied with chilling calm, I suppose not, because this was his final creation. Completed just a few days ago. Dunham narrowed his eyes. Crackling blue lightning began to violently spark around his blade. Fine then, let us begin. Even if your highness walks a misguided path of the sword, I must acknowledge the relentless effort hidden within it. To show my absolute respect, I will go all out in this duel. Andreon stood completely relaxed as blazing blue fire erupted around his chest. A misguided path. He closed his eyes and shook his head. How narrow-minded. This position was never solely mine to begin with. Respect meant for me only needs to come from my own people. Adelia watched closely. Adelia gasped for air. Yes, sir. A colossal explosion of blue mana blasted outward from Andreon. It spiraled violently, manifesting the towering spirit of a knight right behind him. That aura was overwhelmingly absolute, eclipsing even the castle towers in the background. This was the path she was destined to walk from now on. Adelia stared in absolute awe, mesmerized by this display of true power. I will. Golden energy swirled around her as she envisioned herself following that brilliant blue light. I swear I will do it, your highness. Elsewhere, bathed in the sunlight of a grand parlor, the count shattered the silence with a heavy, lingering question. So exactly how many times have we visited the Iron Lion Castle now? Sitting opposite him on a lavish green velvet armchair, Count Wallen gripped his teacup. His expression remained hidden behind the rising steam as he answered coldly. This is the 4th time the 3rd and 5th princes have visited, while the first prince remains grounded. No matter how terrible his reputation might be, it is an undeniable fact that the first prince is the kingdom's absolute legitimate heir. For things to escalate to this disastrous point, you certainly bear a massive share of the blame. If you, the commander of the 3rd Legion, had supported the first prince even slightly, his highness would never have been this isolated. So why start acting as his devoted guardian only now? The count lowered his gaze, sinking into deep thought. I was not wrong. I definitely abandoned my own nephew once. A man who was not merely an incompetent ruler, but a bloodthirsty tyrant. That was my nephew. One day when I scolded him for getting drunk on a bizarre potion. Have you completely lost your mind? He actually charged at his own uncle with a drawn blade. An absolutely hopeless bastard. When I returned to the north in utter despair, he sent me poisoned wine. He brazenly called it a gift, attaching a mocking letter alongside it. Yet the count had consumed the poison anyway. Crackling blue lightning surged around his body as he ruthlessly purged the deadly toxins. As I burned away that cheap poison with my mana, I also incinerated whatever pathetic scraps of familial love I had left for him. However, that brat, whom I thought would never change, has completely transformed. He endures hellish physical training and is growing exponentially stronger by the day. Count Wallen stared at him, baffled by this sudden, fierce protection. Did you not vow that the first prince must never become the king? He thought to himself. The boy now is a fundamentally different beast from before. Then looking straight into Count Bevanhat's eyes, he pleaded with a rare, desperate vulnerability. Please just give him one chance. At least let him stand on the same starting line as the other princes. I am begging you. Count Wallen watched in pure shock as the notoriously proud commander deeply bowed his head. I truly cannot understand this. I no longer know if it is you or the first prince who has changed more. Raise your head first. You are the legendary Silver Lion. Suddenly, the massive double doors burst open. A knight stood there in pure panic, throwing his arms wide to address Count Wallen. Both counts spun around to face the first prince's breathless messenger. Beneath the blazing blue sky of the castle courtyard, Bevanhat and Job marched rapidly down the stone pathway. He desperately tried to reassure himself. There is no need to overreact. Dunham knows his absolute limits, so nothing fatally serious will happen. Even in a live combat spar, he surely will not beat the prince senseless. Bevanhat strode forward with an arrogant smirk, his hands casually resting behind his back. The one you should be worried about right now is not the prince. It is your knight. Job stared at his friend like he had lost his mind. You have truly gone insane. You look completely pale, and now you are spouting utter nonsense. Suddenly, thunderous shockwaves echoed from the inner courtyard. They froze in horror as a figure was launched through the air. The knight slammed brutally into the ground, skidding violently across the dirt. Is that your elite knight? Job's jaw practically dropped to the floor. Dunham. At the epicenter of the training grounds, he was surrounded by a roaring mob of hyped-up knights, Whoa, His Highness won again. Even the mighty Dunham was completely crushed. The soldiers screamed in absolute disbelief, paralyzed by the epic scene unfolding before them. What on earth is this? Bevan Hat crossed his arms with deep satisfaction. Did I not warn you? Andreon wiped a streak of blood from his lip, his eyes blazing with terrifying intensity. He is definitely not the one you need to worry about. Andreon roared, glaring down at the remaining terrified challengers. His phenomenal physique was cloaked entirely in mystical blue flames. Next, just minutes ago, someone arrogantly claimed that a true knight begins at the second aura ring. Andreon panted heavily, sweat dripping from his fierce face as the blue fire violently flickered around his chest. Those words were no exaggeration. This basic training aura is simply not enough anymore. He realized this while glaring at his trembling hands. But I cannot unleash the true Dragon Slayer's anthem against a mere ordinary knight. In that case, Andreon narrowed his piercing eyes. The Hyperfocus trait had fully activated. The entire world fell dead silent. All ambient sound instantly vanished. The charging knight was now moving in agonizingly slow motion. He gripped his sword hilt tightly. This body no longer felt like his own. His left eye flared with a piercing, unearthly blue flame. This was the exact same feeling from back then. The enemy knight swung his blade down with lethal force. Simultaneously, Andreon unleashed a devastating counterattack. Boom! Radiant blue energy exploded outward upon their catastrophic impact. Andreon's strike was overwhelmingly heavy and decisive. The knight was violently blown backward by the sheer raw magnitude of his mana. A wildly feral smirk stretched across his face as scorching steam radiated from his awakened body. Keep coming, he roared once more. The mob of knights went absolutely crazy, screaming in pure awe at his monstrous strength. Yet his opponent staggered back to his feet. Andreon faced him head-on with zero hesitation, their blades deadlocked in a blinding shower of sparks against the backdrop of the towering castle. Spinning with flawless momentum, Andreon dragged a trail of blazing blue fire and delivered the final devastating blow. He chuckled under his breath, fully embracing the thrill of the fight. The lone knight desperately raised his guard before a swarm of reinforcements charged into the fray. Andreon moved like a hurricane of azure light. Slashing left and right, his blade felt like a true extension of his soul. Lowering his sword, the setting sun painted the training grounds in blazing golden hues. Andreon stood completely alone at the center. Breathing heavily, he was surrounded by a sea of defeated knights. He stared down at his gleaming blade. Sweat dripped from his chin. The crowd erupted into deafening cheers, their faces beaming with absolute reverence. Pawn was utterly crushed. That marked His Highness's 5th consecutive victory. Deep within Andreon's soul, a profound awakening unfolded. A radiant silhouette stood firm within a storm of blue aura, enduring countless crushing waves born from 100 fierce battles. I will stand unbreakable even against a much greater tsunami. Ding. A glowing system window suddenly popped up. The training palm unlocked a brand new verse. Only now do I truly rise to wield this blade. His azure aura condensed, blazing brighter and infinitely purer. The mastery level of his training poem had evolved into the extraordinary realm. Adapting to this newly awakened power, the skill transformed into the duelist's anthem. Andreon whispered softly, his vision blurring slightly. I actually did it. His legs finally gave out. As he collapsed forward, a pair of sturdy arms caught him just in time. Is your highness all right? We offer our deepest respect for your glorious victory today. All around them, the surrounding knights radiated pure admiration under the twilight sky. They truly acknowledged the First Prince's supreme blade. One warrior roared with passion, all hail your unyielding fighting spirit. Another echoed the battle cry. We pledge our absolute honor to your triumph. Andreon blinked in utter disbelief at this sudden worship. What in the world? Just moments ago, these guys looked ready to tear me limb from limb. Watching from the sidelines, their hardened expressions had completely melted away. Deep down, they were simple men. Nothing fired up their blood more than raw steel and an epic victory. Judging by that look on your face, you expected them to hold a bitter grudge. The Count stepped forward, adding, a glorious defeat holds far more honor than a cowardly win. When warriors clash with everything they have, does the final outcome even matter? Another knight chimed in with a smirk. Well, Dunham might be holding onto a tiny grudge. The red-haired knight chuckled. Yeah, especially since he had to surrender that beloved sword he kept bragging about to his highness. Another warrior burst into hearty laughter. It felt incredibly refreshing. The guy was way too arrogant about that blade anyway. Sitting on the dusty ground, Andreon listened to their booming laughter. He couldn't help but crack a small smile. I honestly thought the old ways were completely dead and buried along with the ancient man at heart. But it seems one thing remains eternal. Accepting defeat with grace and bowing to absolute strength. The true spirit of a knight. The brilliant afternoon sun cast incredibly long shadows across the stone courtyard of the Iron Lion Castle. War horses neighed fiercely, eager to begin the long journey. The royal carriage was prepped, while the knights scrambled through their final checks. Standing before the massive gathered crowd, the wind tugged at Andreon's coat as he offered a warm farewell smile. Until our paths cross again, my friends. Count George Wallen immediately stepped forward, bowing deeply with the utmost respect. I shall pray for your highness's safe travels. Andreon nodded gracefully. Make sure you take care of yourself too. Count, right, Count Wallen. Please keep everything that transpired here an absolute secret. An invisible question mark basically popped up right above Count George Wallen's head as he blinked in pure confusion. He couldn't fathom this humble request at all. Wouldn't spreading news of this victory hugely benefit the First Prince? But Andreon just flashed a dangerously wicked smirk. Well, there is a certain someone I want to mess with. The journey back was agonizingly long. Eventually, the royal convoy halted in a quiet clearing surrounded by dense towering woods. A knight's voice echoed through the ancient trees. We shall set up camp here for the night. I will go scout the perimeter. Andreon gave a brief nod. Go ahead. Turning his gaze away, he thought to himself, well, Adelia will probably adapt to this life soon enough. He muttered quietly, casually watching the camp bustling with activity. A heavy wave of exhaustion crashed over him. Stretching his arms wide, he sighed, I should probably head inside and rest up. But stepping into his tent, he was blinded by a sparkling aura of absolute perfection. Adelia stood perfectly straight, already back in her standard-made uniform and glowing with an unexplainable holy radiance. Welcome back, your highness. Andreon just stared at her in utter shock, his brain short-circuiting at how absurd this looked. The girl I literally recruited was supposed to be a rank S sword genius, yet here she is flawlessly doing mundane chores like a typical maid. Spotting his sudden hesitation, Adalia tilted her head with deep concern. Your highness, is there absolutely anything not to your liking? Andreon just face-planted onto his soft bed, waving the ridiculous thought away. Never mind, just forget it. You are dismissed. Adelia bowed politely before stepping out with an adorably worried pout. Left entirely alone in the quiet tent, Andreon stared blankly at the ceiling. His mind instantly drifted back to the crazy events at the castle. The Iron Lion Knights were wildly different from what I originally imagined. He closed his eyes, recalling the glowing status windows floating above their heads during the intense sparring sessions. Swordsmanship rank B. Swordsmanship rank C. When I activated my power of judgment, almost none of those official knights possessed a weapon talent higher than a mere rank B. Back in my previous era, these guys would have barely scratched the surface of an intermediate sword master. Even after a brutal lifetime of training, such ordinary talents would have just faded into absolute obscurity. Yet somehow, these very same people had breached the legendary realm of swordmasters while only in their 20s or 30s. The monstrous potential that true heroes once possessed has tragically plummeted. However, the baseline strength of ordinary humans has skyrocketed, and it is all thanks to the revolutionary mana chain. That man could have definitely aimed for true transcendence in the glorious old days. That is exactly why my blood boiled when I saw him carelessly throw away such immense potential. Unfortunately, this modern era strips away any real chance of achieving power beyond the extraordinary level. In the end, it is simply the relentless flow of time at work. I have no choice but to accept this harsh reality. Since I barely understand this new world's logic, I will just have to relearn everything from scratch. Suddenly, a slow, rhythmic clapping shattered his deep meditation. A gruff voice echoed out. That is a phenomenal mindset to have. Andreon snapped his head up, completely startled. Count Bevan Hatz was leaning against the tent entrance, clapping with a rare look of total approval. It is absolutely not too late. If you put in the grueling effort starting right now, you can still achieve your grandest dreams. Andreon blinked in sheer confusion. What dream? The Count threw his arms wide open, hilariously misunderstanding the entire situation. Haven't you already captured the fierce loyalty of the Iron Lion Knights? If it were any of those other stuck-up princes, they would never have blended in with those rough warriors so naturally. That was a brilliant strategic move. Andreon just sat there, staring blankly. His face twisted into a masterpiece of pure horror and utter bewilderment. What the hell is wrong with this guy, he thought. Are you completely insane, he yelled. The Count just blinked in amusement. Did you forget the exact terms of our wager? Andreon shot back immediately. If you mean the bet about crushing the third prince, that still stands. But the Count cut him off. No. Our bet was about defeating a 2-star knight. Andreon had utterly crushed Dunham using only a wooden sword. Wait, Andreon realized. That means I actually won the bet. The Count stepped forward, his voice echoing with absolute authority. I will fulfill the promise I made that day. As a Count of this realm and commander of the Northern Army, I officially declare my absolute support for the First Prince Andreon Leonbeck. Andreon froze. What nonsense is he spouting? He panicked inwardly. Official support? Do not tell me. The Count flashed a confident thumbs up toward the tiny tent below. Leave it all to me. Andreon's eye twitched with pure rage. When did I ever say I wanted to be the king? The scene faded to the gleaming white walls of the royal capital basking under a brilliant azure sky. The Count's declaration had dropped like an absolute bombshell. Whispers erupted from every corner. Congratulations, your highness. Inside the grand halls, knights and maids beamed with dazzling smiles. We offer our deepest congratulations. This is a glorious day for the kingdom. The newly appointed royal knights and guards were in an absolute frenzy. Fresh waves of retainers and servants flooded in from the main palace, buzzing with relentless energy. And suddenly, Andrian was trapped right in the center of the chaos. He waved his hand in utter annoyance. Good grief, what a nightmare. Kick them all out immediately. The silent knight beside him just shook his head. They are here by royal decree. Even if I order them out, they will refuse. Andrian scowled darkly. Then at least clear them out of my sight. This is driving me completely insane. Catching his deadly glare, the head maid nodded nervously and scurried into the high-ceilinged library. Sinking into a plush velvet chair, Andrian sighed as sunlight poured through the towering windows. Finally, absolute silence. Much better. Smash. The massive double doors were kicked open with explosive force. Brother, are you in here? Andrian shot him a deadpan glare. Why are you here right now? Julian stood there, hands planted firmly on his hips. You played the fool perfectly, did you not? Secretly mastering the sword under Count Bevan hats and hiding such massive ambitions all along. Andrian stared at him, utterly dumbfounded. Who learned what from who now? Julian's fists trembled with rage. I actually planned to save your pride. How could you stab me in the back like this? I was going to let you lose gracefully. Andrian let out a dry, sarcastic chuckle. Wow, amazing. I am practically moved to tears. Julian pointed an accusing finger right at Andrian's face, his eyes blazing with fierce rivalry. You made a massive mistake, because now I will make you pay dearly for deceiving me. Andrian rubbed his temples, a dark shadow falling over his face. This guy, that guy. I already said I do not care about the throne, he thought furiously. I need to track down the mastermind behind this mess. The memory shifted back to the private quiet of the northern tent, picking up his tense conversation with the Count. Listen, uncle. I will play along with this act for a little while, but you need to back down when the time is right, because I have absolutely zero interest in the throne. Why did you trigger this massive scheme without even consulting me? The Count paused, his eyes narrowing with sharp intuition. Are you worried about the Bevan Hats family? The Bevan Hats territory is the absolute shield protecting this kingdom from the demonic beasts of the northern mountains. The Count smirked with unshakable confidence. As long as the royal family and those nobles remember the bitter cold of winter, no harm will ever come to the house of Bevan Hats. Andrian eyed him skeptically, yet a fraction of his tension melted away. If that is true, then I am relieved. The Count's tone grew heavy. It is only a matter of time. This clash of fate was inevitable anyway. Do you honestly not know the tragic destiny of a first prince who fails to claim the throne? Keeping your head down will not change your reality. If you need time to accept your awakening, I will give you as much as you need. However, engrave this into your soul. The absolute legitimacy of the firstborn will never vanish unless you die. Left alone in the dim glow of the tent, Andrian sat in heavy silence. I already told you. No matter how much time you give me, my path will not change. The only thing I seek is absolute power, the transcendent strength that I once touched. There is no way I care about something as trivial as a mortal throne. Or so I completely believed. The timeline fast-forwarded. The colossal doors of the grand banquet hall swung open. The room was drowning in high society, dripping in extravagant gowns and luxurious suits. The marble floors gleamed with intricate golden crests. A royal herald stepped forward, his booming voice cutting through the elite crowd. The pure bloodline of the Leonbeck kingdom. The firstborn of the royal house, His Royal Highness, the First Prince. Andrion Leonbeck is entering. Andrian strode into the hall, radiating pure majestic aura. He wore a high-collared midnight black uniform with striking crimson accents and heavy gold braiding. The sea of nobles parted instantly for him. Their faces were painted with raw curiosity, deep awe, and silent judgment. At least until the true banquet began. Andrian marched forward, his piercing gaze sweeping over the whispering aristocrats below. The glittering elites draped in fine silk and velvet were utterly paralyzed by the prince's legendary transformation. A noblewoman gasped, her breath catching in her throat. It is absolutely unbelievable, this commanding presence. He looks exactly like His Majesty in his prime. Andrian descended the final marble steps, his face an emotionless mask. All I did was shed some weight and they are losing their minds, he scoffed inwardly. Are these pathetic fools really the pillars of the kingdom? What an absolute joke. System status activated. Revealing their true nature, trait of the viper's heart. Spectral purple-black serpents coiled tightly around the aristocrats' necks, their shadowy scales glistening with pure malice. It was the ultimate mark of dark karma, the disgusting rot accumulated from bleeding the innocent, dry, and trampling on human lives. I figured every single one of them was carrying this kind of filth, he thought. The only one actually worth my time is. Andrian's eyes locked onto his target instantly. Hey, if you showed up, the least you can do is greet me. The man flinched, answering immediately. Ah, Your Highness, I deeply apologize. I must sincerely thank you for this prestigious invitation. Andrian observed his flustered aura plotting his next move. The only noble here who lacks power but remains completely uncorrupted. Perfect. This guy is more than enough to be the ultimate vessel for the seeds of chaos I am about to plant. Suddenly, the royal guard's explosive shout ripped through the whispers, plunging the entire grand hall into dead silence. The colossal double doors crashed open once more. Marquis Montpierre of the Bourne Empire, a supreme authority officially recognized by the Emperor of Bourne himself, is now entering. Andreon whipped around. A short, intensely obese man wearing a flashy feathered hat and a gaudy purple cape swaggered into the room. Flanked by elite Imperial guards, the ambassador of Bournemong made his grand entrance. That specific name struck Andreon like a devastating physical blow. What the hell? The Marquis halted right in front of Andreon, a sickeningly arrogant smirk spreading across his greasy face. It has been a while, Prince. Andreon's gaze locked onto the man. The cursed name Bogon echoed in his mind, igniting a violently blood-soaked flashback. The ultimate sworn enemy. The very bastard my comrades and I shed blood fighting against for so long 4 years ago, bearing the cursed name that carved countless tragic scars into this very nation. How dare he stand before me? Suddenly, a splash of red wine arced through the air. It completely drenched the main character's face and soaked his incredibly expensive formal attire. Andreon froze in place. Marquis Beaufay, an elderly noble with a gray beard, rushed over with absolute terror on his face. Prince, are you all right? I was too eager to greet you and acted carelessly. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Andreon snapped back to reality. I need to go change my clothes. The old man bowed deeply, sweating bullets. This aging body failed me, and I have committed a grave disrespect. A royal knight quickly approached Andreon. Your Highness, I shall escort you. Andreon glanced at the old Marquis, taking the blame. Who is he? The knight replied. That is Lord Marquis Beaufay. Andreon carefully observed the old man, who was still bowing in absolute submission. Beaufay. I guess not all of them are completely rotten. Well, thanks to his little stunt, my boiling rage has cooled down a bit. Moments later, Andreon was wiping his face. The Count opened the door and entered. I heard there was an incident. Marquis Beaufay mentioned you looked ready to cause massive trouble. It seems he was not talking total nonsense. What in the world were you planning to do? Andreon replied, his voice rock solid. I am not that reckless. It is just. I simply cannot understand. The cruel Bogon family flaunts their power right in the heart of our kingdom, and those trash nobles show him a genuine respect that they do not even offer to the royal family. There is an atmosphere way too tense to ever be called peace, and a relationship far too one-sided to ever be considered an alliance. Andreon asked, clenching his fists tightly. Since when did our country fall into such a pathetic state? The Count looked away, a bone-deep exhaustion on his face. It is not some unique history. In the past, our kingdom stood firm against countless empire invasions. Brilliant knights always stepped up to the front lines to completely repel the enemy forces. However, as time passed, the empire grew terrifyingly strong and the power gap widened massively. A panoramic scene revealed the empire's colossal sprawling capital, dwarfing the significantly smaller kingdom. Facing an empire that evolved into an absolute superpower, the kingdom eventually had no other choice but to fall to its knees. Andreon's eyes widened as a shocking realization hit him. Do not tell me. Is it because of that thing? A map appeared showing the tiny territory of Leonbeck completely swallowed by the massive Bogan Empire. Even as a small border nation, the kingdom possessed a hidden trump card that allowed them to stand toe-to-toe against the mighty empire. Since the very founding of the nation, legendary achievements have been flawlessly accumulated. Some were perfectly ordinary, while others were truly extraordinary. Whether they were epic, heroic tales, ancient legends, or even literal myths. The martial soul anthems. We have tragically lost every single one of those powers. He looked up at the Count, his face hardening with unbreakable resolve. Uncle, I have changed my mind. The Count asked. What do you mean? Andreon replied with booming confidence. Becoming king. I will give it a shot. The Count's eyes widened in absolute shock. Andreon thought to himself, I might deeply regret this decision, but it is something I absolutely must do. After all, I am the one who helped build half of this very nation. On the second day of the banquet, blazing sunlight beamed down on the white stone palace as a booming voice echoed. The first prince of the Leonbeck royal family, Andreon Leonbeck, is entering. Andreon strode into the hall. He adjusted his coat, his face radiating an absolutely overwhelming confidence. Walking right beside him was his uncle. Count Bovenhat of the North is entering. Andreon glanced to his side. The nobles bowed their heads, but every single one of them avoided his gaze. What incredibly sloppy etiquette. This is even worse than how they treat a foreign noble. His mind drifted back to exactly 400 years ago. In the past, when my comrade stood before the people, nobody ever thought he would become the true king, because he was nothing more than a country boy who ran away from some remote, nameless village. Even among those who had everything stripped away and were cast out, he did not stand out in the slightest. Despite all that, that boy still stepped right up in front of the people, just like me right now. Standing tall before a flock of blind sheep, system windows popped up relentlessly. Warning, Song of the Monarch, current stats cannot handle the anthem's level. A fraction of the anthem has been skipped. Only activating one line of the anthem equivalent to 1/4 of its power. Andreon gritted his teeth, feeling the immense strain. Compared to the true dragon-slaying anthem, this is still bearable, because this anthem is only at the hero tier, not the mythical tier. Even so, blazing blue flames gathered above his head, forging an incredibly gorgeous phantom-like crown. No other anthem fits this current situation better than this one. The nobles stared, stunned into absolute silence. A wave of blue mana violently swept over them. Even the most corrupted aristocrats gazed up with pure, overwhelming reverence. Andreon stood tall, his blue mana cloak fluttering wildly behind him, the majestic crown glowing brilliantly upon his head. This is enough for now. He turned back to the crowd, an imposing smile gracing his face. You may raise your heads. Suddenly, a surge of dark, purple energy slashed through the air. Andreon froze at the sheer pressure of this aura. An elf, her hood fell back, and a chilling voice echoed. How truly surprising to think that someone still remembers the ancient anthems. Andreon's face completely drained of color. He stared at her in absolute horror. Why the hell is that absolute lunatic here? An illusionary world unfolded before him. Pure radiant sunlight filtered through the lush green canopy of a vast, ancient primeval forest. The most beautiful creations God ever molded. A deeply benevolent race who could never bear to harm even the tiniest living creature. The gentle gardeners of the green forest, blessed with lifespans from 300 to a full 1,000 years. That is what the entire world typically thinks when hearing the word elf. However, in brutal reality, they are a terrifyingly savage race. Monsters who use their breathtaking beauty as a deadly lure to completely obliterate their enemies. The High Elves. Those born with hero-tier grades right from the cradle are by far the most dangerously lethal among them all. Inside the dimly lit massive grand hall, Andreon was now standing face to face with the absolute embodiment of that danger. He locked eyes with the silver-haired elf woman draped in an incredibly luxurious purple cloak. His mind raced wildly with mounting anxiety as he thought, to make matters worse, this is not even a normal high elf. She has lived for nearly a millennium. She's a grand high elf. Her name is Sigrin, the magic sword dancer. She was a core member of the expeditionary army that slaughtered the Mad Dragon exactly 400 years ago. A horrifying memory from 4 centuries past suddenly slammed back into Andreon's mind. The image of her completely drenched in blood, reaching for a gorgeous sword with an utterly psychotic maniacal smile. That was Andreon in his past life. Her twisted obsession dripped from every word. If your master falls, will you serve me? I promise you an eternity without a single dull moment. So what if you are merely a sword? My desire for you burns deeper than ever, precisely because you are a blade. Back in the present, Andreon stared at her. Cold sweat drenched his face. This was the exact same lunatic who had ruthlessly tormented him. There is no way she recognizes me, right? Even though I just recited the king's anthem, a melody she knows intimately. Her face suddenly invaded his personal space. Burning with curiosity, she whispered, Have our paths crossed before? How strange. Why does your highness feel so incredibly familiar? Andreon stiffened his posture, burying his sheer panic. This is my very first time witnessing an elf in person. She tilted her head. Is that so? Without missing a beat, he replied. Absolutely. Sigrin tapped her slender fingers against her chin. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Andreon maintained a perfectly polite smile, though his jaw remained clenched. Absolute terror threatened to consume him from within. He gulped down his mounting dread. Grasping the terrifying reality of his situation, he thought, what a massive liar. Even 400 years ago, Sigrin was an absolute powerhouse. The strongest being I encountered in my entire existence as a sword. Heavens know what kind of unfathomable monster she has become today. Sigrin finally shattered the suffocating silence. Her voice dripped with calculated silk. When humans gaze upon our kind for the first time, they typically show one of 2 reactions. The vast majority fall under an absolute trance. But those who have achieved the absolute pinnacle of martial arts, they feel an overwhelming sense of dread. However, from what I can see, your highness has not yet reached such legendary heights. Andreon countered swiftly with chilling composure. My personal tastes are just a little eccentric. Sigrin fell silent. Her piercing gaze locked onto his soul, hunting for a single crack in his flawless facade. After a suffocating stare down, Sigrin finally relented. She pulled the deep purple hood over her flowing silver hair. Pivoting on her heel, she left a parting whisper. Though our encounter was brief, it was an absolute honor to meet you. She then vanished down the brilliantly lit corridor. Andreon watched her fading silhouette. All color drained from his face as cold sweat cascaded down his neck. He exhaled a massive breath, dropping an invisible mountain of pressure. I survived, for now. Shortly after the disastrous lineup of marriage candidates arrived, the queen had summoned an absolute circus. Her disappointed voice echoed, Way too young. Another woman nervously shielded a terrified little girl behind her extravagant dress. This one lacks the courage to even meet my gaze. Nearby, a fiercely muscular woman glared daggers at him, her eyes blazing with raw battle aura. The queen sharply critiqued. Did she come here to wage war? Next, a clueless toddler sat playing on the marble floor, once again entirely too young. This is an absolute disaster. He even spotted a random dog and a wooden doll on the official candidate roster. The queen buried her face in her hands. Overwhelmed by sheer frustration, she began her royal lecture. This is the sacred selection of the crown prince's future bride. You cannot expect them to resemble the ordinary women of your past. A future queen must possess infinite wisdom, boundless grace, robust health, and an impeccable noble bloodline. Suddenly, an announcement shattered the chaos. The elven delegation requests an immediate audience. Sigrin confidently stepped into the spotlight. She executed a flawlessly elegant bow. I represent the legendary Mistletoe clan. I offer my deepest respects to the breathtakingly beautiful Queen Margarita. The queen smiled warmly, blissfully, ignorant of the apex predator before her. It has been an age since elves graced our kingdom. I am quite pleasantly surprised. Sigrin straightened her posture, locking her predatory gaze directly onto the queen. It appears your majesty is aggressively hunting for a woman worthy of standing beside the crown prince. Am I mistaken? The queen nodded graciously. Your intuition is spot on. A supremely confident smirk danced across Sigrin's lips as her voice echoed through the grand hall. I am a high elf. Translated to your human hierarchy, I am the ultimate equivalent of a grand duchess from a spectacularly illustrious bloodline. Andreon glared daggers at her. Boiling rage simmered beneath his cold sweat. His mind raced in absolute panic. What sick, twisted game is she playing now? Sigrin pressed forward with her flawless self-introduction. A radiant, almost divine aura practically exploded from her being. And by some miraculous stroke of fate, my age aligns perfectly with his highness. Deep inside his mind, a miniature Andreon was completely losing his sanity, screaming in sheer agony. Liar. We are separated by nearly 1,000 years. How can she spit such an outrageous lie without even blinking an eye? She shamelessly added. Rumor has it that being blessed with eternal youth is humanity's ultimate ideal partner. Oh, and I also come with an elite entourage. In human terms, consider them my personal vanguard of legendary knights. Truthfully, the very split second my eyes met His Highness, I felt it. The undeniable spark of a soul-bound destiny connecting us together. Every last drop of color vanished from Andreon's face. His pupils shrank to pinpricks of absolute horror. Knowing the terrifying truth about elven nature, a dreadful realization struck him. The elven race fundamentally cannot lie about the threads of destiny. Does that mean every single word she just spouted was her absolute truth? Instantly, the grand hall erupted into chaotic madness. The queen cupped her cheeks in sheer awe, whispering softly, "Oh my heavens." The surrounding nobles frantically gossiped. Come to think of it, legend says elves value the laws of fate above life itself. Does this mean an unprecedented marriage alliance with the elven realm is upon us? Good heavens. Andreon realized he had to shut down this escalating madness right now. He lunged forward. Gripping her wrist with forceful authority, he dragged her out of the roaring hall. His face twisted in pure fury. We need to talk. Right now. An outraged noble shrieked from behind. What absolute insolence. Andreon threw Sigrin into a deserted chamber, violently slamming the heavy oak doors shut. He released her wrist and spun around. His icy blue eyes pierced her with a ruthless interrogation. Sigrin, spit out your true objective immediately. She gently rubbed her cheek, flashing a sickeningly innocent smile. I merely came to forge an unbreakable bond of friendship between my clan and this grand kingdom. You know how it is. Andreon's expression darkened into an abyss. He completely refused to play along with her twisted mind games. I will ask you one last time. An esteemed elven elder, the legendary executioner who has bathed in her clan's dirtiest blood for centuries. Her eyes widened in genuine shock as he ruthlessly ripped away her perfect masquerade. The ultimate blade of the Mistletoe clan. Are you here on a scouting mission, or did you come to execute a death sentence? Sigrin's innocent facade instantly vanished. A venomous, dangerously alluring smirk took its place. How incredibly fascinating. Just how do you know my true identity? Andreon stood his ground, an immovable mountain of unyielding silence. His mind rapidly analyzed the apocalyptic threat standing before him. She was an absolute monster. A calamity whose true power wildly eclipsed his current level. If she actually sensed a threat of destiny from him, her spiritual rank must be high enough to peer directly into the ancient past, etched within his very soul. Sigrin closed the distance. Sinister shadows writhed around her body like venomous vipers. She openly mocked him. You recognize me as an executioner, yet you fail to realize how utterly suicidal it is to play this silent game with death itself. Andreon did not flinch. An aura of unshakable confidence sliced right through the suffocating darkness. He shot back. Oh, I am perfectly aware. Running your mouth before an executioner is pure suicide. Drop the mind games, Sigrin. Stay out of my destiny. Andrian's mind raced, formulating a desperate survival strategy. Her current interest was merely a passing curiosity. If nothing changed, this deranged elf would tear his fragile human body to shreds. He needed to ignite a dangerous obsession. He had to become a rare delicacy, slowly ripening to perfection. Something far too precious for her to simply taste and discard. Sigrin leaned in closer, her eyes wide with genuine intoxicating thrill. "Who are you really?" she whispered. Maintaining his facade, Andrian replied, "Right now I am just a pitiful prince abandoned by his father." She pressed closer. "And your true self? Who knows?" he smirked. "If you are curious, just wait and see." She stared intently. "I knew there was something delightfully twisted about you. I wondered why I was assigned such a meaningless, trivial mission. But now, the universe has finally revealed why I was sent here. It was all for you." Andrian watched her manic joy, his stomach churning with pure disgust. 400 years ago or today, she was still an absolutely terrifying monster. Sealing their deadly pact, the two emerged from the shadows. They walked side by side, their footsteps echoing down the grand hall's crimson carpet. Gripping Sigrin's hand, Andrian initiated his grand theatrical performance before the stunned audience. The elite nobles gasped in sheer disbelief as they glided past. Halting before the queen's towering throne, Andrian flashed a captivating, entirely fabricated smile. "I have an announcement," he declared. "Sigrin and I shall be engaged." Sigrin clung to his arm, resting her head against his shoulder with a sickeningly sweet smile. Her cheeks flushed deeply, mastering her role perfectly. Andrian's soul withered inside. The thought of calling this psycho affectionately made him gag. But to defy her meant death. He needed this fake engagement to buy precious time. Staring down the queen, he launched the final phase of his stalling tactic. "As this is a monumental decision, we plan to take our time courting before making it official." The queen tapped her chin, visibly relieved by the delayed commitment. "You agree to this?" she asked. "Yes, it is for the best." Andrian sharply calculated the board. For the scheming queen, this grace period was a chance to weigh the political value of their union. For Sigrin, it was time to let her favorite prey ripen. But for him, it was the perfect window to amass enough power to crush this lunatic elf completely. Meanwhile, inside a lavishly decorated office, the atmosphere was suffocatingly thick with murderous, boiling rage. Third Prince Julian smashed his fist through the solid oak desk, his face twisted in ugly jealousy as he roared, "You worthless bastard! Your only achievement is being born first." He stood panting, his blood boiling like hot magma. The recent string of humiliating defeats played on loop in his mind, twisting his sanity into knots. First, their uncle practically handed him supreme backing. Then he snatched the Iron Lion's prize. And now he dared to lay claim to a legendary elf. "Our duel is set," he snarled. "Killing him brings too much political heat. So I will just carve him up until he begs for death, ruining him beyond repair. I will grind you into the dirt." The day of reckoning finally arrived. The grand imperial courtyard bathed under a brilliant blue sky ready for bloodshed. Hordes of knights swarmed the arena, buzzing with electric anticipation. The referee stood tall in gleaming silver armor and a crimson cape, his voice booming with absolute authority. "This sacred duel is officially sanctioned by the Royal Knight Commander and the noble bearer of the Silver Lion title. I, Cham Hill, Stuttgart, bear witness to this clash of honor. The results shall be absolute. Your highnesses draw your blades." Facing Julian's blazing, killing intent, the first prince simply covered his mouth, letting out a tremendously bored yawn. "It is just one strike," Andrian thought. "Why are they yapping so much?" Julian sneered, practically vibrating with arrogant overconfidence. "I set the perfect stage for my dear eldest brother. I even gathered an audience for your humiliation. Do you like it?" Andrian stared back with dead, unbothered eyes. His stance was so ridiculously relaxed it was an absolute insult. "Just try not to disappoint them," he muttered. "You seriously talk way too much." Triggered by the blatant disrespect, Julian's aura exploded. Thin crackling blue lightning surged aggressively around his entire body. "I pray you keep that arrogant tone when you are begging on your knees," Julian roared. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. Andrian's azure eyes flashed with a terrifying absolute zero chill. A colossal wave of blue aura erupted from his blade, twisting the very air into a raging mana cyclone. He casually swung his sword with apocalyptic force. "I wanted to play around, but I am in a hurry." Boom. A single devastating strike sent the third prince flying like a broken rag doll. Julian crashed into the earth, violently coughing up blood. The entire arena instantly fell into a dead, horrifying silence. Even the veteran referee's eyes practically popped out of his skull. "Is that truly the garbage? First Prince," he thought. Shaking, he stepped forward to shatter the heavy silence. "The victor is His Highness the First Prince. The third prince is incapacitated." The grandstands instantly exploded into pure chaos and panicked whispers. "Impossible. How could he win?" Andrian tossed a chilling glare over his shoulder at the whispering elite. These pathetic nobles, flocking together just to watch kids play with swords, he scoffed. Wild rumors immediately engulfed the capital like wildfire. Prince Julian actually lost the kingdom's greatest rising star, utterly crushed by the notoriously weak First Prince, and he only trained for a few months. Meanwhile, in the royal infirmary, a heavily bandaged Julian jolted awake, unleashing a blood-curdling scream of pure agonizing fury. "You absolute piece of garbage, I will slaughter you for this," he shrieked. A trembling knight slowly approached his bed. "Your Highness." The moment the duel ended, the First Prince left the capital with Count Bevan hats. Julian froze in shock, left, to where the knight gulped. "To the frozen north, my lord." Far away under a brutally bleak sky, the royal carriage carved its way through the frozen tundra, escorted by heavily armored elite knights. Andreon leaned back, a devilish smirk playing on his lips. Count Bevan Hatz observed him closely, noting dryly, "You certainly put on a masterclass performance back there." Andreon chuckled, radiating absolute confidence. "Once you figure out the game, winning comes naturally, right?" The Count sighed deeply, instantly regretting his praise. "I should have kept my mouth shut. You seriously need a lesson in humility. But why rush out? The bloodbath is over. Wouldn't resting a few days be wiser?" Andreon's smirk completely vanished. There was zero place for him in the capital. Not in a pathetic kingdom that bows like dogs to the empire, completely forgetting its true master. "I refuse to pathetically beg for their loyalty." The Count pondered these heavy words, riding quietly beside the royal carriage. "Do you truly believe you belong with soldiers rather than aristocrats? They might lack political cunning, but their stubborn pride is unyielding. Will winning their loyalty be that easy?" Visualizing himself warring alongside mud-soaked warriors, Andreon's insanely confident smirk instantly returned. "Rolling in blood and mud builds unbreakable brotherhood. Why worry?" Yet the Count sighed deeply. "I still cannot shake the ominous feeling that you are rushing toward your grave." Andreon's eyes darkened instantly. A horrific nightmare flashed in his mind, Sigrin's monstrous shadow effortlessly crushing his tiny, helpless past self. If he hesitated even for a second, he was doomed to marry that absolute lunatic. In his past life, everyone she ever desired was reduced to ashes. "I must awaken overwhelming power before that happens. Playing house in a peaceful capital is a joke. That is exactly why I had to leave. I will force my awakening and temper my blade in hell itself. The blood-soaked battlefield is my true calling." Meanwhile, the royal expedition finally reached the majestic snow-capped peaks. The Count cast a heavy, meaningful glance at the prince. "Behold the Blade Mountains, your highness. The frozen border my bloodline has guarded for generations." Shivering violently, Andreon wrapped his arms around himself. "I am literally freezing to death out here." The Count smirked. "If the cold bites too hard, hide inside the carriage." Andreon stubbornly shook his head. "No way. I must conquer this freezing aura." Peeking out from his cozy seat, the elderly tutor sighed. "I feel like absolute deadweight here." This old geezer was hogging the entire royal carriage. Annoyed, the prince snapped, "Seriously, old man, why did you even tag along?" The tutor chuckled heartily. "When else would I witness the brutal beauty of the frozen north? Besides, my new masterwork will undoubtedly serve your highness well." Andreon clicked his tongue, muttering under his breath, "What a completely useless geezer." He then shifted his gaze to the fiercely loyal knight riding beside him. "Owen, are you holding up? The vanguard's wind will shatter your bones." Owen beamed with a radiant smile. "I am perfectly fine. We can always swap positions," he offered. Though her armor rattled from the bitter cold, her eyes burned with absolute resolve. "As your sworn knight, how could I ever prioritize my own comfort?" A faint smile graced Andreon's lips. Thank the heavens. At least one of his subordinates possessed a blazing, unbreakable spirit. Meanwhile, the rest of the squad grumbled endlessly, treating the royal mandate like an absolute curse. If only his commander were here to crush their bad attitudes. Earlier, the king had sneered. "The royal guard is not your personal playground. Do you not already possess a legion of heavily armed knights under your direct command? Though I highly doubt you even treat them as proper knights." Andreon clicked his tongue, cursing the stubborn, narrow-minded king in his thoughts. "Damn it all. That is exactly why my true forces could not march north. Even if I act the ruthless executioner, he is still my fiercely loyal sword." The king's sudden hostility reeked of dark behind-the-scenes politics. Suddenly, the atmosphere completely shattered. Gentle snowflakes instantly mutated into an apocalyptic, raging blizzard. The demonic wind shrieked through the valley. Count Bevan Hatz's mana-infused roar tore right through the howling tempest. Double time. "We must advance. If this whiteout traps us, we are all dead men." The blinding snow quickly evolved into an absolute unforgiving wall of ice. A brutal forced march began in the blink of an eye. "We will lose the rear carriages," the Count roared, glaring back. "Abandon them, take the horses, and march on foot. Move or we freeze to death." Andreon's eyes widened. Was that a mana-infused shockwave? Slicing through the violent gales, he reached out his hand to pull Adelia out. Her cheeks flushed deep red as she grabbed his hand. Your Highness, thank you. Amidst the escalating icy chaos, Owen instantly rushed to his side. My prince, are you injured? Andreon's voice sliced through the bitter cold. I am perfectly fine. A massive gust nearly sent a knight flying. The royal guards desperately roared, brace yourselves, watch your footing, hold the line. The wind pressure is insane. Annoyed by the pathetic display, the prince stormed forward. Owen, protect Adelia. Owen saluted sharply. On my life, your highness. Witnessing his soldiers utterly overwhelmed by their heavy gear, Andreon unleashed a furious commanding roar. Drop the damn shields, you absolute fools. You are acting like giant sails in a hurricane. Draw your swords and dump the dead weight. We will recover it later. You, the giant in front, break the wind and everyone fall into formation behind him. The battle-hardened veterans of the North watched this overwhelming display of absolute leadership with a newfound burning respect. Looks like our rescue mission is cancelled, a veteran chuckled. I plan to let the harsh winter haze him first. Does the prince actually possess genuine blood-soaked battlefield experience? The death march pushed their mortal limits to the absolute brink. Every single step felt like carrying a mountain. Suddenly, a soldier completely collapsed into the freezing abyss. Panic erupted among the ranks. Your Highness, a man is down. Without a second of hesitation, Andreon charged. Out of my damn way, he roared, shattering the formation. He effortlessly hauled the unconscious soldier over his shoulder. What are you staring at? Keep moving forward. The elite knight stood completely paralyzed in awe. Why, yes, sir. Gasping for air against the freezing death grip, Andreon glared furiously at the heavens. This cursed demonic storm, if you are going to break, shatter right now. And as if submitting to his overwhelming tyrannical aura, the catastrophic blizzard miraculously shattered. The sky instantly cleared into a brilliant blue as if the nightmare had never existed. A colossal, awe-inspiring fortress loomed before them, carved directly into the mountain's frozen heart. Count Bevan Hatz stepped forward, slamming his armored fist against his chest in a thunderous legendary salute. As the absolute lord of Bevan Hatz and supreme commander of the Third Royal Legion, I humbly welcome the First Prince to our domain. Andreon gazed upward, an insanely confident smirk igniting on his face. The Count matched his energy, his battle-scarred features softening with genuine hard-earned respect. I sincerely welcome you to the Eastern Citadel. Freezing winds screamed across the desolate Blade Mountains, crashing against the titanic stone walls of the kingdom's absolute northernmost stronghold. This was the legendary Eastern Citadel, an absolute unforgiving meat grinder of a fortress forged specifically to hold back the endless apocalyptic monster waves from the peaks. To any ordinary weak-willed soldier, this frozen hell was an absolute living nightmare. Teeth gritted together as their breath formed freezing clouds. It was a brutal, merciless hellhole with the worst survival rate imaginable. A nightmare realm no one ever wanted to step foot in twice. Yet, to the proud natives born and raised in Bevan Hatz, defending this massive, towering gate was their absolute lifelong honor. The massive iron gates groaned open, welcoming the pale winter sunlight. Standing proudly in the courtyard was a sharp-featured youth with deep blue hair, clad in black armor lined with white fur. He slammed his fist against his chest, saluting Count Bevan Hatz with absolute discipline. Vincent Bevan Hatz reporting, as of today, my temporary command officially ends and I return to leading the Rangers. It is a massive relief to see you return safely, Father. The Count placed a warm hand on his shoulder, a rare smile softening his battle-scarred face. You did incredibly well. Watching nearby, Andreon leaned in with an amused, mischievous grin. What is this, Count? You have a son, the older man chuckled. Did you think I reached this age without an heir, Your Highness? The main character pointed playfully. Looking closely, you two are quite similar, especially that incredibly stubborn, defiant mouth. The Count made the formal introduction. Vincent, this is His Highness the First Prince Andreon. Vincent stepped forward, his stoic face masking his thoughts, and bowed respectfully. Ranger Commander Vincent of the Bevan Hatz family greets the First Prince. Andreon flashed a radiant smile, completely ignoring the heavy, unspoken tension lingering in the air. Yet, beneath his polite facade, Vincent gritted his teeth. He stared at the ground, his mind blazing with pure outrage. The Eastern Wall was a brutal fortress for true warriors, men who tossed away their lives for a noble cause, not a playground for exiled royal trash to waste time. Why on earth bring him here? Later, Vincent directly confronted his father. Father, what exactly is the meaning of this madness? It is exactly as you heard. I am now his official sponsor, and Andreon will stay in Bevan Hatz. Hearing this, Vincent's tone turned incredibly bitter. Has the king himself not completely abandoned him? Is he not the same talentless rogue you once harshly criticized for his severe lack of skill? The Count simply turned his back. People can change. I ask only one thing, Vincent. Watch His Highness without your blinding prejudice. Inside the dimly lit war room, Count Bevan Hatz finally asked, how progresses the monster subjugation? Vincent reported instantly. We have steadily reduced their numbers, but many dead zones remain. With your return, Father, we will launch a full-scale strike. The remaining forces are the elite rangers. The core issue is the orcs. Nearly 20 beasts have blockaded the mountain pass, numbers too overwhelming to wipe out with mere arrows. Andreon suddenly leaned over the war map. His eyes glinted with a dangerously thrilling spark. "Leave this prey entirely to me." An opposing knight gasped. "Your Highness, Blade Mountain orcs are absolutely no ordinary beasts," Vincent quickly interjected. One single mistake could paralyze the entire ranger operation. The prince glanced at the count. A heavy silence fell as the count studied Andreon's unshakable confidence, then asked Vincent about the enemy's strength. "Vincent, what are the exact numbers and official power levels of these orcs?" "Maximum 20 confirmed," Vincent replied. "No elite warriors or shamans spotted yet, but we cannot rule them out." The count stared back at Andreon, smiling with an unspoken challenge. "Are you absolutely confident, Your Highness?" Vincent immediately snapped back. "Father, that pass is a critical lifeline for our ranger forces. If we miscalculate and this drags into a prolonged war, future operations will be infinitely harder. And if he falls, the Bevan Hats family's legendary reputation will be ruined." The main character smirked inwardly. He trained this guy exceptionally well. The count waved his hand casually. "Enough, put your worries to rest." "Andreon, what are your terms?" The prince listed them flawlessly. "First, 3 veteran guides. Second, gear upgrades for my men. Finally, lend us some heavy crossbows." The count nodded firmly. "That is not difficult, consider it done." The surrounding knights exchanged anxious glances in absolute silence until the main character's voice broke the tension. "We move out." The royal escort quickly scrambled into formation. Knight Hand looked utterly bewildered. "Pardon me, Your Highness, what do you mean?" Andreon beamed a terrifyingly bright smile. "We just accepted a monster subjugation quest, 20 enemies, potential elite warriors, and shamans hidden among their ranks." The knight stammered in absolute shock. "But Your Highness, Legion 3 is here. Why must we fight? Our sole duty is protecting you." Andreon smoothly countered. "Then the situation is absolutely perfect. You must follow me to protect me anyway. Legion 3's official orders will arrive sometime today. Gather the upgraded gear and report back immediately." He thought to himself, like it or not, these soldiers are assigned to me. I might as well squeeze every drop of efficiency out of them. They are completely unreliable in a blizzard, but... He narrowed his gaze, his glowing blue pupils blazing as his special authority activated. Glowing status windows instantly popped up over the knights. Hands traits, rank C, swordsmanship, formal tactics, siege, defense, phalanx formation. As expected of hand-picked royal elites, he secretly analyzed. But when he inspected the knight named Joseph, the system window revealed a sinister truth: interrogation and disguise skills. Andreon's eyes narrowed with deep suspicion. A rat has infiltrated my ranks. Outside, the prince approached Vincent in sheer disbelief. "You are the guide." Vincent scowled, a deadly warning in his voice. "You clearly underestimate the consequences of failure here." Andreon flashed a warm, terrifyingly confident smile. "I assure you we will not fail." "You are treating this war far too lightly," Vincent snapped. Instantly, a suffocating, murderous tension erupted between the two men. Keeping his unbothered smirk, Andreon silently analyzed his opponent. His status window is completely blocked. He must be at least a 3-star knight. He also noticed Vincent's supposed rangers were actually elite knights operating in disguise. He smirked at this hidden safety net. Before departing, he commanded Adelia to stay behind. "Adelia, relax. I am not taking you." He knew the intensely violent nature of her latent power. A random chaotic awakening would be a catastrophic disaster for everyone involved. "I humbly apologize, my lord," she replied softly. The expedition plunged deep into the frozen wasteland. Andreon marched boldly at the very front, leading the formation through the frost-covered trees. Vincent continuously barked relentless orders. "Conserve your stamina on the march. If your core temperature drops, your limbs will freeze and your combat power will vanish. Watch your footing, the Blade Mountain Range's ice is utterly unforgiving." Andreon scoffed internally. This guy's endless lectures were somehow worse than his own father's. Suddenly, a sharp rustle shattered the dead silence. A mere snow rabbit darted past. Vincent exhaled a heavy sigh of relief, but his veteran instincts screamed danger. He raised his brass spyglass, scanning the dense frozen woods ahead. A nightmare awaited them. Massive orcs with glowing crimson eyes were savagely devouring a bloody corpse. Vincent frantically reported back. "Orc ambush ahead. What is our move?" Andreon did not hesitate for a single second. Raising his gauntleted hand, he delivered an ice-cold command. "Lock and load." Behind him, Hand and the knights raised their heavy crossbows. Owen drew her blade, eyes locked in absolute focus. The metallic clatter echoed through the silent forest, alerting the orcs. Andreon stepped forward, freezing wind whipping his blonde hair. His blue eyes blazed with a terrifying predatory light as a thrilled grin spread across his face. He whispered to the monsters, "Hello. Long time no see." Without looking back, he dropped his hand and commanded, "Fire." Crossbow bolts tore through the freezing air, piercing the orcs with brutal force. Crimson sprayed across the snow as the monsters roared in agonizing fury. Surviving orcs gripped their crude weapons, charging straight at the formation. Andreon refused to retreat. Drawing his long sword, he lunged forward. Heavy footsteps shook the earth, followed by a blood-curdling roar soaked in pure killing intent. The rush I missed, the thrill I remembered, the chaos I craved. This is perfect. He embraced the battlefield, clashing head-on with the monster vanguard. Owen screamed in desperate panic, terrified for the prince's safety. Andreon completely ignored her warning. Do not come any closer. He stood firmly in the snow, raising his blade into a flawless stance. His smile deepened into pure madness as he breathed in the chaos. Take one wrong step, and you will be dragged right into hell. As the battle erupted, Andreon's blue eyes were instantly swallowed by a violent crimson flash. The snowy landscape faded into an ancient memory from 400 years ago. It was the tale of a lone warrior burning with relentless hatred for orcs, the mournful song of an exhausted father broken by an endless war. Echoing the legendary song of an extraordinary avenger, that ancient blood-red aura explosively erupted from Andreon's very soul. It spiraled around him like hellfire. The crimson energy cloaked his vibrating blade with apocalyptic power as ancient words echoed through his mind. I piled green corpses into a mountain above a sprawling lake of blood. He gazed at the slaughter with a terrifyingly serene smile. A system window confirmed the awakening of an ancient power singing a poem of vengeance. Elsewhere, long shadows crept across a dimly lit room. A heavy leather coin pouch thumped onto a mahogany table. An orange-haired knight nervously watched the figure sitting in a crimson velvet armchair. They say people die all the time at Winter Castle. He muttered, his voice trembling with absolute terror. The older man leaned back, a sinister, arrogant grin stretching across his face. Do not worry, there will be no war. What can that trash prince even do? He will likely just hide in the castle and try to steal the credit. The real threat is not that brat, but Bevan Hats. Keep an eye on Winter Castle and report anything suspicious. Can you do that? The knight snatched the pouch, greedy confidence replacing his former dread. I will do my absolute best, Count. The warmth of the noble's study shattered instantly, replaced by the freezing, brutal reality of the snowy battlefield. The air grew thick with the stench of blood and the deafening, monstrous roars. The orange-haired knight stood paralyzed in the snow. Panic clouded his breath, his face pale with horror as he stared at the gigantic green beast. He thought this was what he heard, but this is impossible, completely different from the Count's words. Behind him, Owen's dark hair blew as the front line advanced. A massive orc swung its crude wooden club, smashing into the knightly ranks. Crash! The orange-haired knight gasped, stumbling backward in a sweaty, chaotic panic. Damn it, what should I do? Owen's commanding voice sliced through the chaos once more. Second line attack. Driven by pure survival instinct, he squeezed his eyes shut and lunged forward, thrusting his spear with all his might into the monster's thick hide. But relief instantly morphed into absolute despair. The gigantic orc was completely unharmed, glaring down with glowing red eyes. His desperate attack was utterly useless. I am completely dead. The orc raised its weapon high, ready to crush the trembling human into dust. Suddenly, a brilliant blue flash illuminated the snowy forest. Owen charged in, her blade crackling with fierce blue mana. She sliced the orc's neck perfectly, felling the behemoth. The orange-haired knight collapsed, his weapon slipping from his trembling hands as he helplessly cowered. Owen stood above him, her blue eyes ruthlessly cold. This is a battlefield, do not you dare drop your weapon. Suddenly, the earth began to shake rhythmically. From the tree line, a terrifying orc champion emerged, clad in heavy armor and a horned helm. Owen tightened her grip, her expression turning deadly serious. All units prepare for combat. She quickly assessed the overwhelming enemy forces. There are too many, wiping them out with our current numbers will be impossible. Before despair could settle, a crimson energy beam ripped across the battlefield. Owen watched in shock as the red flash bisected a charging orc. It was Andreon. His blonde hair caught the dim light, his silver armor glowing under the explosive blood-red aura erupting from his body. He moved like a true god of death. His blade became a blinding crimson blur as he effortlessly slaughtered the surrounding monsters. She gasped, "It is His Highness," but his eyes were terrifyingly hollow, ignoring her completely. The main character launched forward, deaf to her desperate screams. No matter how many monsters he slaughtered, his relentless thirst for enemy blood remained unquenched. He mindlessly wandered through desolate wastelands completely dominated by the savage orc horde. The mana core within his heart had dried up long ago. Yet he pushed forward, drinking vile orc blood and tearing into their flesh. With every agonizing step, the lone warrior grew older and infinitely weaker. Gripping the demonic sword, he burned through his final sparks of life just to grant one last desperate wish. A bloody, heartbreaking requiem for his beloved wife and daughter. They were brutally slaughtered without leaving a single piece of flesh behind. A torn, ruined family portrait lay completely forgotten in the frozen debris, and when he finally faced his ultimate lifelong nemesis, his life flame flickered and died. The white-haired avenger stood entirely alone in the snow. Before him towered a colossal one-eyed orc chieftain, radiating a dark aura that threatened to swallow the very earth. A broken, exhausted smile crossed the dying man's face, yet his eyes fiercely blazed with an unquenchable crimson fire of vengeance. He charged forward with every single ounce of his remaining power. He absolutely refused to surrender until the bitter end. But despite his legendary courage, he was ultimately struck down, his shattered body buried deep in a freezing, snowy grave. There was no miraculous system awakening. His life simply faded away. It was a forgotten tragedy, with no one to tell the tale. Only the demonic sword, Andreon's past life, stood silently in the snow as the sole witness. Snapping back to the present, Andreon's crimson aura aggressively erupted. It flared with agonizing phantom pain and an absolutely unshakable legendary resolve. "I will be the absolute only one to remember it all," he vowed silently. Towering high over the slaughtered orc corpses, his commanding voice echoed out. "Knights, intercept the remaining orc warriors. The rest of you hold the line." He tightened his iron grip on the blade. "I remember now. The song of vengeance is incomplete. I am the one who must finish this melody." Andreon instantly launched himself back into the monster horde. He became a blood-soaked tornado of divine punishment. Weaving through the behemoths, he decapitated and dismembered them with terrifying deadly grace. Blood sprayed in beautiful deadly arcs, painting the battlefield in sheer horror. Suddenly, a golden system window materialized amidst the carnage. A brand new verse had been permanently added to the Song of Vengeance. Andreon's voice resonated with an ancient mystical depth as he chanted the newly forged system-granted words. "Pile up their green corpses to forge a mountain and let a dark crimson swamp pool beneath it. Here I stand, dedicating this slaughter to honor your soul." Ding. The system window chimed again. The Song of Vengeance had successfully evolved into the legendary Requiem of Souls. Andreon's blazing eyes cooled back to their piercing azure blue. The epic battle was finally over. The surviving knights stood victorious amidst the blood-stained snow. Vincent stepped forward, gripping a torn, blood-drenched red flag. With a sharp crack, he violently snapped the wooden pole, shattering the orc's vile emblem. The monster horde was completely annihilated. Turning back to the troops, a triumphant smirk crossed Vincent's face. "I declare total victory. The battlefield is ours." The exhausted soldiers erupted into thunderous, heaven-shaking cheers. Andreon observed them, his mind racing. Is his name truly Vincent Belvin? The proud heir of a noble family who dedicated their entire bloodline to fighting monsters. Yet he shared the exact same name as the tragic fallen avenger who sacrificed everything to eradicate the orcs. A fleeting memory of the old battle-scarred man dying in the freezing snow flashed vividly through Andreon's awakened mind. Before his final breath, the man had whispered softly to his blade, "Let us meet again in the next life." Andreon smirked inwardly. What a twisted sense of ironical fate. Vincent stood there, sulking, his face practically twitching with clear annoyance. Andreon casually glanced over his shoulder. "What is it now?" he asked. Striding forward, Vincent held out the torn flag toward the prince. "Please, your highness, accept this item." Andreon titled, his head completely baffled by this sudden, unexpected gesture. Vincent explained with an incredibly solemn, serious tone. "Within our 3rd Legion, the fiercest combatant receives the enemy's flag. It is the ultimate system loot, representing an eternally glorious victory. Furthermore, this honor naturally belongs to your highness." Owen stepped up from behind, bowing with the utmost respect. "Your Highness, please allow me to express my deepest reverence for your heaven-defying bravery on the battlefield today." Suddenly, the entire armored knight brigade dropped to one knee. They roared in perfect unison, their voices shaking the snowy wasteland. "We fiercely honor the absolute bravery of your Highness." The corners of Andreon's mouth curled upwards into an incredibly smug, triumphant grin. Another voice playfully chimed in, "Speak up a little louder so that everyone here can clearly hear you." He raised the blood-red flag high into the freezing air, screaming at the very top of his lungs, "We have won." The knights were instantly swept up by his overwhelmingly infectious energy. They punched their heavy iron fists to the sky, cheering wildly. "We actually won." The blazing sunset perfectly framed Andreon as he stood in an epic victory pose. The soldiers roared, absolute respects to his highness. "Welcome to Winter Castle, your highness." Andreon completely bathed in their blind admiration, his main character ego inflating to massive proportions. Victory, cheers, and glory, he thought. "I have the whole world right in the palm of my hand." But then, completely shattering the epic atmosphere, he hugged the flag like a shiny new gacha pull and squealed with pure joy. "This amazing flag is all mine." Standing behind him, Vincent looked utterly soul-drained by the prince's ridiculous antics. Yet Andreon continued to shamelessly flex like a giant toddler. "That is right, I am the one." He suddenly froze. A dark shadow cast over his face as a quiet mutter reached his ears. 16. He snapped his head around. "Huh." Vincent stared back with an incredibly petty smirk. "I mean, as for orc army flags, I actually have 16 of them right in my inventory." Andreon turned to stone, his jaw hitting the floor. The knights behind them intensely sweat dropped. Someone whispered from the back, Our captain is so incredibly childish. Andreon's shock instantly morphed into a legendary pout. He wildly waved his flag right in Vincent's face, screaming, "Who the heck cares? This one belongs to me." Vincent stepped back entirely stunned by the sudden outburst. Gritting his teeth, a giant anime anger vein popped on his forehead. I seriously still cannot stand this guy, he thought. A little while later, a massive bonfire blazed fiercely, sending thick pillars of dark black smoke into the twilight sky. The weary soldiers stood in solemn silence before the crackling pyre. Andreon and Owen watched the dancing flames. Vincent commented with a surprisingly soft tone. The casualty rate was relatively low, considering we just clashed with an elite orc combat unit. Is that so? Andreon replied incredibly coldly. Owen lowered his head, a heavy shadow of grief in his eyes. Even so, it feels like a devastating loss. Vincent firmly stated, his gaze locked intensely on the fire. Victory is the greatest tribute and mourning we can offer to the fallen. We soothe the restless souls of the deceased using the spilled blood of those filthy orcs. Andreon stared at the young ranger commander, hit by a sudden, uncanny wave of familiarity. He shares the exact same name and speaks exactly like him, he pondered. Did his soul actually reincarnate into this body? Andreon suddenly shattered the heavy silence. Anyway, are all the members of the 3rd Legion secretly tailing us, or what? Vincent lied straight through his teeth without even blinking once. A passing ranger unit just casually happened to notice us and joined our party. The main character was utterly unamused by the blatantly obvious lie. Wow. What an absolutely mind-blowing coincidence. Vincent laughed awkwardly, sweating profusely. Yeah, just a lucky coincidence. He knew Andreon did not trust him and had secretly prepared for this. Vincent desperately pivoted the conversation back to their tactical situation. By the way, it is incredibly bizarre that the orc combat unit descended this far down the mountain. It is even weirder that our elite rangers entirely missed their massive movements. We need to head back to the base immediately. The towering majestic spires of Winter Castle were perfectly bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. The victorious expeditionary force marched proudly through the colossal stone gates. The Count was already waiting to receive them. Excellent work. Congratulations on returning alive. Andreon instantly puffed out his chest, wildly waving his torn red scrap of glory. This enemy flag belongs to me. He waved it vigorously side to side. The surrounding knights laughed and clapped in pure admiration. Simply amazing. Your Highness, you captured the enemy flag in your very first battle. A short distance away, Owen and 2 other knights stared with completely deadpan eyes. One knight sighed, His Highness is bragging about it again. The other added, I think he has done that 11 times already. Owen remained completely silent. Yes, I am truly the only one. The Count interrupted, pulling Vincent aside to demand a report on the strange anomalies deep in the mountains. Vincent delivered his grim report. The orc vanguard breached our lines far too early. They either tracked massive prey or something disastrous awakened deep within the peaks. The Count's voice darkened. Neither scenario bodes well for our survival. I wanted to give my men time to recover, but this crisis demands immediate action. Follow me. As Vincent turned to leave, he paused and cast a respectful glance over his shoulder. Your Highness, your valiant efforts saved us today. Andreon blinked in sheer confusion. Did he just compliment me? That felt completely out of character. Owen offered a knowing smile before breaking the tension. Given his usual abrasive nature, he is simply too embarrassed by his sudden burst of respect. Before Andreon could even process this new dynamic, a frantic voice shattered the calm. Your Highness. Adelia sprinted toward him, her face a canvas of overwhelming relief. You made it back alive. She skidded to a halt, gasping for air as her large emerald eyes trembled with lingering dread. I was terrified. I thought the wilderness had claimed you. Andreon felt his battle-hardened exterior melt. A warm smile graced his lips as he met her desperately hopeful gaze. But that gentle warmth instantly morphed into an arrogant smirk. He shoved a battered war banner right into her face. Do you have any idea what this is? Later that evening, heavy shadows swallowed the silent study. Vincent broke the absolute silence. We are mobilizing an elite reconnaissance vanguard. They deploy into the cursed peaks within days. The unknown variables lurking up there are too dangerous. Therefore, only our most elite pathfinders who have mastered treacherous alpine survival will be authorized for this mission. In short, your presence is not required on this battlefield. Andreon sank deep into his velvet armchair, crossing his arms and pouting like a spoiled child. That makes zero sense. Why would you drag yourself all the way here just to deliver a mundane debriefing? Vincent shifted awkwardly, refusing to meet his eyes. It was a direct order from the commander. Andreon stared him down instantly, seeing through the thinly veiled scheme. So the old man is trying to force a friendship upon us. Letting out a heavy sigh, Andreon waved him off. Fine, you are dismissed. Go recover your strength. Vincent offered a stiff bow before vanishing into the hall. The massive oak door slammed shut. Exhaustion crashed over Andreon in devastating waves. He sat completely isolated in the gloom, staring at the blood-red banner resting on his mahogany desk. I lost myself entirely to the thrill of today's slaughter. For the very first time, I channeled an ancient battle epic without a single flaw. And this terrifying synchronization, it is only going to grow stronger. These legendary verses burned into my memory. They were never truly mine to begin with. I am wielding a borrowed power, an immense strength that I possess yet do not truly own. I must devour this system and make every drop of this power my own. Just as I twisted the verse of vengeance into a requiem of souls, suddenly, a razor-sharp tap shattered the absolute silence. Andreon whipped his head toward the window. Tap, there it was again. He narrowed his eyes at the moonlight-drenched glass. A bird at this hour, he muttered under his breath. But as his vision adjusted to the shadows, his breath hitched in his throat. Wait, that is no ordinary creature. The entity snapped its neck toward him. Its eyes burned like glowing violet abysses. A terrifying, chaotic aura of dark purple mana exploded from its tiny frame. Staring at this apocalyptic omen, the blood instantly turned to ice in Andreon's veins. The horrifying truth struck him like a physical blow. This was a manifestation of pure dark magic. Locking his gaze on the sinister familiar, a chilling realization dawned on him. Who in their right mind would summon such a monstrosity to my quarters? Suddenly, a chillingly sweet voice echoed directly from the beast. Speak, did your highness enjoy my little gift? That impossibly familiar tone struck a nerve. I knew it. But what twisted gift was she talking about? His mind raced as the puzzle pieces slammed together. Wait, the sudden orc invasion at the mountain base. Was that your doing? Sigrin's ethereal voice dripped with amusement. I merely wanted my prince to warm up against some low-level fodder. Please accept my deepest affections. Andreon's brow furrowed in absolute disgust. This psychotic elf. Dozens of elite hunters were butchered today because of your little game. And you dare joke about it? These immortal elves are nothing but a bunch of sadistic voyeurs. She must have been laughing from the shadows while we were locked in a bloody death match with the orc vanguard. Her voice oozed with twisted admiration, directing an epic of vengeance at an entire orcish horde. I watched her every move, and the sheer devastation was utterly breathtaking. Andreon scoffed at her sick praise. Is this psychopathic manipulation what you elves call goodwill? Cutting through her games, he snapped. Drop the theatrical nonsense. Tell me exactly what you want. Sigrin feigned a dramatic wounded sigh. My prince is as frigid as the winter winds. The cursed familiar began circling his head like a vulture. Her honeyed voice echoed from the shadows. But alas, unrequited love is destined to be a thorny path. What is a smitten girl to do? I shall simply wait for the day you finally surrender your guarded heart to me. The sinister bird suddenly perched heavily on his shoulder. Her tone shifted to a deadly whisper. Deep within those cursed peaks lies a hidden relic that you desperately need. A primordial entity slumbers within the mountain's core. If you conquer it and weave its soul into your verse, I guarantee you will awaken an unstoppable power. The bait was too good. Andreon felt a dangerous spark of ambition ignite within him. An unstoppable power. Sensing he had finally taken the bait, her playful tone returned. Oh dear, it seems my lovely little messenger has run out of mana. Until our destinies intertwine again, my beloved prince. The moment her haunting farewell faded, the demonic bird overloaded with volatile energy. Boom. It detonated right in his face like a magical fragmentation grenade. Black smoke and debris utterly trashed the luxurious study. Andreon ground his teeth in sheer, helpless fury. That insane witch. She just had to leave a catastrophic mess on her way out. Her twisted agenda was glaringly obvious now. She wants me to compose a groundbreaking war epic. She desires to be the ultimate audience, while manipulating the very singer of the tale. Elves are a cursed race forever barred from being the absolute protagonist of any legend. They can only hijack the destinies of others, twisting human epics with their own melodies to unleash their terrifying sword dance. Feeding me this high-level intel is just another calculated move. She plans to exploit my growth to forge a legendary saga of her own design. But despite the obvious trap, I am going to play her dangerous game. The very next dawn, Andreon dropped the massive revelation on his captain. Vincent froze in disbelief. You want to push deep inside the death zone. Our mercenaries might farm the outer edges like a daily market run, but the inner sanctum is a completely different nightmare. Every single elite squad that ventured into the mountain's core was absolutely wiped out. A chill ran down Andreon's spine. Are you telling me the survival rate is exactly 0%? Vincent nodded, his expression dead serious. Total annihilation, your highness. Our sole mandate is to hold the defensive line against the monster waves, never to launch suicide expeditions into their territory. Hearing this, an absolutely reckless plan ignited in Andreon's mind. So you are saying, absolutely no one in recorded history knows what primordial boss is sleeping inside. Knights have scoured this world, hunting for the path to transcendence. They stripped away every last mystery and drained the world's ancient magic. Yet, against all odds, a forbidden zone still exists here. His piercing gaze locked onto the looming mountain. Just as he suspected, coming to Fort Ban H was absolutely the right choice. Suddenly, Vincent's voice shattered the silence. Your Highness, I say this purely out of caution. Please banish any thought of venturing deep into that mountain range." Catching his drift, the prince waved him off. "Relax, I will not go in there." Humming a quiet tune, he strolled away, thinking to himself, "At least for now, it is just another boring day in this wasteland." The guards were yawning, completely bored out of their minds. With nothing else to do, he pulled out his blade and began polishing the cold steel. As he wiped the blade, his mind raced. Deep inside those mountains, what kind of monstrous entity slumbers there? His blood boiled with the urge to charge in, but the timing was not right. I need more battles. I need to stack more victories. Well, the Banquet stronghold was a notorious war zone. It would not take long before. Right on cue, a deafening war horn shook the entire fortress. The soldiers jumped in sheer panic. "Damn it, is the next monster wave already here?" Another guard screamed at the top of his lungs. "Everyone fall in on the wall. Recall all outside forces immediately. Bring up more arrows now." He followed their hurried footsteps, eager to see the chaos unfold. Commander Vale's booming voice commanded the troops. "All archers take your positions, ready your bows." He and Owen rushed over anxiously, calling out for their uncle. Vale turned around, his expression grim. "You made it," he pointed a heavy finger toward the horizon. "Look over there." Tiny silhouettes emerged from the distant mountains, sprinting desperately toward the fortress. Squinting his eyes, the terrifying truth finally hit him. Our rangers. They're running for their lives. Running from what? A panicked soldier leaned over the barricade screaming. "Hurry up, you fools. Run, push past your limits and run faster. The wolf riders are right behind them." The truth was horrifying. A brutal pack of orcs was hunting them down. Frantic shouts continued to echo from the fortress walls. Just a little further. They are still out of arrow range. Down below, the exhausted rangers cursed through their heavy panting. "Damn it, you savage bastards." Another ranger gasped in despair. Do these monsters never tire? Watching from high above, a cold realization crept down his spine. Something felt incredibly wrong about this. Vale chimed in, his voice dripping with dread. "Exactly. They are merely toying with their prey. With that distance, those wolf riders should have caught them by now." The safe haven was right there, but one ranger's legs finally gave out. He stopped dead in the snow. "If we keep running, they will slaughter us all." With absolute resolve, he spun around. "I will buy you some time." Facing the monster's horde entirely alone, he raised his blade high. "Come at me, I am a proud ranger of Fort Ban H." Witnessing his suicidal stand, his comrades screamed in absolute horror. "No, do not stop. Just drag yourselves a few more steps, you stubborn fools." But time had officially run out. A massive dire wolf lunged forward, tearing into the brave soldier and finishing him off in a single devastating strike. Seeing their leader fall, the remaining rangers shrieked in agony. "Captain," driven by pure rage, they drew their weapons to fight back. Tragically, their bloody fate was exactly the same. Both soldiers were annihilated in a flash. Watching this gruesome massacre from the walls, Vale could only let out a defeated sigh. God damn it. Aside from the essential watch guards, all other troops fall back from the wall. He then shifted his heavy gaze toward the prince. "Are you not going to ask why I let them die?" Andreon met his eyes calmly. "Did you not bring me up here specifically to witness this tragic reality?" Uncle Vale nodded slowly, confirming the dark truth. "Precisely. It was a blatant trap. If we marched our forces out there, the horde would have swallowed us whole. When warring against these beasts, human common sense will only get you killed." Vincent stepped up from behind, backing his father's grim strategy. "Those creatures care nothing for their own casualties. Dragging us into a brutal war of attrition is exactly what they desire. The bitter winter has only just begun. We absolutely cannot afford to make any reckless moves right now." Suddenly, a panicked guard screamed again. "The wolf riders are approaching." Everyone's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. Down below, 3 monstrous orc riders were casually marching straight toward the fortress, showing zero fear. Clamped tightly in the jaws of a massive beast was a brutally wounded human soldier. Halting at a calculated distance, the beast callously dropped the mangled body. Watching from the walls, a guard screamed in pure shock. "He is still moving. The man is still alive." Then one by one, the broken bodies of fallen warriors were dumped right before the main gates. Vale's face darkened with impending doom. This year's winter is going to be far more bloodthirsty than usual. Vincent roared in absolute disgust. How dare they use such cowardly psychological warfare? Observing the twisted display, the prince's mind clicked. Could that damn elf bastard be pulling the strings behind this? Down on the frozen battlefield, heavy monstrous footsteps crunched against the icy snow. A towering orc stepped forward, oozing a suffocating, bloodthirsty aura. Gripping a striking crimson flag in its massive hand, it glared up at the human defenders and flashed a sinister, mocking grin. From his high vantage point, the prince instantly realized what was happening. The brutal orc stomped the frozen earth, unleashing a deafening, earth-shattering roar that echoed like a savage challenge. Vincent gasped in sheer horror. Are those savages preparing for a public execution right in front of us? The prince calmly stepped up, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. No, this is not an execution. Look closer at their formation. Those monsters are openly demanding a duel to the death. A terrifying smirk played on his lips. An unimaginably ancient entity was slumbering deep within those peaks, and suddenly, the pieces of Destiny's puzzle finally aligned. A raspy demonic chant ripped through the freezing wind. Fight, spill their blood in glorious combat, reclaim the Legion's lost honor. For our supreme almighty king, at least that was his best guess. After all, the beast was still screaming its lungs out down there,